Other men inherit gold armies and thrones that mean something. I inherit a burned capital, a treasury with nothing in it but dust and mouse droppings, and a crown too heavy to wear and too worthless to sell. My name is Cassian Veldmar. I'm 19 years old, and today they made me emperor of a corpse. Coronation happens at dawn because there aren't enough candles to do it at night. I stand in what used to be the grand hall of the Veldmar dynasty. Half the roof is gone. Where it's gone, gray morning light falls straight down onto a floor that still carries black scorch marks 5 years old. Rain got in through the hole all last autumn and warped the great oak doors so they no longer close. Wind moves through the hall like it owns the place. Maybe it does. It's the only thing here with any real power. There are 11 people at my coronation. 11. An old priest with shaking hands who forgets half the words. 9 nobles in clothes worth more than everything the city outside these walls owns put together. And Aldrich, my father's steward, the only man who didn't run when Kronberg came. The priest lifts the crown. It's a thin band of iron. The gold one was melted down and carried off by Kronberg soldiers the same night they killed my father, and this iron replacement was hammered out by a blacksmith who died of fever 2 winters ago. The priest sets it on my head. It's cold. It's always cold in this hall now. Rise, Cassian, first of his name, Emperor of Veldmar, Lord of the priest stops. He was about to list the provinces. He remembers that most of them barely answer our letters anymore. He clears his throat. Rise, Emperor, I rise. 9 nobles clap. It's the softest, most insulting sound I've ever heard. 9 pairs of gloved hands making a noise like distant, bored rain. I watch their faces. They're not here out of loyalty. They're here to see the boy who was handed a ruin, to measure exactly how long I'll last, and to decide which of them will pick the bones when I fall. Lord Halvern near the front is already smiling like a man who's seen the end of a play he's watched 100 times before. I keep my face still. My father taught me that before Kronberg. Never let them see the ledger behind your eyes. Let them think the sums are always in your favor. The problem is the sums are not in my favor. The sums are a catastrophe. They leave quickly after. Nobles don't linger in cold halls with nothing to eat. Their carriages roll out through the broken gate, and then it's just me, Aldrich in the wind. Walk with me, I tell him. Your Majesty, you should rest. I've been sitting for 3 days waiting for a ceremony 11 people bothered to attend. I don't need rest. I need to see exactly how bad it is. All of it. No softening it for me. Aldrich. I already know it's the end of the world. I want to know the shape of the end. The old man looks at me for a long moment. Something in his tired eyes shifts surprise. Maybe that the boy wants numbers instead of comfort. Then he nods. We walk out into my empire. The palace sits on a hill, and from the hill you can see the whole capital of Ashenfeld laid out below, and the whole capital of Ashenfeld is dying. 5 years ago, this was one of the great cities of the continent. 80,000 people. Markets that ran 3 streets deep. A river district where barges came up from the sea loaded with salt and cloth and iron. Then Kronberg came not with a declared war that would have brought the other kingdoms in on treaty. They came with what their emperor called a border correction. 10,000 soldiers crossed in a single night, burned the river district, sacked the treasury, put my father to the sword on the steps of his own dwelling, and left before noon. No occupation, no demands. They didn't want the city. They just wanted it broken, and they wanted everyone watching to understand what happens to those who border Kronberg and grow too proud. It worked. God, it worked. We walk down through the upper district first. The great houses here stand empty, their windows dark, their gardens gone to weeds and thornbush. The families that owned them didn't die, they left, packed their wealth onto wagons and bought themselves comfortable lives in safer cities, leaving their mansions to rot as monuments to how fast loyalty evaporates when the money runs out. Lower down where the ordinary people live. It's worse, because the ordinary people had nowhere to run to. The smell hits me first. I've been in the palace for 3 days and I forgot how bad the streets are. Drains, the old stone sewers my ancestors built 300 years ago, collapsed in the fires and were never repaired. So now the waste of every household runs in the open gutters, down the middle of the streets, pools in the low places, and sits there. In summer, it breeds sickness that empties whole tenements. It's autumn now. So instead of sickness, it just breeds a stench that gets into your clothes, your hair, the back of your throat. A woman watches me from a doorway, a child on her hip. Both of them are too thin. The child's eyes are huge in a small gray face. The woman doesn't bow. She doesn't curse me either. She just looks at me, this boy in a clean coat with an iron band on his head, with an expression that's beyond anger, beyond hope, worn all the way down to nothing. Then she turns and goes inside. I make myself hold her gaze until she's gone. I make myself feel it. I don't look away. How many are still in the city, I ask. We don't know exactly, Majesty. Perhaps 12,000. Perhaps fewer. They leave every week. Those with the strength to travel go to Viven's free city on the coast, or south to the trade towns. Those without strength. Aldrich doesn't finish. Stay. I finish for him and starve. The harvest was poor. The fields nearest the city aren't worked. No one dares farm outside the walls with Kronberg raiders crossing the border whenever they please. What grain we have? He hesitates. How long? 40 days. Perhaps 45 if we ration harder. Then winter and the stores are empty. And he spreads his hands. Weathered old hands. Empty as the treasury. 40 days. I turn the number over in my head. 40 days until my people begin to die in numbers. And I have not one single coin to buy grain. No army to protect farmers. No farmers to protect. And 9 noble houses waiting for me to fail so they can carve up whatever's left. Any sane man would take the iron crown off his head, drop it in the gutter with all the rest of the city's waste, and walk south to buy a quiet life like the great families did. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that because of the steps of the Grand Hall 5 years ago, and a 14-year-old boy hidden in a servant's passage watching through a gap in the stones while men in Kronberg black cut down his father and laughed. I heard it. I have heard it every night for 5 years. That laughter is the one inheritance no one could melt down and carry off, and I have kept it, and I have sharpened it. We reach the bottom of the hill, where the old central square opens up, and I stop. There's a well in the middle of the square. Good one, deep stone-lined, fed by a clean spring, the best water in the district. Or it was, in the sack, a burning roof beam collapsed across it, cracking the stone housing and dropping half a ton of rubble and charred timber down into the shaft. For 5 years it's been fouled and useless. The people here haul their water from the river, now the same river that everything drains into. Half the sickness in this district starts in that water. I look at the well, I look at the rubble choking it, and something in me, some cold, clear part that my father put there, does a very simple sum. Clean water is survival. This well is clean water. The well is choked with rubble. Rubble can be moved, Aldrich. Are there men here? Anyone, any who'll work? Majesty? Strongbacks. Now, today, point me at anyone in this square who can lift a stone. He stares at me like I've lost my mind. Perhaps I have. But he calls out, and slowly, warily, a few men drift over a former mason with a bad leg. 2 brothers who used to load barges before the river district burned. An old soldier missing 2 fingers. 5 of them. They look at me with the same worn-down nothing the woman had. I take off my coat. The good clean coat. I hand it to Aldrich. Underneath, I'm just a thin young man in a plain shirt. That well's the best water in the district. I say to the 5 men, it's been dead 5 years. I want it live again by dark. I don't have coin to pay you today. I won't insult you by pretending I do, but I'll work beside you. And the water belongs to everyone in this square, and it's a start. I look at each of them. It's 1 stone. Then the next stone. That's all anything is ever built from. Will you give me the day? The mason with the bad leg looks at the iron crown, still on my head. I'd forgotten it was there. I reach up, take it off, and set it down on the lip of the well, where everyone can see it. That's worthless, I tell them. Honestly, it won't buy a loaf, but the water underneath it isn't worthless. Let's dig. The mason spits on his hands. Well, he says, I've done stupider things for men who did less. He limps to the rubble and heaves at the first stone, and then we dig. It takes all day. It's brutal work. The timber is waterlogged and heavy, wedged and tangled, and every piece we clear reveals more beneath. My hands blister inside the first hour and bleed by the third. The barge brothers rig a rope and a beam to lever out the big stones. The old soldier, 2 fingers gone, turns out to know knots better than any of us. Mason directs it all. His bad leg forgotten, alive, in a way I suspect he hasn't been in years because for one day his hands mean something again. People gather to watch. The thin woman with the child comes back. Others come. By afternoon there are 40-50 people around the square, silent at first, watching the boy emperor haul rubble with bleeding hands and no crown. Somewhere in the 4th hour, a boy of maybe 10 ducks under the arms of the watchers grabs a broken piece of timber half his size and drags it away from the shaft without a word. Then he comes back for another. No one told him to. I catch his eye and he looks terrified. I'll be angry. I nod at him instead. Once, the way you'd nod at a man, he stands a little straighter and drags harder. As the light goes orange and low, the last great stone comes free. The barge brothers lower a bucket on the soldier's good rope. It goes down, and we hear it hit. Not the dull slap of foulness, but the deep, clean plunk of real water. They haul it up. The bucket comes over the lip, brimming with water, so clear it catches the last of the sun and holds it gold and shaking in the dark. The mason drinks first because he earned it. Then he laughs an ugly, delighted, disbelieving bark and passes it on. The barge brothers drink. The soldier drinks. The boy drinks and gets it all down his front and doesn't care. The woman drinks and closes her eyes. I drink last. It's the best water I have ever tasted in my life, and it costs me nothing, and it belongs to all of us. 50 people in a broken square. And for one moment, none of them are looking at me like I'm a dead man walking. They're looking at the water. And a few of them are looking at me like, maybe the boy isn't nothing after all. It's a well in a city of collapsed drains and empty granaries and 40 days to winter. Measured against everything that's broken, it's almost nothing. But it's not nothing. It's 1 stone, then the next stone. And I've just proven to 50 witnesses that the stones can be moved. I pick the iron crown back up off the well's lip. I don't put it on. I just hold it and look at it, and make them a different kind of promise than the one the priest's words made this morning. Kronberg did this. Kronberg cracked this well and burned this district, and put my father on his own steps and laughed. And Kronberg is going to pay for every stone. But first I keep these people alive to winter. First I dig. Far to the east, in a warm, bright hall that still has all of its roof, a man is told over supper that the Veldmar boy was crowned that morning in a hall with no ceiling. Emperor Otto von Kronberg does not look up from his plate. He remembers the father, remembers the correction, the clean, quick work of it, the satisfying completeness. He had almost forgotten there was a son. How old is he now? Otto asks. 19, Your Imperial Majesty. 19. And what did the boy do on the day they gave him his ruin? A thin smile. Weep, flee, beg us for terms. The messenger hesitates. They say he cleared a well, Majesty, dug rubble with his own hands all day in the lower district. A pause. Then Otto von Kronberg laughs, a low, comfortable, genuinely amused laugh. the laugh of a man who has crushed proud cities and watched their heirs break. A well, he says, delighted. He has a dead empire and 40 days of grain, and he dug a well. He returns to his supper. Let him play in the mud. Tell me again when he does something that matters? He never gives the boy another thought that night. It is the first mistake he will make, and it is small, and it will grow that night. I can't sleep. My hands are wrapped in rag and they throb with every heartbeat, and my mind won't stop running the sums. 40 days, 12,000 mouths, 0 coin, 9 vultures turning them over and over looking for the crack in the wall, the first stone that can be moved. I'm sitting alone in the cold grand hall under the hole in the roof, the iron crown on the floor beside me, when the air in front of me changes. It's not light exactly, it's not sound, it's something that arrives behind my eyes. The way a word arrives when you've been reaching for it. A pane of pale gold unfolds itself out of nothing. Hanging in the dark of the hall, and on it, in clean burning letters, is writing that no one in the world but me can see. I go very still. The crown system is awakened. Sovereign recognized Cassian, first of his name, House Veldmar. The blood of your line built this empire on more than stone. It was built on oaths, true oaths, freely sworn, heart deep. That power slept while your house slept. Today, in the ruin, you swore a true one. It has woken me. I don't move. I don't breathe. Part of my mind is screaming that I'm exhausted, that this is a dream, that grief and blistered hands have finally broken something loose. But the cold, clear part of me, the ledger part, is already reading, already leaning in, because whatever this is, it is the first thing in 5 years that is not a subtraction. The letters shift. Here is the law I run by, Sovereign, and I will say it plainly. Once, my strength is loyalty, not bought, not forced. True. The strongest true oath a heart can swear is the marriage oath freely given and truly meant. Bind your life to another who truly believes in you and your cause, and I will pour into your ruined empire the gold and the means to raise it from the ash coin, plans, the knowledge to build. But hear the other edge, Sovereign, for it cannot be cheated. I feel the truth of a bond. A marriage sworn for gold, for advantage, for a throne and nothing more, is a lie, and I do not pay for lies. I pay for what is real. The more true the bond, the greater what I give. Raise your empire on true oaths, Cassian Veldmar. That is the whole of my purpose. I read it 3 times. 4. My heart is slamming against my ribs. I should be frightened. A voice in the dark offering gold from nothing. Every story warns you what those cost. But I've just spent a day proving that stones can be moved, and now something is telling me there's a way to move the biggest stones of all, and God help me. The ledger part of me is already running the new sums. Gold to buy grain, plans to rebuild, the knowledge to raise the city. All of it. Real. If I can find people who will truly stand with me, not because I'm an emperor, I'm barely that, but because they believe in what I'm trying to build out of this ash. How I say out loud to the empty hall, to the pane of light, feeling like a madman and not caring. Show me how to start, where. The letters hold for a moment, then they change one final time, and a direction settles into me. Not words exactly, but a certainty, a pull, like a compass needle finding north. Your first task, Sovereign, is your hardest and your simplest. Find the first heart that will truly stand with you. Not the loudest, not the strongest, the first true one. Without it, nothing that follows can be built. Look to the ones your court cast out. Look to the ruined house that still has something your throne has lost. Look to the house of Morn. The pane of gold folds itself back into nothing. The hall is dark and cold and empty again. Wind moving through the broken doors. The iron crown gleaming faintly on the floor beside my bleeding hands. House of Morn. I know the name. Everyone at court knew the name, and everyone at court helped bury it. I stand up. My hands hurt. My whole body hurts. Winter is 40 days away and I have no coin, and 12,000 people are depending on a boy who spent his coronation day digging a well. For the first time in 5 years, I'm smiling. All right, I say to the dark. Morn. Let's begin. The House of Morn is a bookshop with a dead garden. At the wrong end of a street that smells of the river. I find it on foot alone at mid-morning, with my hands still wrapped in rag from the well. I left Aldrich at the palace. A boy emperor arriving with a steward and an honor guard is a man making an offer from above. A boy emperor arriving alone on blistered feet is just a man. And I have a feeling that whatever lives behind the House of Morn's cracked windows has had enough of men making offers from above. I know the name because everyone at court knew the name. The Morns were scholars, not the useless kind who copy prayers, but the dangerous kind who count things. 3 generations of them served my grandfather and my father as keepers of the ledgers, surveyors of the roads, the people who could look at a harvest and a tax roll and a map and tell you exactly where the empire was bleeding and exactly how to stop it, which is precisely why the old noble houses hated them. A family that can count is a family that can prove the counts are stealing. When my father died and the court became a nest of vultures with no one strong enough to protect the counters, the Morns were the first thing the vultures tore down. Accusations, whispers, a withdrawn charter. They were driven out of the upper district, their charter revoked, their name made a warning. This is what happens to those who count too closely. I always assumed they'd left the city like everyone else with any sense. The bell over the door is broken, so my entrance is silent. Inside, the shop is dim and smells of old paper and cold ash. No fire lit, though the morning bites. Books everywhere, floor to ceiling, but not the decoration of a rich man's library. These are working books, spines cracked, edges soft with handling, slips of paper marking 100 places. On a long table under the window, someone has been working. Sheets of calculation. A half-drawn map of the capital, weighted flat at the corners with stones. And behind the table, not looking up, a young woman says, "We're closed. We've been closed for 5 years. Whatever you're selling, the answer is no, and whatever you're buying, we haven't got it." "I'm not selling anything," I say, "and I'm buying exactly one thing, but we'll get to that." Now she looks up. She's perhaps my age, maybe a year or two older. Dark hair pulled back without care. Ink on her fingers, a plain gray dress that's been mended more than once and mended well. Her face is sharp, not unkind, but sharp. The face of someone who has spent her whole life seeing 2 steps further than everyone in the room and being punished for saying so. Her eyes go over me once, fast, and I watch her read me the way I'd read a ledger. The rag on the hands, the good coat gone, the plain shirt, the tiredness. Filing it all, adding it up. "You're the boy," she says. Not a question. The one they crowned in the roofless hall 4 days ago. Cassian Veldmar. A pause. "You dug a well." "News travels. News is the only thing in this city that still moves freely." She sets down her pen. She doesn't stand, doesn't bow, doesn't offer me the room. She just watches me with those sharp filing eyes. "Lysandra Morn. And I'll save you the walk back up the hill, your majesty. I know why you're here, more or less, and it won't work. Do you?" I say. "Tell me why I'm here then. Save us both the time." Something flickers at the corner of her mouth. Not a smile. The idea of one. "You're here," she says, "because someone finally told you the truth about your position, and the truth frightened you badly enough that you're doing something no Veldmar emperor has done in 300 years. Walking to the low end of the river street, alone, to beg a disgraced counting house for help. You've realized you have 40 days of grain, an empty treasury, no army, and 9 noble houses circling you like crows. You've realized you cannot count your way out of it because your father let them destroy the only people who could count. You've come to find one of us and see if we're still alive." She spreads her ink-stained hands over the table, over the calculations, over the half-drawn map. "As you can see, we're alive, barely. And the reason it won't work is very simple. I already did the sums on your empire. I do them for entertainment now, since no one pays me to do them for anything else." She taps the sheets. "Your empire is dead, Cassian Veldmar. Not dying dead. It simply hasn't finished falling over. The intelligent thing, the countable thing, is to leave it, as everyone with sense already has. Including, if I had anywhere to go, me. It's the most honest, most brutal, most useful thing anyone has said to me since the crown touched my head. The 9 nobles flattered me. Aldrich softened it out of love. This stranger just laid my death out on the table, like a column of figures, and dared me to check her arithmetic. I love it. God help me. It's exactly what I came for." I walk to the table. I look down at her half-drawn map of the capital, and I see in the margins in her sharp, cramped hand notes. River District. Unrecoverable without capital. Sewers. Collapsed. Sect. 3 to 7. Granary. Standing. Empty. Wall. Breached. NE. Repairable. She hasn't just written off the city. She's been mapping exactly how it broke. "You don't map the breaking of something you don't care about." "You're right," I tell her. "About all of it. 40 days, empty treasury, no army, 9 crows, dead and hasn't finished falling. Your sums are correct." I look up at her. "So let me ask you the only question that matters. If your sums are so correct, why are you still drawing this map?" She goes still. "You could have left," I press. Quiet. "You've got a mind that any of the trade cities on the coast would pay a fortune for. Viven Dufour would hand you a house and a salary tomorrow to count her ledgers. You've had 5 years and every reason to go. And instead, you're sitting in a cold shop with no fire, drawing a map of exactly how a dead city broke down to which sections of sewer collapsed. That's not the work of someone who's written the city off, Lysandra Morn. That's the work of someone who can't stop trying to solve it." I let that sit for a breath. "You didn't do these sums for entertainment. You did them because it's your home and they took it from your family, and some part of you still wants to know if it could be fixed." The idea of a smile is gone. Her jaw is tight. "I've hit something and we both know it. Wanting a thing and the thing being possible," she says, low, "are different columns. I don't confuse them. Sentiment is how your father lost the counting houses in the first place. I'm not asking you for sentiment. I'm asking you for the opposite." I put both wrapped hands flat on her table, on her map, and I make her the offer I walked down the hill to make. "I'm not going to lie to you, and I'm not going to try to buy you, because you'd see through both instantly and I'd deserve it. Here's the plain truth. I can't pay you. I have no coin. I have an iron crown and blistered hands, and a promise I made to 50 people in a square that I can't yet keep. That's my whole treasury. Then we have nothing to but." I say, "You just told me the smart thing is to leave a dead city. And I think you're bored of doing the smart thing, because the smart thing is easy, and you are not a person who respects easy. So I'm not offering you the smart thing. I'm offering you the impossible one." I hold her eyes. "Everyone with sense has written this city off. You wrote it off. My court wrote it off. Kronberg wrote it off 5 years ago. They didn't even bother to occupy it. They just broke it and left. Because a corpse doesn't need a garrison. Every counting mind on this continent has run the sums and reached the same answer. It can't be done." I lean in. "Prove them wrong. Not for me. For the arithmetic. For the pure vicious pleasure of taking the problem that every clever person swears is unsolvable and solving it. I don't have gold, Lysandra, but I have the single most interesting problem in the world sitting on a hill, and I'm offering you the chance to be the mind that cracks it. I straighten up. That's the one thing I came to buy. Not your loyalty. I haven't earned that. Your curiosity. Come and tell me I'm a fool. Come and prove the city's dead. And if while you're proving it, you happen to find the one loose stone that everyone else missed, well then we'll both know something the rest of them don't. For a long moment she says nothing. The wind moves outside. Somewhere down the street a cart rattles over broken cobbles. Then Lysandra Morn looks down at her own map. At the notes in the margins, the breaches and the collapses and the repairable, that one hopeful word she wrote and probably hated herself for, and she exhales through her nose, slow, like a woman surrendering to a vice she'd sworn off. You understand, she says, that I will almost certainly prove you're a fool. I'm counting on the almost, and that I'm doing this because it's the most interesting arithmetic on the continent, not because I believe in you. I want that written in the ledger clearly. I believe in the problem, not the boy. Written and witnessed, I say. Believe in the problem. That's all I ask. She stands, finally. She's shorter than me, but she doesn't feel it. She pulls a fresh sheet of paper toward her, uncaps her ink, and for the first time her sharp face has something in it that isn't tiredness. It's the terrible bright focus of a mind that has been starving for something worth doing, and has just been handed a feast. Then sit down, your majesty, she says, and stop bleeding on my map. If we're going to raise the dead, we should at least do it in the correct order. And behind my eyes, quiet, the pain of pale gold unfolds. A bond is formed. Lysandra Morn stands with you. Truth of bond, 15%. She believes in the work. She does not yet believe in you. This is a true beginning, though a small one. For it small means a figure settles into my awareness, modest but real. The first entry in 5 years on the correct side of the ledger. Not enough to buy the grain, not nearly, but enough to prove the system doesn't lie. A real bond, however small, and real coin flows. 15% of a heart, and already the empire has more than it did this morning. I don't tell her about the gold. Not yet. A woman who believes in problems and not in boys will not be won by a boy who suddenly produces coins from the air. She'll be won by results. So I sit down and I bleed somewhere other than her map, and I say, the correct order. Show me. She shows me. It takes the rest of the day, and it is, without question, the most impressive thing I have ever watched a human mind do. She sweeps the half-drawn map aside and pins up a fresh full one, the whole of Ashenfeld, drawn from memory, accurate to the street. And then she begins to build the city back in the correct order, out loud, her pen moving. And for the first time I stop seeing a pile of broken things and start seeing a system, a machine with parts, each depending on the last. Everyone who looks at your city, she says, sees 1,000 problems and panics. That's the error. A city isn't 1,000 problems. It's a sequence. You cannot fix everything, so you must fix things in the order that each fix makes the next one possible. Get the order wrong and you spend your last coin on a cathedral while the people die of dysentery. Get it right and each stone you lay helps lay the next. She circles a point on the map. So, first principles. What kills a city fastest? Hunger, I say, 40 days. Wrong. Thirst and sickness. And you already started fixing it by accident with your well, which is the first sensible thing a Veldmar has done in a decade. Bad water empties a district faster than an empty granary. People can ration food for weeks. But foul water kills in days, and a sick population cannot work, cannot farm, cannot rebuild. So, she writes, at the base of a pyramid. 1. Water. Clean water first. Your well proved it can be done cheaply, with willing hands and no coin. We repeat it. Every district, every dead well and cracked cistern reopened. It costs almost nothing but labor, and labor is the one thing a desperate city has in surplus. It buys us healthy bodies. Healthy bodies are the workforce for everything above it on this pyramid. Point 2, food, she writes next. Then hunger your 40 days. But notice, we solve water first because a starving man can still dig a well, but a sick man can't even do that. Water buys us the hands to solve food. 3. The wall. Then the northeast breach in the wall. Not for pride, for the fields. No one farms outside the walls because Kronberg raiders cross the border and burn what grows. Close the breach, put even a token watch on it, and suddenly the near fields are safe enough to work. Safe fields mean next year's harvest. The wall isn't defense. On this pyramid, the wall is food, 1 year out. 4. Production. And only then, only when the people have water and food and safe fields do we rebuild the workshops, the forges, the mills. Because production needs workers who aren't sick, aren't starving, aren't afraid. Try to rebuild your economy before the base of this pyramid is solid, and you're building on corpses. She caps the pen and steps back. Water, food, wall, production. In that order and no other. Everyone else who's looked at your city tried to solve it all at once and drowned. This is how the dead get raised. 1 layer at a time, each one holding up the next. I look at the pyramid. 4 words. And in 4 words, she's turned a hopeless ruin into a to-do list. Brutal and long, but a list with a first item I can start tomorrow. You realize, I say quietly, you've just done in 1 afternoon what my entire court couldn't do in 5 years. Your court wasn't trying to save the city, she says, gathering her sheets. Your court was trying to loot it slowly, different arithmetic entirely. Then she pauses, and glances at me sidelong and adds, almost grudging, "It's a good problem, I'll give you that. It's a genuinely good problem." 15% the system said. She believes in the work, not the boy. It's a start. It's one stone. But that night, going over her food figures by candlelight, she made me copies, in a hand far neater than mine. The ledger part of me finds the crack. The numbers don't reconcile. The tax rolls from before the sack say the granary district should have held enough seed grain in reserve to carry the poorest through 2 hard winters. Kronberg burned the river district and sacked the treasury, but the granary, Lysandra's own map notes, is standing, empty. Standing, not burned. So, where did 2 winters of reserve grain go? If the building that held it never burned, I bring it to her at dawn. She's already awake, already working, as if she never stopped. I put the figures in front of her and I watch her sharp eyes go over them, and I watch her reach the same crack I did. Faster. The granary didn't burn, she says slowly, and an empty standing granary isn't a tragedy of war. It's a theft. Someone emptied it, and an empty granary that everyone believes was lost in the sack. Her jaw tightens. Is the perfect place to hide grain you intend to sell back to a starving city at 10 times the price when winter comes. There it is, not gone hidden. Food for our 40 days and more, sitting in the dark somewhere in this city, held by someone patient and cruel who is counting on hunger to make it precious. We find it, I say. Whoever's holding it. We find the grain. We find it, she agrees, already pulling maps, already alive with the hunt, and I realize that this right here is the 15% doing exactly what it should. She doesn't care yet whether I live or die, but put a hidden number in front of her, a lie in the arithmetic, and Lysandra Morn will chase it to the ends of the earth. For now, that's enough. In a counting room on the safe side of the city, a room with a good fire and a full cellar, a merchant named Call receives an unwelcome message. The boy emperor has been seen twice now at the House of Morn. Call is not a brave man and he sweats. He is holding grain that does not belong to him, in a granary the whole city believes was burned, and he has been promised a great deal of gold to hold it until the cold makes the people desperate. He did not choose this scheme himself. He hasn't the nerve for it. He is only the hand that holds it. He dips his pen and writes quickly, to the man whose scheme it truly is, a man far above him, a man who sat at the old emperor's own council table and smiled through the funeral, a man whose name Call has been forbidden ever to write plainly. So he writes, as instructed, only the initial they agreed on. My Lord V, the letter begins. The boy has found the Morn woman. She counts. If she counts closely enough, she will find what we are holding. Advise, he seals it, he sends it east and up. And far away, the man who sat at the old emperor's table reads it by his own good fire, and is not troubled. Not yet only mildly pleasantly interested, the way a spider is interested when the web first trembles. A boy and a disgraced girl playing at sums. He has spent 5 years keeping this empire weak from the inside, quietly, patiently, and he does not intend to stop over one well and one clever woman. But he makes a note in his own ledger of the name Morn, just in case. The grain is under a wool warehouse, and it takes Lysandra 4 days to prove it without ever leaving her shop. She doesn't search the city. Searching the city is what a soldier would do, and it would fail. Whoever's hiding the grain would simply move it. Instead, she does what she was born to do. She counts. She sends Aldrich out with quiet questions, not about grain, never about grain, but about carts. How many wagons came through the East Gate each week these past 2 months? Who hired them? What the drivers were paid to haul, and how heavy the loads rode on their axles, and where they went. Grain is heavy and grain is bulky, she tells me, spreading her figures across the table on the 5th morning. You cannot hide the moving of it, only the thing itself. A man hauling wool rides light. A man hauling wool that is secretly grain rides low on his springs and wears out his axles, and complains about it to other drivers in the tavern, because drivers always complain. She taps a column. 6 wagons, riding far heavier than wool should ride, all hired by a factor working for a merchant named Call, all bound for the same wool warehouse near the East Gate over the last 2 months. That warehouse is receiving the weight of a small harvest and shipping out almost nothing. Grain goes in, grain does not come out. She looks up and there's a cold satisfaction in her sharp face. It's sitting there, waiting for the cold to make it gold. I look at the arithmetic that found a hidden crime through the wear on wagon axles, and I think, whatever it costs me, I'm never letting this mind leave. Then we take it, I say carefully. She corrects. Call is a coward and a hireling. This scheme is too patient and too cruel to be his own idea. Someone above him is paying him to hold it. If we simply seize the grain, the man above stays hidden and comes at us again. If we're clever, we take the grain and learn something about who Call answers to. Her pen hovers. But that's the greedy play, and greedy plays go wrong. The people come first. We take the grain now openly, and let the hidden man keep his secret a while longer. Feeding 12,000 people beats catching one spider. She meets my eyes. That's your call though, Majesty. Grain now, or patience for the bigger fish. Grain now, I say without hesitating. Every time, the people don't eat spiders. Something in her expression shifts a small recalibration, a figure adjusted. She expected me to want the bigger prize. I didn't, and I watch her file that away. We do it openly, and we do it with witnesses, because Lysandra understands something I'm only beginning to learn, that how a thing is seen is half of what it is. I don't send soldiers, I have none. I go myself at midday with Aldrich and the 5 men from the well, and behind us, drawn by word that the boy emperor is doing something in the open, a growing crowd of the hungry. We walk to the wool warehouse near the east gate, and I hammer on the door with my own fist. And when Call's factor opens it and sees the crowd, sees me, sees the iron crown I've worn on purpose today, he goes the color of tallow. By the authority of the crown, I say loud enough for the whole street to hear, this warehouse is open for inspection, stand aside or be moved aside. Call himself comes waddling out, sweating, full of bluster, private property, lawful goods, wool for the Western markets, and I let him talk, because every word he says is heard by 50 starving witnesses, and every word digs him deeper. Then I nod to the barge brothers, and they put their shoulders to the great doors, and the doors swing wide, and there it is. Not wool. Grain. Sacks of it, floor to rafter. In the cool dark, more grain than this district has seen in 5 years. Enough to carry the poor clean through winter with reserve to spare. Sitting in the dark waiting to be sold back to dying people at 10 times its worth. The crowd makes a sound I will never forget. Not a cheer. A kind of low collective gasp, and then a growl, as 12,000 people's worth of hunger looks upon the food that was stolen from them and hidden in the dark. Call starts to babble. I turn to him, and I don't shout, because I've learned that too. The quiet voice carries further than the loud one when a crowd has gone silent to listen. You held food from starving people, I say, to sell it back to them when the cold made them desperate enough to pay anything. You counted on their hunger. You made their suffering your investment. I let that land. The grain is seized in the name of the crown, and it will be distributed at fair price, and to those who cannot pay, at no price, until the harvest. You will not be harmed, Call, because I don't rule by the axe. But you're finished in this city, and everyone here will remember your face. It's a small face slap as these things go. Cole is a coward and a hireling, not a great villain. But the crowd watches a boy in an iron crown throw open a door and turn stolen grain into their survival, and something happens in that street that no coin could buy. The worn down nothing in their faces cracks. For the first time, the whispered name in the low districts isn't the dead boy on the hill, it's the emperor who found the grain. Lysandra watches from the edge of the crowd, and when our eyes meet across it, she gives me the smallest nod. Not 15%'s worth, something more. The nobles answer 4 days later, and they answer the way cornered vultures always do, not at me but at the thing they think I care least about. They come for the House of Morn. I'm at the palace when Aldrich brings the word, breathless, men in the livery of Lord Halvern's house, a dozen of them down at the river street. Not soldiers exactly, bravos, the kind of muscle a great house keeps for ugly errands. They've come with torches in daylight and a withdrawn charter writ that Halvern has clearly bought from some pliable magistrate, declaring the House of Morn's premises forfeit for debts and seditious counting. They mean to burn the shop. They mean to burn 5 generations of ledgers and maps and knowledge and the woman inside it and call it law. And the message is not really for Lysandra, it's for me. You made us look foolish over the grain, boy. So we'll take the counter you've been seen with, and remind you what happens to anyone who stands near you. Here's the moment the ledger part of me does a cold sum, and the cold sum says, don't. Lysandra is 15%. She believes in the problem, not in me. She's the single most valuable mind on the continent, and she is not yet mine, and if I ride down there and put my own body between her and Halvern's bravos, I risk everything. The crown, the fragile momentum, my life for a woman who has told me plainly she doesn't believe in me, and stays only for the arithmetic. Cold sum says protect the throne, send a message, negotiate. Don't risk the whole game for one piece. I don't listen to the cold sum. I don't listen because of a thin woman with a child in a doorway, worn down to nothing. I don't listen because of 50 faces in a square around a well. I don't listen because somewhere under all the arithmetic I have decided what kind of emperor I'm going to be. And the kind who lets his people burn to protect his position is the kind Kronberg already made of this city. I will not rule a corpse the way Otto von Kronberg made a corpse. I take Aldrich and the 5 men from the well, and I go down the hill at a dead run. We reach the river street as the first bravo is putting his torch to a heap of ledgers dragged into the road, and Lysandra Morn is standing in the doorway of her burning family's shop, with a fireplace poker in both hands and absolutely no chance, facing down 12 armed men with nothing but fury and a fixed refusal to move. I put myself between her and them, just that. I walk into the gap, iron crown on my head, empty hands raised, and I stand between the poker and the torches, and I say to Halvern's men in the quiet carrying voice, the next man who moves is raising his hand against the crown itself, in front of every witness on this street, and I will see him hang for treason, not by my axe, by his own peers. Law, the same law you forged that writ from. I look at the man with the torch. You're bravos, not fools. Halvern paid you for an easy errand against an unprotected woman. It just stopped being easy. He didn't pay you enough to hang. Put it down. For one terrible held breath. It could go either way. 12 of them. 6 of us. The torch burning. But I've read them right. The way Lysandra reads Axel's. They're hirelings, like Call. They came for an easy cruelty, and instead, they've got the Emperor's own body in the way, and a street full of witnesses, and the word treason hanging in the air. And the sum they're now running is how much is Halvern paying me, and is it enough to die for? It isn't, it never is for hirelings. The torch drops, someone stamps it out, and Halvern's dozen back away down the street and it's over and I'm still standing. and the house of mourn is scorched but not burned, and behind me I hear the poker clatter to the ground. I turn. Lysandra is staring at me. Her sharp face has come completely undone, the tiredness gone, the armor gone. 5 years of no one ever came cracked wide open. Ledgers smoldering at her feet, 5 generations of her family's work half saved by a boy who had every rational reason not to come, and came anyway. You shouldn't have done that, she says, and her voice isn't steady. The arithmetic was against it. I'm one piece. You risked the entire. She stops. She's a woman who lives by the correct column, and she's just watched me throw the correct column away for her, and it's broken something loose that all my words in her shop never could. Why? Why would you do that? It doesn't balance. Because some things aren't in the ledger, I say, because you're not one piece to me. And because I decided the day I dug that well, that I would not be the kind of man who lets people burn to keep his position. If that's a bad sum, then I'm a bad accountant, and I'll die one. I hold out my hand to her, over the smoking ruin of her family's papers. But I don't think you believe I'm a bad accountant anymore. I think that's the problem. She looks at my hand. She looks at the scorched shop. She looks at me. Really looks. The filing eyes gone soft and startled and seeing something new. No, she says slowly. No, I don't think you're a bad accountant. A breath. I think you're the most reckless, most sentimental man I've ever met. And I think the some say I should walk south tomorrow and never look back. Her jaw sets and something in her eyes decides, and I think I'm not going to. Because somewhere in the last week, the problem stopped being, can this city be saved, and started being, can it be saved with him? And God help me, Cassian. That's a more interesting problem, and I want to solve it. And I want to solve it beside you, and not from a shop at the wrong end of the river street. She takes my hand. I believe in the work. That hasn't changed. But somewhere this week I started believing in the one doing it. Don't make me regret writing that in the ledger. A bond deepens. Lysandra Morn stands with you. Truth of bond, 71%. She believes in the work, and now, in you. She chose this with her eyes open, knowing every column, and chose it anyway. This is a true oath, sovereign and deeply meant. For it true means. The pane of gold blazes brighter than it ever has, and this time the figure that settles into me is not modest. It is a flood. The first real capital in 5 years. Gold and materials and the sheer solid weight of means, pouring into an empire that this morning had an iron crown and a promise. The empty treasury, empty for 5 years, is empty no longer. The marriage is Lysandra's idea, in the end, and she makes it in the way only she would, not with romance, but with a proposal laid out in clean logic on a fresh sheet of paper. 3 days later, in a shop we're already rebuilding. The system pays for true bonds, she says, having pried the secret of the gold out of me. Because of course she did. The truest is the marriage oath. I've run it every way. I believe in you and the work truly. I've checked the figure against my own honest accounting, and it holds, and the empire needs what a true oath brings. It's the correct arithmetic, and it's what I want, which almost never happens at once, so I'd be a fool to waste it. A pause, and then, quieter, the first unguarded thing she's ever said to me. Also, I find I'd rather solve the rest of this beside you than anywhere else. Put that in the ledger too, if you like. I put it in the ledger. I say yes, and I mean it, and the system feels that I mean it, and the gold that pours in from that oath is greater still, not a trophy. Her choice made with her eyes open, every column checked, the best kind of oath there is. We spend the gold exactly as she planned in the correct order, and I watch her pyramid start to become real stone. Water first, the well repeated across every district, dead cisterns reopened, the labor paid now in real coin, which means willing hands and fast work. Then food calls, seized grain distributed fair and free, and the first coins spent buying more from the southern trade towns before winter closes the roads. And then the wall, the northeast breach where Kronberg's raiders cross to burn the fields. We don't have masons enough, so Lysandra organizes it the way she organizes everything as a system. The old mason from the well, his bad leg and his good eye, becomes foreman. We don't quarry new stone, which would take months we don't have. Instead, we reclaim it, from the gutted mansions of the upper district, the great empty houses, the fled nobles left to rot, their marble and dressed stone, useless as monuments to abandonment, comes down off those dead walls and goes up into the breach where it will keep raiders off next year's harvest. There's a justice in it that even Lysandra allows herself to smile at. The stones of the families who ran, rebuilt into the wall that protects the families who stayed. The work is organized in shifts, fed from the granary, paid in the new coin. Men who were dying of nothing to do 6 weeks ago now, have a wage and a purpose and a wall rising under their hands that they can point to. The barge brothers run the stone hauling. The old soldier, 2 fingers gone, minds the ropes and the scaffolding. The 10-year-old boy from the well appears every day and is given real small tasks and paid a real small wage and stands a little straighter each week. And beside the wall, the first workshop, a single forge and a carpenter's shop, the seat of production, because Lysandra's pyramid says workshops come last. But she wants the first one standing early so the people can see the shape of what's coming. From it comes nails, hinges, tools, the small iron bones of a city putting itself back together. 6 weeks ago I had an iron crown in 40 days. Now I have clean water in every district, grain to winter, a wall closing against the raiders, a workshop lit, and a treasury with coin in it. The sum has changed. For the first time in 5 years, the empire is adding instead of only ever subtracting. In a warm hall to the east, the man who sat at the old emperor's table reads a nervous letter from a ruined merchant named Kal. The grain found, seized, distributed, the scheme broken, the boy praised in the streets. He does not smile this time. He sets the letter down and looks into his good fire for a long while, a well he could dismiss. But a boy who finds hidden grain through the wear on wagon axles has a mind beside him now, a counting mind, the Morn woman. The very kind he spent 5 years driving out of this empire, precisely because counting minds are dangerous to men who steal in the dark. The boy has found one. Worse, the boy has kept her. He is patient. He is not yet alarmed. He has other threads, deeper ones, and a wall and a well and a sack of grain do not undo 5 years of careful rot. But he takes up his own pen, and beneath the name Morn in his private ledger he adds a second line and underlines it once. Watch what the boy builds, and be ready when the time is right to burn it. That night before the gold and the grain and the letters east, there is a moment I keep. The wall is half built and Lysandra and I climb the scaffold at dusk to look at it, at the fresh stone rising pale against the dark, at the district below where for the first time in 5 years there are lit windows and cook fires and the small ordinary sounds of people who are going to make it to spring. The reclaimed marble catches the last light. Somewhere below someone is singing, badly, and no one is telling them to stop. Lysandra stands beside me with her arms crossed against the cold, her sharp face turned out over the city she'd written off in a cold shop 3 weeks ago. I ran the sums 100 times, she says quietly. Every one of them said this was impossible. Dead and hasn't finished falling. I was certain. She's quiet a moment. I've never been so glad to be wrong about arithmetic in my life. We're not done, I say. We're barely started. The pyramid's got a long way up. I know. She looks at the wall, at the water, at the lit windows. But look at it, Cassian. 6 weeks ago there was nothing here but ash and 40 days. Now she stops, and for once the counter is at a loss for the number. Now there's this. Now there's this, I agree. We stand on the half-built wall in the cold and the dark, and below us the dead city breathes, and I think we can really do this. We can actually do this. I don't say it out loud, but I feel her thinking it too, standing there beside me, and I know I'll come back to this wall someday, when it's whole, when the city is whole, when Kronberg is paid, and I'll remember the night it was half built, and we first let ourselves believe. The believing lasts until morning, when the wind shifts and brings the smell up from the lower districts, and reminds us both of the thing the pyramid can't skip. The water is clean now, but the streets aren't. The old sewers, the stone drains my ancestors built 300 years ago, collapsed in the fires, sections 3 through 7, Lysandra's map says. And so all the waste of 12,000 people still runs in the open gutters, pools in the low places, seeps back toward the very wells we've just reopened. Clean water poured into a city with no drains is clean water that fouls within the month. The pyramid's base isn't solid until the water has somewhere to go. We can reopen wells all day, Lysandra says grimly over her figures, and it won't matter if the streets stay open sewers. The sickness will come back with the first warm week. We need the drains rebuilt properly, underground, the whole network. And that she sets down her pen, and for the first time since the wall, she looks genuinely stopped. That is beyond me, Cassian. And beyond your mason. Rebuilding a buried sewer network isn't hauling stone into a breach. It's engineering grades, flows, arches that hold under a street, water made to run uphill and down by design. The people who knew how to build these drains have been dead 300 years. Then no one alive can do it. I didn't say that. She's frowning, chasing a memory. There's an order. Older than the counting houses, secretive, half a rumor. Builder mechanics. They kept the engineering knowledge when the rest of the world forgot it. How the ancients moved water, raised arches, made machines of stone. They don't share it. They don't take students from outside. They barely take letters. She looks up at me. But if anyone alive knows how to rebuild what your ancestors buried under these streets, how to make this city clean, and not just for a month, it's them. The order of the builder mechanic. I look out at the fouled streets, at the clean wells we've reopened, that will foul again with the first warm week, at the one thing standing between the base of Lysandra's pyramid and everything we want to build on top of it. Then we find them, I say. They're not found. Lysandra says. That's rather their whole point. But the idea of a smile again, the counter who loves an impossible problem, there are rumors of where they keep themselves. It won't be a pleasant journey. When has it been, I say. And I go to find Aldrich, and the city breathes behind me, clean water and fouled streets and a wall rising in the dark. One layer of the pyramid solid, the next one waiting, and somewhere out there an order of hidden engineers who are the only people alive who can lay it. The order of the builder mechanics lives inside a mountain, and they do not want to be found. It takes 11 days to reach them. Lysandra stays behind. The city cannot be left leaderless, and she is better at holding it together than I am. So I go with Aldrich, 2 of the barge brothers, and a mule train, following rumors up into the gray mountains north of the capital where the roads give out, and the rumors themselves grow thin. Twice we nearly turn back. Then on the 11th day, we come around a shoulder of rock, and find not a monastery, not a fortress, but a dam, an ancient, beautiful, impossible thing of dressed stone wedged into a gorge, holding back a green lake, so perfectly made that after who knows how many centuries it still stands without a crack, and carved into the living rock beside it. A door. They knew we were coming, of course. You don't climb 11 days into someone's mountain unnoticed. The door opens before I can knock, and a young woman stands in it, and behind her the mountain is humming, the deep sound of water moving through stone by design, of machinery turning somewhere in the dark. She's perhaps a little younger than me, slight, quiet, with pale calloused hands, and the kind of stillness that isn't shyness, but focus, the stillness of someone whose mind is always half inside a problem. Stone dust in her plain dark clothes. Her eyes go to me, then past me, to the dam, to the way the road climbs, measuring, always measuring. I know that. Look now, I married it. Though hers measures stone where Lysandra's measures numbers. You're the emperor who dug the well, she says. Her voice is soft and even. Word came up the mountain a month ago. A Veldmar doing his own labor. A pause. We didn't believe it. It's true. My hands can show you the scars if the story won't. The idea of something moves at the corner of her mouth and is gone. I'm Aglaya. The order sent me to hear you and to send you away politely. We don't take petitioners and we don't share what we know. That's the whole of my instruction. So say what you came to say and I'll say no, and you'll have your answer, and your long walk down. Behind me, Aldrich stiffens at the bluntness. I don't. After Lysandra, blunt is restful. May I see it first? I ask, nodding at the dam. Before you say no, I've come 11 days. I'd like to at least look at the thing your order can build before you tell me you won't build it for me. Aglaya considers this. Then, because a maker can rarely resist showing her work to someone who genuinely wants to see it, she steps aside. Inside the mountain is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen, and it is plumbing. That sounds like a joke, it isn't. The order has carved a whole world into the rock, and every part of it is water-made obedient channels that carry the green lake through the mountain, and turn wheels with it. Wheels that drive hammers and bellows and lifts, cisterns that fill and empty by clever valves no hand touches, arches that hold tons of stone over open halls with a grace that makes them look weightless, warm rooms heated by water piped from somewhere deep, clean water in every hall, running and sweet, wastewater carried away, unseen, downward, gone. A city's worth of engineering, perfected, hidden in a mountain by an order of people who solved 300 years ago every single problem that is currently killing my capital. Aglaya walks me through it, and though she's under orders to send me away, she can't help herself. She explains. Not lecturing, just answering, because I keep asking, and my questions aren't a petitioner's flattery, but the real questions of a man who has been fighting fouled water for 2 months and suddenly sees it solved all around him. How does the waste go? Grade, everything falls, even by a finger's width over a span, if you know how to survey it. How does the arch hold? It doesn't push down, it pushes out into the stone on either side. You build the sides strong and the span carries itself. How is the water clean? Bring it from above the town, never below. Let nothing foul run back into what you drink. Keep the two waters forever apart. Keep the two waters forever apart. I think of my clean reopened wells and my fouled open gutters seeping back into them, and I understand, standing in this humming mountain, exactly what my city is dying of and exactly what would save it. You could fix a city, I say quietly, couldn't you? All of this you could build it under streets. Clean water in, foul water out, kept apart. You could stop a plague before it started. We could, Aglaya says. We don't. The order builds for the order. We keep the knowledge alive by keeping it closed. The moment we start selling it to kings, it becomes a weapon, and cities besiege each other's aqueducts, and the knowledge dies in a war within a generation. It's happened before, so we stay in the mountain and we keep it and we don't share. She says it like a catechism, worn smooth by long repetition, but her eyes when she looks at me aren't smooth. They're the eyes of a maker who has just watched a man fall in love with her craft for the right reasons, and who is under orders to send him home. I'm not asking you to sell it to a king, I say. Kings buy weapons. I'm asking you to help me keep 12,000 people from dying in their own filth this spring. That's not a weapon, Aglaya. That's the opposite of a weapon. That's the thing your knowledge was for before the order got so frightened of losing it that you buried it in a mountain and let the world outside die of thirst next to your locked door. It's sharper than I mean it. She goes still, really still, the focused stillness gone rigid. That's not fair, she says quietly. No, I admit, it's not. I'm sorry. You didn't make the world's cruelty, and it's not yours to fix. I look around the humming, perfect, hidden mountain. But I look at all this, at what you can do, at what you are, and then I think of a woman I saw in a doorway with a sick child, drinking from a river that everything drains into. Because the drains my ancestors built fell down and no one alive knows how to raise them again except the people locked in this mountain. And I can't make the two pictures sit quietly next to each other. That's all. I'm not angry at you. I'm angry that the knowledge to save her exists, and it's here, and she's there, and the distance between them is a rule. Aglaya doesn't answer, but something in her has cracked open the way. Something in Lysandra cracked open on the burning street. The recognition, maybe, that the thing you were raised to guard might be worth more spent than kept. She doesn't say yes. Not then. What she says is, show me. Not the mountain, my city. She comes down with us, alone, against her order's instruction, but not quite against its rule. I'm permitted to assess, she says, which is a maker finding the loophole that lets her go see an interesting problem. 11 days back down, and the whole way she asks questions, now real ones, about grades and soils, and where the old drains ran, and I realize she's already half building it in her head, the way Lysandra couldn't stop counting a city she'd written off. When we come over the last rise and Ashenfeld lies below us, the half-built wall pale in the sun, the lit windows, the fouled streets. Aglaya stops and looks at it for a long time. Your drains ran there, she says, pointing. reading 300-year-old engineering off the shape of the land itself. And there, the old builders knew what they were doing. They used the fall of the hill. Sections collapsed, you said. 3 through 7. She's quiet. It's rebuildable. The bones are still under the streets. We wouldn't be building new. We'd be raising what's already there, correctly. She looks at me. I'm still not saying yes, but I want to see the collapsed sections before I say no. Take me to the worst street in the city. I take her to the worst street in the city. And that's where it turns not with a speech, but with the two of us. And Lysandra, standing ankle deep in the thing my people have been dying of. And Aglaia crouching down in it without flinching, pale hands in the filth, feeling along the broken lip of a 300-year-old drain, her focused stillness total, and saying almost to herself, oh yes, I see how they did it. I see exactly how they did it. And then looking up at me with something lit behind her eyes that no catechism could keep smooth. I can raise this. I know I can. The order can be angry with me later. This needs building, and then we build. This is the part I will remember when I am old. The winter we raised Ashenfeld out of its own filth, not with magic. The system gives me the ancient plans, drawn out of nothing in pale gold. The full network as my ancestors made it. But the plans are only paper. Aglaia is the one who makes them stone, and the people are the ones who dig. She organizes it the way Lysandra organizes numbers, and I'm learning to organize men as a system, in the correct order. First, the survey. Aglaia walks every street with a device of her own making. A simple frame with a weighted string and a level, marking the fall of the land, finding the fingers width grades that will make water run where we want it. Everything falls. She keeps saying, teaching the old mason and the barge brothers to read the land the way she does. You just have to know which way, and by how much, and never fight it. Then the digging. We open the streets in sections 3 through 7, the collapsed lengths, and it is filthy, brutal, freezing work, and the whole city turns out for it, because Lysandra has arranged it so that every man who digs is paid from the treasury and fed from the granary. And because I dig too, on the worst days, in the worst sections. Iron Crown left at home and hands in the muck beside my people. The barge brothers run the excavation crews. The old soldier minds the shoring that keeps the trenches from caving. The boy from the well, taller now steadier, runs messages between Aglaia's survey marks and the digging crews, and has appointed himself, without asking anyone, the keeper of Aglaia's levels and strings, guarding her tools like treasure. Aglaia teaches as she builds, she can't help it. The maker in her needs the work done right, and doing it right means the men have to understand it. She shows them how the arch of a drain carries the weight of the street above by pushing out, not down, how to set the stones so the invisible line of force runs true, how a channel laid to the correct grade will run clean forever with no hand to tend it, while one laid wrong will clog in a season. Rough dock workers and out-of-work masons, men who 6 weeks ago had nothing, learn the closed secrets of a mountain order in a frozen trench, and take a fierce pride in it. We're building it right, it'll outlast us. We reclaim stone again from the same dead mansions. Their dressed marble come down off abandoned walls to line the drains that will carry a city's filth away underground. And above the drains, once a section is buried and sealed, we lay the first proper roads Ashenfeld has had in 5 years. Paved, crowned in the center so rain sheds to the sides, drained into the very network below. No more mud, no more standing water. Streets a cart can cross in the wet without sinking to the axle, and the water in. This is Aglaia's masterwork, and it takes the whole winter. An aqueduct, a channel of stone marching down from a clean spring in the high ground north of the city above the town. Always above, keep the two waters forever apart. Carried across the low ground on arches she designs and we build, arch by arch, each one holding itself up by pushing into the next. Clean mountain water, brought to the city by nothing but the patient fall of the land and the genius of an arch, to feed fountains in every district that run day and night and never foul, because nothing foul can reach them. The day the aqueduct first runs, the whole city comes to the central square, the same square where I dug the well a lifetime ago in the autumn. Aglaia opens the final sluice herself. She's filthy, exhausted, stone dust and drain muck ground into her clothes and her pale hands after a winter in the trenches. And she doesn't care, and neither do I, because we're all filthy. All of us. The emperor and the counter and the mountain maker and 10,000 diggers, standing in the square in the thin spring light waiting for water. It comes with a sound, far up the aqueduct. A gate lifts and you can hear it, a rushing, growing, rising sound. Clean water running down the stone channel we built with our hands across a whole winter. Arch by arch, closer and closer, until it reaches the great fountain in the square, and bursts up into the air, clean and bright and cold, catching the spring sun and throwing it in 1,000 shaking pieces of light over a city that 4 months ago drank from a sewer. The sound the crowd makes this time is a roar. Not a gasp, not a growl, a roar. 10,000 people who have watched their city die for 5 years and spent a winter raising it from its own filth with their own frozen hands, watching clean water leap into the sky. Children run into the fountain spray, shrieking. The thin woman from the doorway, I look for her, and she's there, her child on her hip, and the child is not gray anymore. The child is fat and shrieking and well, because the sickness went out of the low districts weeks ago when the drains first ran, and she stands in the spray with her healthy child, and she is weeping, and this time when she looks at me, it is not with worn down nothing. It is with something I don't have a word for and don't deserve and will spend the rest of my life trying to. Beside me, Aglaya watches the water she brought down a mountain leap into the sky over a saved city, and the focused stillness finally breaks, and her filthy, exhausted face opens into a smile of pure, astonished joy, the joy of a maker who has, for the first time in the history of her closed and frightened order, spent the knowledge instead of hoarding it, and seen what it does. That's what it was for, she says quietly, watching the children in the spray. All of it. The mountain, the knowledge, all those centuries of keeping it. It was for this. We forgot. We got so frightened of losing it that we forgot what it was for. She turns to me, water light dancing on her face. Thank you. For being angry at the right thing. For making me remember. The change over that winter is the largest before and after I've yet lived. For a city drinking from its own sewers, sickness emptying whole tenements, streets of standing filth, mud to the axle, a fouled well in a broken square. 12,000 people, dying by degrees, waiting for spring only to learn what fresh horror spring's warmth would breed in the water. After clean water leaping in fountains in every district, drains carrying the city's filth away unseen, paved roads shedding the rain, the sickness simply gone, not managed, gone, because you cannot have a plague of foul water in a city where the two waters are forever kept apart. Aglaya's arches marching down from the hills, a healthy population growing instead of dying, that spent a winter learning it could build, and now looks at its own hands differently. Lysandra's pyramid, its base at last made solid, water, truly solved this time, permanently, and a healthy workforce standing on top of it ready for everything above. And Aglaya, somewhere in that winter of shared, filthy, freezing, joyful work, not in a moment, but in 1,000 small ones, passing tools, solving problems side by side in the trenches. The quiet understanding of two people who both love a thing built right. Something grew between us, warm and unhurried, and true. Not the sharp electric meeting of minds I have with Lysandra, something calmer. The deep, quiet warmth of building something beautiful together and knowing the other sees it too. She doesn't go back to the mountain. The order does, in the end, learn what she did. And that's a reckoning still ahead. One I can feel coming. But she stays, and she takes her place as the one who builds, the master of the stone and the water and the roads, and when the marriage comes it is as quiet and true and unforced as everything else about her. Sworn not in grand words but standing together by the fountain she raised, filthy hands clasped, both of us knowing exactly what we're promising, and both of us meaning it all the way down. A true oath, sovereign. Aglaya stands with you. Truth of bond, deep and quiet and real. For it true means and the knowledge of the mountain, now yours to build with. The gold and the means pour in, and with them something new, not just coin, but capability. The engineering itself, arches and grades and aqueducts, added to what my empire can do. Far to the east, the man who sat at the old emperor's table receives a longer letter than usual, and reads it twice. The boy has an aqueduct. The boy has drains, roads, clean water, a healthy growing city where 4 months ago there was a dying one. The boy has somehow pried a builder out of the mountain order, which has refused kings for 300 years. And the boy is raising his capital out of the ash faster than should be possible. The spider does not smile anymore. He sits with the letter a long while, and for the first time a thread of genuine calculation runs cold through his patience. A well was nothing. Grain was a nuisance, but an aqueduct is not a gesture. An aqueduct is a city deciding to live, and a city that decides to live under a boy the people are beginning to love, with a counter and now a builder at his side. That is no longer a corpse that hasn't finished falling. That is something growing. And things that grow he knows must be cut early or not at all. He takes up his pen. He has kept his own counsel for 5 years, spending only nuisances against the boy a merchant here, a bought writ there. It is not yet time to spend the real threads, the deep ones, the ones that reach all the way to a warm, bright hall further east, still, to an emperor named Otto, who once made a clean, quick corpse of this city, and would be interested to learn it is breathing again. Not yet, but soon. He writes a single, careful line to a contact on the coast, and it is not about grain this time. It is about money, about the boy's one remaining weakness, the thing even an aqueduct cannot conjure. Watch his treasury, the spider writes. He builds faster than he can pay. Ambition outruns coin. When the money fails, and it will, that is where he breaks. Be ready there. Spider is right, and Lysandra sees it before I do. We're in the workshop 3 forges now, not 1. The seed of production sprouting exactly as her pyramid foretold, going over the figures on a spring evening. Aglaya sketching her next work on a slate. When Lysandra sets down her pen with the particular quiet, that means the arithmetic has found something I won't like. We've done the impossible, she says. I want to say that first because what comes next is going to sound like I'm ungrateful for it, and I'm not. Water, drains, roads, a wall, a healthy city, 3 forges, 4 months. It's a miracle, and we built it. She turns the ledger toward me. But look at the shape of it, Cassian. Look at where the line is going. I look, and I see it, the same crack I should have seen myself, if I weren't so drunk on fountains and cheering crowds. The gold from 3 true oaths was a flood. We have spent it, all of it. wisely and well on the base of the pyramid. And the base of the pyramid, water and drains and roads, doesn't pay you back. It saves lives. It makes a healthy workforce. It makes everything else possible. But it doesn't put coin in the treasury. And now Aglaya's aqueduct is done and her genius is straining at the leash to build more. She wants to raise the whole wall, not just the breach. She wants street lighting, public baths, a proper harbor works. The maker in her, unleashed after 300 years of her orders hoarding, sees 100 things this city needs and could have, and every one of them costs money. And the treasury, filled by 3 oaths, is emptying again, not into waste this time, but into building, which is a better death for money, but a death all the same. We are building faster than we can pay. Ambition is outrunning coin, exactly as a spider on the coast has written that it would. We need more true oaths in time, Lysandra says, and they'll come. But I won't have you marrying on a schedule to balance a ledger. That's exactly the lie the system doesn't pay for. And don't think I haven't watched you refuse to think that way, which is the only reason I trust you with any of this. She taps the figures, but oaths are slow and they must be true. And the building can't stop and wait for your heart to find the next real bond. So we need the other thing. The thing the base of the pyramid was built to make possible. She looks up at me, and the idea of a smile is entirely gone, replaced by the hard focus of a mind that has found the empire's next great problem. We need an economy, Cassie. Real coin flowing, made and traded and taxed money that comes in faster than we spend it. So the building pays for itself and never has to stop. Water and drains don't do that. Workshops barely begin to. We need trade, a mint, a harbor, markets, the machine that makes money instead of only spending it. And that, I say slowly, seeing where this goes, is not your art, or Aglaya's, no. Lysandra's jaw sets. I can count money. I can't make it flow. Neither can Aglaya. She can build the harbor, but she can't fill it with trade. That's a different genius entirely. And I'll be honest with you, Cassian. It's a genius I don't have and rather resent needing. A pause. There's one mind on this coast that does. The free city. The trade city where half your fled nobles ran with their gold. It runs on money the way the mountain runs on water. And it's run by one woman who is said to be the sharpest merchant on the continent. Vivienne Dufort. If anyone alive can teach this empire to make coin instead of only spending it, to build a harbor and fill it, to strike a coin people trust, to turn a saved city into a rich one, it's her. I look at the emptying treasury, at Aglaya's slate full of everything the city could still become, at the crack in the ledger that no aqueduct can fill. Then we go to the free city, I say, and we find Vivienne Dufort. Lysandra exhales, half a laugh, entirely without humor. You should know, before you fall in love with the idea, she says dryly, that Vivienne Dufort does nothing that doesn't turn her a profit. She won't be moved by sick children or saved cities, or your very effective habit of digging in the mud with your sleeves rolled up. She believes in exactly one thing, and it's money. The idea of a smile flickers back, thin and wary, which makes her by some distance the hardest oath you will ever try to make true. Good luck making a woman who loves only gold believe in you, Cassian, for anything other than what's in it for her. I think of a counter who believed only in problems, and a builder who believed only in her mountain, and I feel the old familiar pull of an impossible sum waiting to be solved. We'll see, I say, and I go to find Aldrich, and behind me the 3 forges glow in the spring dark, and the fountains run clean, and the treasury empties one coin at a time toward the next great problem. A city that has learned to live, and now has to learn to pay. The gold from Aglaya's oath comes in like the tide, and with it something I've never had before. A builder unleashed, with means, and a winter of proof behind her that this city can be raised. The system says it plainly the morning after the oath, capital. Yes, the flood of coin I've come to know. But also the other thing. The capability, engineering itself folded into what my empire can do. Aglaya is no longer a guest from a mountain. She's the master of the works, and she has a slate covered edge to edge with everything Ashenfeld could still become, and now, for a little while, the coin to build it. The base is solid, she tells me, and Lysandra, the 3 of us around the workshop table, that's become the real throne room of this empire. Forget the roofless hall. The work happens here, among the slates and the ledgers and the smell of the forges. Water in, water out, roads that shed the rain, the sickness gone. That's survival. Now I want to build the things that make it a city and not just a place people survive in. She sets down 3 sketches, one after another, and her quiet voice has the particular steadiness it gets when she's already seen the finished thing in her head. Light, walls, and a small pause machines for when Kronberg comes. Because they will come, and I'd rather build the answer now while we have the coin, than scramble for it when they're at the gate. We start with light, and light changes everything. I hadn't understood, until Aglaya explained it, how much of a city's fear lives in its darkness. Ashenfeld at night has been, for 5 years, a black and dangerous place, no lamps, no watch worth a name, streets where honest people bar their doors at dusk and surrender the dark to whoever's willing to take it. Cut purses, desperate men, the small ugly crimes that breed where no one can see. Half the reason the city felt dead was that for 12 hours out of every 24, it simply stopped. Everyone hidden behind doors waiting for a dawn that only brought more filth and hunger. Aglaya's answer is oil lamps, but the genius, as always with her, is in the system, not the object. Anyone can hang a lamp. She designs a network, standing iron lamp posts along every main street and square, each with a hooded reflector of polished tin that throws the light down and out where it's needed, instead of wasting it on the sky. The oil comes cheap from the southern trade towns, one of the few things we can still buy on credit. And she creates out of the men too old or too injured for the heavy building work, a corps of lamplighters, a job, a wage, a purpose for men who thought they had none, who go out each dusk with their long poles and their taper flames, and walk the city lighting it, post by post, until Ashenfeld glows. First night, the main streets are fully lit. I walk them with Aglaya, and it's like watching a person wake from a long faint. There are people out, after dark, walking, talking, standing in the pools of lamplight outside their doors. A woman sells hot chestnuts from a brazier at a lit corner where a month ago no one would have dared stand after sundown. Two old men play some game with stones on a doorstep, by lamplight, arguing happily. The chestnut seller, the game, the arguing, none of it could have existed in the dark. Light didn't just make the streets safer. It gave the people back half their lives, the half the darkness had been eating for 5 years. Crime lives in the dark, Aglaya says quietly, watching a group of children out after dusk, unafraid chase each other through the lamplight. You don't fight it with more guards, you fight it by taking the dark away. A lit street polices itself. Everyone becomes a watchman just by being able to see. She smiles her small smile. It's the cheapest law you'll ever buy, Cassian. Oil and tin and a few old men with poles. And suddenly half the crime in the city has nowhere to hide. Then the walls. And this is where the work turns its face. For the first time, toward the war I've promised is coming. The northeast breach we closed in the autumn was survival, keeping raiders off the near fields. Now Aglaya wants the whole circuit, the full wall of Ashenfeld, all the way round, raised and strengthened and made modern. Not the old high thin curtain wall my ancestors built, beautiful and useless against a real siege, but something lower, thicker, angled walls that can take the pounding of siege engines and throw it off, with projecting towers set so that defenders can rake any attacker who reaches the base from two sides at once. She's read about it, in the closed books of her order, 300 years of siegecraft that the mountain kept, and the world forgot, now coming down off her slate and rising in dressed stone around my city. A wall isn't a fence, she explains to the crews. She always teaches, always. The work must be understood to be done right. A high wall just falls impressively when they bring the rams. A good wall is low and thick and shaped so their engines can't get purchase and their men can't reach the base without dying. You're not building to keep them out forever. Nothing keeps them out forever. You're building so that the cost of coming in is higher than they're willing to pay. She looks at me when she says it, and I hear the strategy under the engineering, and I think how alike she and Lysandra are under the skin. For two women who argue about everything, and beside the walls, the machines. This is Aglaya at her most alive, and I'll admit, a little frightening. She builds the first siege engines Ashenfeld has had in a generation, not to attack. Not yet, but to defend, mounted on the new towers. Great torsion-driven throwers that can fling a stone further than any raider expects. Ranged and sighted by her own careful calculation. She test fires the first one out over the empty fields, and the stone flies so far and lands so hard that the whole work crew goes silent, and then cheers, and Aglaya stands there with soot on her face and something fierce and quiet in her eyes. And I understand that the woman who wept with joy over a fountain is the same woman who has just built a machine to break an army, and that both of those are her, and that I'm very glad she's on my side. Kronberg came once with 10,000 men and left before noon, because there was nothing here that could hurt them, she says, watching the dust settle where her stone fell. Next time they come, there will be, she turns to me. That's not a fountain, Cassian, I know. But it's the same knowledge, the same arches, the same understanding of force and grade and stone. The mountain kept it all together, the building and the breaking, because they're the same craft. I can raise water into the sky, and I can throw a stone through a wall, and it's the same mathematics. A pause. I'd rather build fountains. But I'll build these too for the day your promise comes due. And the baths. After the walls and the engines, which are grim work, Aglaya builds the baths almost as a gift to herself, and to the city great public bathhouses fed by the aqueduct. Warm water piped by the same mountain art that heats the halls of her order, where for a copper or for free the people of Ashenfeld can be clean, truly clean, for the first time in 5 years. It seems a small thing next to walls and engines. It isn't. A city that can bathe is a city that has stopped merely surviving and started living, and the baths become the beating social heart of the reborn districts. People meet there, talk there, do business there. The way Aglaya says they did in the cities of the ancient world, her order remembers. Survival first, she says, when I remark on it. Then dignity. A person who's clean and warm and safe after dark thinks differently than one who's filthy and cold and afraid. You can't build an empire on frightened, filthy people. They've got nothing left over to give you. Give them water, light, warmth, safety, and suddenly they've got something spare: pride, hope, the willingness to build. Everything I've built this spring, it's all the same project, really. She gestures at the lit streets, the rising walls, the steaming baths. Give the people enough that they can lift their heads. Then watch what they do with them lifted. It is around this time that the two sharpest women in my empire begin. gently to drive each other mad. It's not real conflict. I want to be clear about that because I spend enough energy worrying about real threats. It's the friction of two brilliant minds who love the same city and see it completely differently, and it produces some of the only comedy in these grim rebuilding months, and I would not trade it for peace. Lysandra thinks in systems and priorities what serves the whole in what order for the greatest return. Aglaya thinks in craft and correctness how a thing is made, and whether it's made right, down to the last stone. And these two ways of seeing collide constantly. The east wall towers can be simpler, Lysandra says over the ledgers. We need the circuit closed before autumn, and every day you spend perfecting the stonework on a tower is a day the wall isn't finished. Good enough, finished, beats perfect, half-built. There is no such thing as good enough in a load-bearing tower, Aglaya says, with the serene immovability of a mountain. Good enough is how you get a tower that stands for 10 years and then kills 40 men when it fails under the first real bombardment. I will not build a thing that fails. I would rather build it slowly and have it stand for 300 years. We may not have 300 years. We may have until autumn. Then the wall will be shorter and correct, rather than longer and lethal. And I sit between them, the emperor, supposedly the most powerful person in the room, and referee. And mostly what I do is discover that they're both right, which is the exhausting and wonderful truth of having married two geniuses who disagree. Lysandra is right that a wall unfinished by autumn is a wall that might as well not exist. Aglaya is right that a wall built wrong is worse than no wall. And the actual answer is always some third thing they hammer out between them, once they've stopped scoring points off each other, a way to build fast and sound that neither would have reached alone, that only exists because they pushed against each other until it appeared. No, they only argue like that because they respect each other, Aldrich observes dryly, watching one such battle from a safe distance. Neither one would waste the breath on someone she thought a fool. It's a kind of affection, Majesty, a prickly kind. I know, I say. I'm counting on it. Because an empire run by people who all agree is an empire with one point of view and 100 blind spots. I'd rather have Lysandra and Aglaya grinding sparks off each other and finding the third right answer than a court full of yes. The friction isn't a problem to solve. It's the engine. I just have to keep my hand steady on it. In a warm, bright hall to the east, the true east, further than the spider, the hall with all its roof and all its gold, Emperor Otto von Kronberg is told, over a long and excellent supper, that the Veldmar capital has lit its streets. He's heard the other reports, filtered up over the winter through the spider's careful hands and his own scattered eyes. The well, the grain, the drains, the aqueduct. He'd waved them off, one by one, a dying city twitching. Now his spymaster tells him the twitching city has lit lamps on every street, raised siege engines on new-built walls, and filled bathhouses with warm water, and that the boy is spoken of in the low districts, not as a doomed heir but as something dangerously close to beloved. Otto sets down his knife. He is not a stupid man. Stupid men do not sack capitals and go home before noon, and a cold thread of attention moves through him for the first time in 5 years regarding the son he'd forgotten. Lamps, he says, walls, engines, he considers. The boy is building a real city, not a gesture, a city that intends to last. He is quiet a moment, and his spymaster holds his breath, wondering if this is the moment the Emperor decides to correct Aschenfeld a second time, the way he corrected it 5 years ago. But Otto von Kronberg has ruled a long time, and patience is the whole of his cruelty. He picks his knife back up. Let him play, he says, and there is contempt in it. But there is something else too now, buried under the contempt, that was not there before a watchfulness. A boy can light lamps and raise walls, and it means nothing, because a city runs on gold, and the boy has none. He spends 3 oaths worth of borrowed miracles on stone and oil, and when the miracles run dry as they must, for no treasury is bottomless, his lit and pretty city will starve in the dark, and I will not even have to send an army. Ambition without coin eats itself. He returns to his supper. Watch his money, not his walls. When his money fails, tell me. Until then, a thin, cold smile. Let the boy light his lamps. It only makes it further to fall. It is the same contempt as the night of the well, but it is thinner now, stretched over the first faint shape of concern. And though Otto does not know it, he has just made his second small mistake. He has decided, again, to wait. And the thing he is waiting to see fail is growing stronger every single day that he does. The spider, closer and more careful than his distant emperor, does what small mischief he can, because he too is watching the money, and he too knows it's the weakness, and he'd like to hasten the day it breaks. He can't strike openly. That would reveal him, and his whole power is in never being seen. A stone shipment for the east wall goes mysteriously astray on the southern road, bought and vanished by a factor who answers, through 3 cutouts, to a lord whose name is never written plainly. A credit line Lysandra had arranged with a southern grain merchant is quietly bought out from under her by the same hidden hand, so the terms sour overnight, small cuts. Nuisances, the spider's specialty, never a blow, only 1,000 small frictions, all aimed at the one place the empire is thin, its coin, and they sting. Lost stone sets the east wall back 2 weeks. The soured credit forces Lysandra to pay cash for grain she'd meant to buy on time, draining the treasury faster. But Lysandra is who she is, and she notices not the spider behind it, not yet, but the pattern of it. This isn't bad luck, she says grimly, staring at the second soured deal in a month. Luck is random. This is aimed. Someone is nibbling at our money, deliberately from the shadows. Small enough that any one bite looks like chance. But I count things for a living, Cassian, and the shape of it isn't chance. Someone doesn't want us to have coin. She can't yet see the hand. But she's seen the pattern, and filed it. And somewhere a spider who has stayed invisible for 5 years does not yet know that the counter has begun faintly to feel him moving. We route around the cuts, buy stone elsewhere, find new credit, absorb the stings. Every one of them empties the treasury a little faster, and Lysandra's warning from the workshop grows louder in my ears by the week. Because here's the shape of it. By late spring, laid bare, Ashenfeld is transformed. I stand on the rebuilt northeast wall at dusk, the same wall Lysandra and I once stood on when it was half built, and we first let ourselves believe. And I look out over a city that 4 seasons ago was a dying ruin, and it takes my breath. Before a black, filthy, dying place, streets of standing waste, water drawn from a sewer, dark from dusk to dawn, surrendered to crime and fear, a breached wall useless, 12,000 people waiting to die, and a boy with an iron crown and 40 days after. A city that glows. Lamplight strung along every main street like fallen stars, people out and living under it after dark. Clean water leaping in fountains in every square, steam rising from the bathhouses, full circuit of new-built walls, low and thick and angled, siege engines dark and waiting on the towers, paved streets shedding the spring rain. A healthy, growing, proud population that spent a winter and a spring raising all of this with their own hands and knows now exactly what it's capable of. The sickness gone, the fear of the dark gone, the look of worn-down nothing gone from the people's faces replaced by something upright. It is by any measure a miracle. We built a miracle, and it is bleeding money from every stone, and it does not make one single coin back. And the treasury that 3 true oaths filled is running dry. Lysandra finds me on the wall as she always seems to know where to find me. She doesn't say anything for a while. She just stands beside me and looks at the glowing city we made. It's beautiful, she says finally. I want that said out loud, on the record, before I ruin it with arithmetic. We made something beautiful, Cassian. Look at it. I'm looking. Now look at this. She hands me the ledger, and in the last of the light I read the line she's been warning me about for weeks. Arrived at last. The treasury, filled by 3 floods of oath gold, spent down to its final reserves. Not wasted every coin of it standing out there in the glowing city, in walls and lamps and fountains and baths, but spent, and nothing coming in to replace it. Because everything we've built saves lives and lifts hearts, and cannot turn a profit. Water and light and walls don't pay you back, she says quietly. They make everything else possible, and they're worth every coin, and they will bankrupt us inside 2 months at this rate, and then the lamps go dark, and the building stops, and everything we've promised these people falls down. We've built a body, Cassian. A beautiful, healthy, living body. She looks at me. It has no heart yet. Nothing that pumps. We've been living on transfusions, 3 oaths worth of borrowed blood, and the transfusions are running out. And a body without a heart of its own is a corpse that hasn't been told yet. I look at the glowing city, my city, the miracle that is quietly dying of its own beauty. An economy, I say. An economy, she agrees. Real coin, made and traded and taxed, flowing in faster than we spend it. A mint to strike money people trust. A harbor to bring trade up from the sea. Markets, tariffs, the whole machine that makes wealth instead of only spending it. It's the one thing this empire has never had. And the one thing that turns all of this. She sweeps her hand over the glowing streets from a miracle we're borrowing into a city that stands on its own. A pause. And it's the one genius neither Aglaia nor I possess. I can count coin. She can build the harbor. Neither of us can make the coin flow. Vivene du Fort, I say Vivene du Fort. The free city on the coast. The sharpest merchant on the continent, running a city that floats on money the way Aglaia's mountain floats on water. Lysandra's mouth twists. Where half your cowardly nobles fled with their gold. Incidentally, so you'll find no love for the Veldmar name there. And where you will meet, I promise you, the single hardest problem of your life so far. Because Vivene du Fort believes in exactly one thing. And it is not sick children, or saved cities, or your very fine habit of getting mud on your sleeves. She believes in profit, full stop. Making a woman like that truly believe in you, she looks at me. Half challenge and half worry is a different kind of impossible than a board counter or a mountain builder. Those two loved a problem and a craft. Vivene loves gold. You can't out-idealism a woman who has no ideals. I think of the emptying treasury, and the glowing city that will go dark without a heart, and the woman on the coast who is the only one alive who can give it one. Then I'll have to find out what she loves besides gold, I say. Everyone loves something besides the obvious. Even a counter who only believed in problems. Even a builder who only believed in her mountain. I fold the ledger closed. Watch the city, Lysandra. Keep the lamps lit as long as the coin lasts. I'm going to the coast. Below us, Ashenfeld glows in the gathering dark, lit, clean, walled, alive, and quietly bankrupt. And somewhere south on the coast, a woman who loves only money holds the one thing my miracle needs to keep from dying, and has, I already know, absolutely no reason on earth to give it to me. Which means it's exactly the kind of sum I've gotten good at solving. I go to find Aldrich and tell him to ready the road south. The free city of Solmir doesn't have walls, and that tells you everything about it before you're through the gate. Ashenfeld hides behind stone because Ashenfeld has enemies. Solmir has no walls because Solmir has something better. It is so useful to so many powers that no one dares break it. Every kingdom on the coast trades through Solmir, banks through Solmir, owes and is owed through Solmir, and so an army that sacked it would find itself at war with everyone at once and bankrupt besides. Money is its wall. It's the richest, busiest, most shameless place I've ever seen. A forest of counting houses and warehouses and ships, streets that smell of salt and spice and tar, where a dozen languages haggle over everything and the only god anyone truly worships has a mint mark on it. Half my fled nobles are here. I see it in the fine houses on the good streets, built with gold that should have stayed in Ashenfeld, Lord Halvern's cousins. Families who packed their wealth onto wagons the night my father died, and bought themselves soft lives here while their city rotted. They do not come to greet the boy emperor. Some of them, I'm told, laugh about my visit. Let them. I've come for one person, and she keeps me waiting 3 days. That's deliberate, of course. Vivienne Dufort makes everyone wait, because time is the one currency she can spend on you that costs her nothing, and tells you exactly where you rank. A boy emperor of a bankrupt ruin ranks, apparently at 3 days. I don't complain. I spend the 3 days walking Solmir, watching how money moves, learning the shape of the thing I've come to master. By the time she finally admits me, I understand her city better than most of the people who live in it, and I've decided that's the only gift I have that might interest her. Not flattery, not need, but the fact that I paid attention. Vivienne Dufort receives me in a counting house that is grander than my throne room, and makes no pretense otherwise. She's older than my other wives' 30s, elegant, dressed in dark silk worth more than a district of Ashenfeld, with quick amused eyes and a mouth that looks like it's permanently halfway through calculating what you're worth and finding the figure funny. There's a ledger open on the desk in front of her. There's always a ledger open in front of her. I get the feeling she'd keep one open at her own funeral, to audit the cost. The famous boy emperor, she says, not rising, waving me to a chair with 2 fingers, who digs wells with his own hands and lights lamps in a city that can't pay for the oil. You've become quite the story on this coast, your majesty. The nobles who fled your ruin tell it as a comedy. The ship's captains who carry the tale up and down the water tell it. I've noticed rather differently. Her amused eyes go over me, pricing me. I confess I was curious enough to want to look. So, you have my attention for as long as you keep it, which in my experience is not long. What does a bankrupt emperor want from the richest woman on the coast? And do try to be interesting about it. I've heard every beggar's pitch there is. Here's where a lesser man begs or flatters or tells her about the sick children and the saved city. I've watched 3 days of Solmir to learn that all of those would bore her to death. She's heard every appeal to sentiment, and sentiment, to Vivienne Dufort, is just a weakness other people have that can be priced and traded. She'd listen politely and price me as a fool, so I don't beg. I do the one thing I'd bet no petitioner has done in years. I insult her city's arithmetic. Your mint mark is being counterfeited, I say, and you're losing more to it than you think. And I worked out how in about a day and a half, and nobody in your counting houses has caught it, because they're all looking in the wrong place. The amused mouth stops, mid-calculation. It's true, and it's the most interesting thing I learned in 3 days of walking Solmir. The free city's coin, the Sol mark, the trusted currency of the whole coast, is being shaved and counterfeited, not crudely, but cleverly, by someone mixing debased coin into legitimate shipments at a rate low enough to escape the spot checks. I noticed it the way Lysandra taught me to notice things, by watching not the coins but the behavior around them. A particular money changer near the salt docks who weighed every coin twice and never the ones from a certain source. A discrepancy in what the dock tariffs should yield and what they did. I pulled the thread for a day and a half out of pure habit, and it led somewhere real. Vivienne Dufort looks at me for a long, silent moment, and the amusement in her eyes changes into something sharper and far more interested. Show me, she says. I show her. And that afternoon is the most fun I have had in a year. Because Vivienne Dufort, it turns out, thinks exactly as fast as I do faster, in her own domain, and once I've laid the first thread in front of her, we're off. The two of us, hunting a counterfeiter through the arithmetic of her own city. And it's like nothing so much as the day Lysandra and I ran down the hidden grain. Except Vivienne is playing a game she loves rather than solving a problem she pities. She pulls ledgers. I point at the discrepancy. She sees 3 implications I didn't, and I see one she missed, and we build it between us, fast and delighted. 2 minds that have finally each found someone who can keep up. By evening we've got it a debasement scheme run by one of her own senior factors in league with a shipping house, skimming a slow fortune off the Solmark's trust. She has him by nightfall. And when it's done, Vivienne Dufort pours 2 glasses of a wine that costs more than my crown, and looks at me with an expression I recognize, because I've seen it now 3 times. The look of a person who lives inside their own genius, mostly alone, suddenly discovering they're not the only one in the room who can play at their level. Well, she says, that was interesting. You didn't come here to catch my counterfeiter. You found him by accident, walking my streets. Because you can't help yourselves, can you? You and whatever mind taught you to watch behavior instead of objects. That's not an emperor's skill. That's a merchant's skill. She sips. So, now that you've proven you're not boring, which is more than I can say for the kings who usually want things from me, tell me what you actually came for. And this time I'll listen properly, so I tell her. Not with sentiment, I've learned my audience. I tell her with arithmetic. I have a city, I say, that 4 seasons ago was a corpse and is now the fastest growing thing on this coast. Clean water, drains, roads, walls, light. I built the body of a great trading power. What I don't have is the heart. No mint, no real economy, no coin of my own. I've been running on borrowed miracles and they're nearly spent. I set my empty glass down. Here's the part that should interest you, Vivienne, because it's not charity, it's opportunity. Ashenfeld sits on the overland routes to the whole northern interior routes that currently go nowhere because the city was dead. Bring it back to life. Give it a mint and a market, and eventually a harbor. And you don't have a beggar to pity. You have a second Solmir opening up on the northern trade, and the woman who financed it, who taught it, who holds its debt and its friendship from the first day I let it hang, is positioned on the ground floor of the richest new market this coast will see in a generation. I'm not asking you to save my city. I'm inviting you to invest in it. The return is a trade empire. What's that worth? To a woman who prices everything. Vivienne Dufort is quiet for a long moment, and I watch her do the thing she does, the pricing, the calculation. But this time, the figure she reaches makes her put her wine down. You clever little emperor, she says softly. You didn't come to beg. You came to sell me a steak. She laughs, delighted, and it's a real laugh. The first real thing she's shown me. God, that's refreshing. Do you know how long it's been since someone wanted something from me and pitched it as my profit instead of their need? Everyone begs. You dealt. She taps the desk thinking, and I can see the arithmetic running behind her eyes, and I can see it coming up the way I'd hoped. It's a genuinely good position. A dead city on live routes, brought back under a ruler the people apparently adore, with the whole northern interior behind it, and no one else on the ground yet. She looks at me. The risk is you, bankrupt, at war in, waiting with Kronberg. One bad season from collapse. But the upside, the amused mouth curves. The upside is a second Solmir with my name on its founding. That's not a risk. That's the best speculation to cross this desk in 10 years. And so I win Vivienne Dufort, not with my cause, which she'd have priced as weakness, but with an opportunity, which she prices as gold. But winning her partnership and winning her heart are different columns, as Lysandra would say, and the second happens, the way the first did, through the sheer joy of two fast minds building something together. Because once Vivienne commits, she doesn't do it halfway. She comes back to Ashenfeld with me, and she builds. And watching her build an economy is watching a master at the height of her craft, exactly as watching Aglaia raise an aqueduct was. The mint first. This is the foundation of everything, and Vivienne explains it to me the way Aglaia explained arches, because she too can't resist teaching someone who actually wants to learn. Money isn't gold, she says, standing in the half-built mint we're raising near the workshops. That's the amateur's mistake. Money is trust. A coin is worth what it's worth because everyone agrees it is, and the moment they stop agreeing, it's a disc of metal. So the only first thing is you strike a coin no one can doubt. Exact weight, exact purity. Milled edges so shaving shows. A stamp that's hard to fake. She holds up a trial strike, the first coin of Ashenfeld in 5 years, a clean silver piece with my father's profile on it, because Vivienne understood without being told that the people needed to see the dynasty restored, not my untried face. Get that right, and you've built something worth more than any wall. A coin people trust. Trust is the most valuable commodity there is, Cassian. And unlike gold, you can manufacture it carefully once and never ever betray it. Debase your coin to solve a short problem and you murder the trust and it never comes back. I've watched kingdoms do it. Never do it. Then the trade routes. Vivienne knows every road and every merchant on the coast, and she opens Ashenfeld to them like turning a key, sends word up and down the water that the northern city is alive again. Its roads safe, Aglaia's wall made the near country safe. Now that safety pays. Its market open, its new coin sound. And the traders come cautiously at first, then in a rush, because Vivienne Dufort's word that a market is worth trading in is the most trusted signal on the coast. The dead overland routes to the northern interior wake up. Wool and iron and timber come down from the north, through Ashenfeld. Salt and cloth and spice go up through it from the sea. And every cart that passes through pays. Which brings the taxes, and this is where I learn the deepest lesson of the whole endeavor, and where Vivienne and I nearly come to real disagreement before we come to something better. Tax the trade, Vivienne says, not the poor. This is where your ancestors were fools, and every king is a fool, because kings tax what's easy to see: the peasant's grain, the craftsman's stall, and squeeze the people who can least afford it until they've nothing left to give and nothing left to lose, which is how you get the mobs. Don't. She lays it out like a campaign. Tax the flow. A small tariff on every cart of goods crossing your border, tiny. A fraction. So small no merchant minds paying it because the safe road and the open market are worth 10 times the toll. But a fraction of all the trade of the northern interior, flowing through your city every day, is a river of gold, and it falls on the merchants who profit, not the people who struggle. She smiles. Low taxes on many transactions beats high taxes on a suffering few. Every time, forever. The people love you because you lightened their burden while the treasury filled, and a beloved population that isn't being squeezed, doesn't riot, doesn't flee, and works twice as hard because it's finally keeping what it earns. It's not charity, Cassian, though your soft heart can pretend it is. It's the single most profitable tax policy there is. Kindness and greed, pointing the same direction. My favorite kind of arithmetic. And I realize listening to her that she's just described exactly the kind of ruler I've been trying to be by instinct, one who lifts the people's burden, and shown me that it's not just kind, it's smart. The most profitable thing I could possibly do. Vivienne Dufort, who believes in nothing but gold, has handed me the proof that mercy and wealth are the same policy seen from two sides. It's the most useful thing anyone has taught me since Lysandra's pyramid. The change by high summer is the one Lysandra said we needed and could not make ourselves, before an empire living on transfusions. 3 oaths worth of borrowed gold spent down to the dregs on a beautiful body with no heart, 2 months from the lamps going dark, no coin of its own, no income, a miracle bleeding out after, a heart beating. The mint strikes sound silver, Ashenfeld's own coin, trusted up and down the coast. Money we make, not money we borrow. The northern trade routes run gold through the city every day, and a fraction of every cart falls into a treasury that is, for the first time in 5 years, filling faster than we spend it. Taxes that lightened the people's load and filled the coffers at once. Markets loud with trade. Fled wealth beginning cart by cart, to trickle back toward the city. That's suddenly the best speculation on the coast. Sandra runs the new figures 3 times, the way she does when she can't believe a sum, and then she looks up at me with something rare on her sharp face. Relief. It's turned, she says quietly. The line's turned, Cassian. We're not bleeding anymore. For the first time since your coronation, the empire makes more than it spends. We can keep the lamps lit and keep building. The building pays for itself now. She sets down her pen. You did it. You made a woman who loves only gold build us a heart of gold. I didn't think it could be done. She did it, I say. I just found the thing she loved besides money. Which was, I think about it, the game, I say, the pure pleasure of the arithmetic, played with someone who can keep up. She doesn't love gold. Exactly. She loves winning, and gold is just how the world keeps score. Show her a game worth playing, and a partner worth playing it with, and the gold follows. I smile, same as you and your problems, same as Aglaya and her craft. Nobody actually loves the obvious thing. They love the feeling the obvious thing gives them. And if you can give them that feeling another way, you've found the real key. The oath, when it comes the way the others did. Not as strategy, though God knows it's strategically vital, but as truth. Vivenna Dufort, who has spent her whole life alone at the top of her own genius, pricing everyone and trusting no one, finds in me and in this impossible growing city the one thing her gold could never buy. A game worth her whole mind, and people worth building with instead of merely profiting from. She marries me knowing exactly what it's worth. She's Vivenna. She's priced it to the decimal and marries me anyway, because for the first time the most valuable thing on her ledger isn't a number. A true oath. Sovereign. Vivenna Dufort stands with you. Truth of bond. Real, she has priced her own heart and found it genuine. For it true means and the mastery of trade and coin, now woven into your empire. The gold pours in, but I almost laugh at it now because the gold is the least of what she's brought. She's brought the machine that makes the gold. The system's flood is a fortune. Vivenna's economy is a fortune that renews itself every single day. On the coast in Solmir, the spider's contact reports a development the spider does not enjoy. The boy emperor has taken Vivenna Dufort, not merely her partnership, but Vivenna herself, and with her the trade of the northern interior and a mint-striking coin the whole coast trusts. The spider reads this in his warm hall and, for the first time, feels something colder than concern. His entire strategy against the boy rested on one certainty, that ambition would outrun coin, that the beautiful city would bankrupt itself, that the money would fail, and he would not even need to strike. He aimed every small cut at the treasury, because the treasury was the wound that would not heal, and the boy has healed it, worse than healed it. The boy has built a treasury that fills itself, that grows, that no longer bleeds from the 1,000 small cuts the spider knows how to make. Nibbling at credit lines and stone shipments, so effective against a fixed sum, means nothing against a river. You cannot bleed dry a thing that refills faster than you can cut it. The spider sits with this a long while. His patient 5-year strategy of keeping the empire weak from the inside has, he understands now, run out of road. The boy has assembled the 3 things a state needs to live a healthy people, the means to build, and now an economy to pay for it all, and assembled them behind walls and engines, with the population's love as his shield. Small cuts will no longer serve, which means it is time at last to reach for the deep threads. The ones that reach east, past his own hall, to a warm, bright room, where an emperor named Otto sits, who once made a corpse of this city in a single morning. The spider has spent 5 years never needing Kronberg's army, keeping the rot internal, quiet, deniable, but rot has failed. Now he will need a sword, and there is only one sword large enough. He takes up his pen, and for the first time in 5 years he writes not to a factor or a merchant, but toward the emperor himself, through the careful chain of cutouts that hides him, a message whose meaning beneath its merchant's code is simple and grave. The Veldmar boy is no longer dying. The Veldmar boy is becoming strong. If Kronberg wishes the corpse to stay a corpse, Kronberg can no longer afford to wait and watch. The window in which the boy can be cheaply killed is closing. Decide, he seals it and sends it east. The game has changed, and the spider, who has moved in shadows for 5 years, has just been forced by a boy with an iron crown to reach for something that casts a very large shadow indeed. The economy runs gold through Ashenfeld all that high summer, and the city drinks it in and grows, and for the first time I feel something I haven't let myself feel since the well. Not just that we might survive, but that we might win. I take an evening to myself rare, precious, and walk down to the market district at dusk, alone, no crown, just to see it. And what I see stops me in the street. The market is roaring. Loud, crowded, lamp-lit, alive stalls 3 deep, the new coin ringing on 100 counters, traders from the coast and the north haggling in a dozen tongues, the smell of food and spice and money, children darting through the crowd, the chestnut seller from that first lit night, now running 3 braziers and shouting prices. A year ago this district was silent, dark, dying, the people barred behind their doors drinking from a sewer. Now it's the loudest, richest, most alive place for 100 miles, and every soul in it is fed and clean and safe and keeping what they earn. I stand at the edge of it in the lamplight, and I think of the boy in the roofless hall with 40 days and no coin, and I think of Lysandra's ledger finally turning, the line bending upward at last, and I let myself feel it, just for a moment. We did this. From a corpse. We did this. And then, standing in my roaring golden market, I see the one thing missing, and it's Vivene who's already named it, weeks ago, in passing. You've built a river of gold on the overland routes, she'd said, watching the northern carts roll in. It's real, and it's rich, and it will make you a strong regional power. But Cassian, she'd nodded south and east, toward the distant sea, toward the water where Solmir sat rich and unwalled. The overland trade is a stream. The sea is the ocean. Every truly great trading power in history sat on deep water, because a single ship carries what 100 carts can't, and the sea reaches everywhere at once. As long as your only door to the world is a road, you're a strong province. The day you have a harbor, deep water, docks, a fleet, you stop being a province and start being a power. That's the difference between Ashenfeld and Solmir. Solmir has the sea. I stand in the roaring market and I look south and east, toward water I can't see, and I understand what the next great work has to be. We've raised the body, we've lit it, we've given it a beating heart of gold, but the heart pumps along a road, and a road only reaches so far. To become what I need us to become, strong enough, rich enough to finally make Kronberg pay, we need the sea. We need a harbor, deep water docks, warehouses, and the ships to fill them. The fleet that turns a strong province into a power that reaches the whole world. And building a harbor is Aglaya's art, and Vivena's trade married together. The greatest work either of them has yet attempted, out where the land meets the water. I turn from the market and start back up toward the palace, toward the workshop where my counter and my builder and my merchant are almost certainly arguing about something, and I already know what I'm going to tell them. The stream has made us strong. Now we go to the sea and become a power. The nearest good deep water is a day's ride south of Ashenfeld, at the mouth of the river where a wide sheltered bay opens onto the sea, and nothing stands but a fishing village of 40 souls, who have watched their sons drown for generations and never once dreamed of what the bay could be. I ride down to look at it with Aglaya and Vivena both, and watching the two of them see the same empty water is like watching 2 different languages describe the same god. Aglaya sees structure. She stands on the shore, and her focused stillness goes total, and she starts reading the bay the way she read the fouled streets, the depth of the water, the run of the current, the shelter of the headlands, where the seabed would bear a piling, and where it wouldn't. There, she says, pointing at nothing I can see. And there, bottom shelves right. You could drive moles out into deep water on that line, and the headland breaks the worst of the weather. It's a good bay. The old builders would have loved it. Deep enough for real ships, sheltered enough to keep them safe. Her pale hands are already sketching in the air, breakwaters first, out along those 2 lines to make the harbor calm. Then the mole's stone piers running out to where the water's deep enough for a laden hull. Then the docks along them, the cranes, the warehouses behind. It's the aqueduct all over again. Really, water you have to master. Only this time you're not bringing it to the city, you're reaching out into it. Vivenne sees money. She stands on the same shore, and her amused eyes go over the same empty water and price it to the horizon. Do you understand what you're looking at? She says softly, and for once there's no irony in it. A deep water harbor, here on the northern coast, feeding the overland routes you've already got. Cassian, this isn't a harbor. This is the second half of the machine. Right now your trade comes in by cart, a stream. Put a harbor here and the sea comes to you. 1 ship in that bay carries what 50 carts can't, and it reaches every port on the coast and beyond in a week. Your northern goods go out to the whole world by water. The whole world's goods come up your roads to the north. You become the hinge, the one place where the sea trade and the land trade meet and change hands and take a cut of both. She turns to me, and her whole face is lit with the arithmetic. Solmir has 1 sea. You'd have a sea and a continent behind you. Build this and in 10 years. Ashenfeld isn't Solmir's poor northern cousin. It's Solmir's rival, possibly its master. I stand between my builder and my merchant, on an empty shore where 40 fishermen have drowned for centuries, and I see it, the thing that isn't there yet, the way I've learned to see things. Not empty water, a harbor, a door to the world. Then build it, I say, both of you. Together, Aglaya raises it, Vivena fills it, show me the sea. They build it, and it is the greatest work either of them has yet done, because for the first time they have to do it together. And that is where the comedy of my 3 wives reaches its glorious peak, because now all 3 of them are working on the same enormous project. Aglaya building the harbor, Vivene planning the trade that will fill it, Lysandra holding the whole empire's ledger to pay for it, and 3 geniuses who each see the world completely differently are forced into 1 room, daily, and the sparks are magnificent. Aglaya wants the harbor built right, every mole sound, every piling true, the whole thing engineered to stand 300 years. Viven wants it built fast and first, every month it isn't finished, as a month a rival port might open and steal the trade. Lysandra wants it built affordably, and in sequence the harbor is enormous, and its cost has to be staged so it never bankrupts the rest of the empire. And they argue. God, how they argue. You cannot rush a breakwater, Aglaia says, immovable as her own stone. The sea is not a street. If I build it wrong to build it fast, the first winter storm takes it out and your precious trade drowns with it. And if you build it slowly and perfectly, Vivene fires back. A consortium in Solmir, I could name, opens a competing harbor 2 headlands south while you're still admiring your pilings, and captures the trade, and your perfect breakwater shelters an empty bay for 300 beautifully engineered years. Both of you are ignoring, Lysandra cuts in, not looking up from her ledger, that at the rate you're both describing you'll have spent the entire treasury by midwinter, and it won't matter whose harbor is faster or sounder because we'll all be bankrupt, and Kronberg will walk in and take the lot. The answer is staged construction. The deepwater mole first, functional but minimal, earning trade revenue by spring, and that revenue funds the rest so it pays for itself as it grows, which compromises the structural integrity of the whole only if you assume we can't reinforce later, which we can if someone would let me plan. And it is at exactly this moment, in the middle of this three-way war, that Vivende Dufort says the thing that unites the other two against her for the rest of the endeavor. She leans back entirely unbothered and says, "You know, I've been thinking of us as a portfolio." Silence. 4 of us. Vivene continues, warming to it, gesturing around the room with a jeweled hand. It's really rather elegant. As an investment structure, Cassian holds the controlling stake. Lysandra is the fixed income, reliable, steady, low volatility, essential but unexciting. Aglaia is the capital infrastructure, enormous upfront cost, pays out over decades. And I'm the growth position, high return, some risk, considerably more glamorous than the rest of the "I beg your pardon," says Lysandra, with the ice of a woman who has just been called unexciting. "You did not just describe our marriage as an asset allocation," says Aglaia, who almost never raises her voice and has just raised it. "I meant it as a compliment." Vivene protests, delighted, clearly not meaning it as only a compliment. Fixed income is the backbone of any sound portfolio. Do you know how rare a good low volatility position is? I'd weight you at 40%, Lysandra. That's an enormous vote of I am not a bond, and I am not depreciating infrastructure, and I sit at the head of the table, Emperor of Veldmar, and I watch my 3 wives descend into loud and total war over whether their marriage is best understood as a financial instrument, and I make a decision that is, I think, the most important thing I do as a ruler that entire month. I say nothing, and I let them fight, and I do not try to fix it. Because I've learned something. Holding this strange court of brilliant women, my instinct early on was to smooth every friction, to make them agree, to keep the peace. And it was wrong. An emperor who forces his advisors to agree gets one answer to every question, his loudest advisors and 100 blind spots he'll never see. What I have instead, in these 3 impossible women who will not stop grinding sparks off each other, is every answer, every angle, every flaw in every plan exposed by someone whose whole nature is to find it. Aglaia will never let me build something that fails. Vivene will never let me build something that doesn't pay. Lysandra will never let me build something we can't afford. And the harbor that finally rises out of their war is better than anything any one of them would have built alone, staged like Lysandra wants. Sound where Aglaia insists it must be. Fast where Vivene proves it has to be. A thing that only exists because 3 geniuses refuse to give each other an inch. You've gotten good at that, Aldrich observes, watching me referee by not refereeing another spectacular collision. A year ago, you'd have jumped in to calm them down. Now you just let it burn and take the diamond that's left when it stops. A year ago, I thought my job was to have the answers, I say. Now I think my job is to keep the right people arguing long enough that the answer appears on its own. I don't rule these 3. I aim them. I watch Vivene cheerfully weathering the combined fury of the other 2, entirely unrepentant, and I hide a smile. Besides, they only fight like that because they've stopped seeing each other as rivals for me and started seeing each other as colleagues worth beating. That's not division. That's a government. A loud one. And the harbor rises. It takes the whole of that summer and into the autumn. And it is a wonder. Aglaia's breakwaters march out into the bay along the lines she read in the water. Huge sunken masses of stone that turn the wild sea calm behind them. Then the moles, the great stone piers striding out to deep water until a laden ship can come alongside and unload without ever grounding. Then the docks and the cranes, Aglaia's cranes, worked by the same understanding of counterweight and leverage that raised her aqueduct, lifting cargo that would take 50 men off a ship's deck in minutes. And behind them the warehouses and the beginnings of shipyards, because Vivene insists from the first that a harbor without a fleet is only half a harbor. You can trade with other people's ships, she says, and pay their freight and dance to their schedules and watch your profit sail away in someone else's hull. Or you can build your own ships and carry your own goods and charge other people freight and own the sea instead of renting it. So the shipyards go up, and the first hulls take shape on the slipways, fat-bellied merchantmen to carry the northern trade, and beside them, quietly, on Aglaia's insistence and mine, something else. The first warships Ashenfeld has floated in a generation, lean and fast because a harbor full of fat, rich merchantmen is a temptation, and the sea has pirates, and Kronberg has a coast too. Merchantmen make you rich, Aglaia says, watching the lean hulls grow. Warships let you stay rich. You'll want both. Trust me, the day comes when you're very glad you built the ones that fight. And the fishing village of 40 souls becomes, in a single season, a port. The fishermen who watched their sons drown for centuries are suddenly the most valuable men on the coast, the only ones who know the bay, the currents, the weather, together, and they become harbor pilots and dockmasters and the first crews, paid wages their grandfathers couldn't have imagined. Their drowned son grief turned overnight into pride and purpose. The change by that autumn is the one Viven promised on the empty shore, and it is total. Before a landlocked, ruined city, even reborn, even lit and walled and fed, it was a city that ended at its own walls, reaching the world only by a thin thread of overland road, a strong province, and no more. After a port, deep-water docks where the world's ships come alongside, warehouses filling with the goods of the coast and the continent both, shipyards launching Ashenfeld's own hulls merchantmen to carry its wealth, warships to guard it. The northern trade which used to trickle out by cart, now floods out by sea to every port on the coast. The sea's trade floods up the roads to the northern interior, and Ashenfeld sits at the hinge of it, taking its cut of everything that passes in either direction. The treasury doesn't fill anymore, it overflows. The stream Vivene spoke of has become the ocean, and the ocean pours gold. Lysandra shows me the figures, and this time she doesn't pretend she can believe them. I've stopped being able to make these sums feel real, she admits. A year ago you had 40 days and an iron crown. Now she gestures helplessly at a ledger showing an empire not merely solvent but wealthy, growing richer by the week. Now you're one of the richest powers on the coast and getting richer, and I keep waiting to find the catch, and there isn't one. We built a body, gave it a heart, and now the heart pumps gold faster than we can spend it. It's working, Cassian, all of it. The whole impossible thing is working. I take an evening when the harbor is far enough along, and I ride down to it alone, at dusk, and I stand on the end of the longest mole where it reaches out into the deep water, and I look back at what we made. The bay is full of light. Ships ride at anchor. Their lanterns doubled in the calm water Aglaya's breakwaters made. The docks are busy even at dusk, cranes swinging cargo, crews calling to each other, the shipyard's fires glowing where the hulls grow on the slips. Behind it all, north, the glow of Ashenfeld itself against the darkening sky, the lit city, the walled city, the living city. And here where I stand, deep water lapping at stone that 6 months ago was an empty shore where 40 men mourned their drowned sons. I'm tired. I let myself feel that out here where no one can see. Bone tired, the tiredness of a year without rest, of holding an impossible thing together by will and luck and the genius of the people I've been fortunate enough to bind to me. My hands still carry the scars from the well. I've been an emperor for a little over a year, and in that year I've raised the dead, and it has cost me everything I had to give, and then some. But I stand on the mole in the sea wind and I look at the light on the water, and under the tiredness there's the other thing. The thing that's carried me since the servants, passage and the laughter on the steps. Look how far. A boy hidden in a wall watching his father die. A boy in a roofless hall with an iron crown and 40 days and 11 mourners. And now this, a harbor, a fleet, a city that glows. A power rising on the northern coast where a corpse used to lie. I did this, I think, and then more truly, we did this. Lysandra and Aglaya and Vivene, and the old mason and the barge brothers and the boy from the well and 10,000 people who dug their city out of its own filth and lit its lamps and raised this harbor out of the sea. I only ever dug the first well. They built the rest, because I gave them a reason to believe it could be built. And I think of Kronberg, East in his warm, bright hall, who made this corpse in a single morning and went home before noon, laughing. Who is still, I have no doubt, laughing. Not for much longer, I promise the dark water. Everything I've built toward you. The city, the walls, the engines, the coin, the harbor, the fleet, all of it is the answer to a question you asked 5 years ago on my father's steps. And soon, Otto von Kronberg, I'm going to deliver it. The sea wind takes the promise. Somewhere behind me, a crew starts singing on the deck of a moored ship, and I let myself stand there a while longer, tired and unbroken, in the light of the thing we made, before I turn my horse back toward the glowing city and the war I've been building toward all along. In the warm, bright hall to the east, Emperor Otto von Kronberg reads 2 things in the same week that finally move him from contempt to decision. The first is the spider's message arrived through its careful chain of cutouts. The Veldmar boy is no longer dying, is becoming strong, and the window to kill him cheaply is closing. The second is a report from his own coastal eyes, blunter and worse. The boy has built a deep-water harbor and is launching warships. Warships. Otto sets both down and does not touch his supper. A boy with a lit city he could dismiss. A boy with walls and engines was building a shell. But a boy with a harbor, a fleet, an economy that overflows, a population that adores him, and a counting mind and a builder, and the sharpest merchant on the coast all bound to his side, that is not a corpse twitching. That is a rival being born on his own border, in the very place he thought he had killed forever. And Otto von Kronberg understands, at last and too slowly, the shape of his own error. He made a corpse of Ashenfeld 5 years ago and went home, and for 5 years he watched it stir and told himself it was nothing, because it cost him nothing to wait, and waiting had always been the whole of his strength. But the thing about a growing power is that every day you wait, it is stronger than the day before. The boy he could have crushed with a raiding party a year ago now has walls that raiding party couldn't breach, and engines that would break it, and a fleet that could raid Kronberg's own coast in reply. He has been getting stronger, Otto says slowly to the silent hall. every day that I have let him, and I told myself it was patience. For the first time in many years, the Emperor of Kronberg feels the cold discomfort of a man who has miscalculated. No more waiting. The boy grows faster than I believed possible, and every season I delay makes the reckoning costlier. If Aschenfeld is to be a corpse again, it must be made one soon before the harbor is finished, before the fleet is launched, before the boy becomes something I cannot cheaply kill. He does not send his army. Not yet. A full war is expensive, and Otto is nothing if not a careful spender of force. Instead, he does what he did 5 years ago. The thing that worked so well the first time. He reaches for pressure short of war. Increase the border raids. He commands tenfold burn his frontier. Hit the mountain clans that shield his northern flank. The Eisenwald, the stubborn ones, burn them out, break them, and open his border like a wound. Let him bleed on the frontier while his pretty harbor drains his coffers. Lead him, distract him, and keep him too busy fighting for his borders to finish becoming a power. And while he bleeds the cold eyes narrow, I will decide at my leisure whether to correct him with a raid or with an army. It is a shrewd command, and a cruel one, and it is also, though Otto cannot see it, his third and largest mistake. For the border he has just ordered burned is held by a clan of proud mountain warriors who have kept it, alone and unthanked, for generations. And the boy he means to distract with their suffering is exactly the kind of ruler who, when he learns that a loyal people are being burned on his frontier while he builds harbors in safety, will not be distracted at all. He will ride to them, and he will bind them to him, the way he has bound all the rest. The raids begin within the month, and they are like nothing the frontier has seen in 5 years. First word comes to the harbor while I'm still there overseeing the shipyards, a rider from the north, exhausted with a report that turns the sea wind cold. Kronberg's raiders, who for 5 years have crossed the border in small stinging parties, are crossing now in force, in numbers, again and again, burning deeper than they ever have. Villages on the northern frontier put to the torch, farms destroyed, and worst of all, the brunt of it falling on the mountain clans of the northern passes, the Eisenwald, a proud, hard people who have held those passes and shielded Aschenfeld's whole northern flank for generations, taking the raiders. First blows so the lowlands behind them stay safe, and they are being burned out, overwhelmed, fighting alone as they always have, against a Kronberg that has suddenly turned its full raiding strength against them for reasons they don't understand. But I understand. Lysandra understands the instant she hears it, meeting me as I ride back through the gates. This is aimed, she says grimly, the same words she used about the soured credit, but colder now. Kronberg hasn't raided like this in 5 years. Why now? Because now you've become something worth stopping. The harbor, the fleet, the wealth. Otto has finally noticed you're growing into a rival, and this is his answer. Bleed your border, burn the clans that shield your flank, keep you too busy fighting for your frontier to finish becoming a power. He's trying to distract you. She looks at me. The strategically cautious move is to let the Eisenwald fall and pull your defense back to your own strong walls. They're not your subjects. The mountain clans have never bent the knee to Aschenfeld. They've held their passes as free men for centuries. You owe them nothing on paper. Fortifying your own wall and letting the frontier burn is the sound, cold, defensible arithmetic. And you already know I'm not going to do that, I say. The idea of a smile, grim this time. I already know. You've never once done the cold arithmetic when people were burning, and it's the most maddening and the most correct thing about you. She's already unrolling a map. So, the Eisenwald. If we're going to save them, and we are, I can see it on your face. Then we need to understand who we're saving. They're the fiercest fighters on this continent, Cassian. Mountain warriors who've held those passes against everything for generations. And they are proud. They don't ask for help. They don't bend the knee, and they will not love a lowland emperor riding up to rescue them like children. They've held their border alone and unthanked for 5 years while you built fountains in safety. They may well spit on your help, and I won't offer them help, I say. Thinking of a counter who believed only in problems, a builder who believed only in her mountain, a merchant who believed only in gold, and how none of them, in the end, could resist a man who offered them the one thing they truly wanted. I'll offer them something better. Everything I've built this year, the walls, the engines, the coin, the fleet, I built it to make Kronberg pay for what they did to my father and my city, and the Eisenwald have been bleeding under Kronberg's boots on that frontier for 5 years alone, while the rest of the world looked away. I look at the map, at the northern passes, at the proud, hard people being burned to distract me. I'm not going to offer them rescue. I'm going to offer them what they've wanted for 5 years and never had the strength to take alone. I'm going to offer them Kronberg, their enemy and mine, the same enemy, and an emperor with a fleet and an army in the making who means to make him bleed. I roll up the map, ready the road north, Lysandra, and send for the best fighter we have, because I'm not riding to the mountain clans to talk. I'm riding to fight beside them and earn the right to be heard. Because a city can be built with counters and builders and merchants, but an empire that means to make war on Kronberg needs one more thing. I don't yet have a general, and an army, and steel, and they are waiting for me in the burning passes of the north. In a clan of proud mountain warriors led, I will soon learn, by a woman who will become the fiercest and loudest of all the strange government I'm assembling out of the ashes. North then to the fire on the frontier, and the ones holding the line. I ride north with Lysandra, a train of Aglaya's mountain throwers broken down for transport, a strong box of Viveni's coin, and the best fighter Aschenfeld has, which, I'll be honest, isn't saying much. My city guard is enough to keep order in lit streets. It is not an army. That's precisely why I'm going north, to find the people who are. The frontier gets worse the further we ride. I've read the reports, but reading a report and riding through the smoke are different things. Burned farms, emptied villages, fields black where the raiders fired the standing grain out of pure cruelty. Because Kronberg isn't raiding for plunder now, they're raiding to hurt, to bleed the border, to burn out the clans that shield my flank. And everywhere the mountain people falling back, fighting, dying alone. By the time we climb into the high passes of the Eisenwald, I've stopped feeling like a rescuer and started feeling something closer to shame. These people have held this line for 5 years alone, taking Kronberg's blows so the lowlands behind them, my lowlands, where I built fountains and lit lamps in safety, stayed unburned. And no one thanked them. No one came. I built a harbor while they buried their dead. The Eisenwald hold a fortress town wedged into a mountain pass, all gray stone and iron, and they let me approach because a lone emperor with a small party is no threat, and they're curious what the lowland boy wants. But they do not roll out anything resembling welcome. Their leader meets me in the muddy yard of the fortress, and she is not what the songs would have led you to expect from a war leader, and she is exactly what the reports meant when they said the Eisenwald were the fiercest fighters on the continent. Brunhilde Eisenwald is enormous, taller than me, broad as a door, arms like a smith's, a livid half-heeled sword cut down one forearm that she hasn't bothered to bandage properly. She's perhaps 30. With a face weathered by mountain wind and grief, and she looks at me the way you'd look at something the dog dragged in. Not with hatred, but with a vast, tired contempt for one more useless thing arriving when what she needs is soldiers. So, she says, and her voice carries across the whole yard without her seeming to raise it. The lowland emperor. The boy who digs wells. She looks me up and down, and every clan warrior in the yard watches. We've heard the songs down here in the smoke. The emperor who lights lamps. The emperor who built a harbor. Very pretty. She spits, deliberately, into the mud. We've been dying up here for 5 years to keep your pretty lit city from burning, boy. And this is the first we've seen of any emperor. You came now? Why? You heard Kronberg's finally going to finish us. And you rode up to watch? Or to make a song of it? Her clan mutters agreement. We don't want your pity. We don't want your gold. You can't buy mountain warriors. We're not your lowland merchants. And we will not kneel to a boy who built fountains while our children burned. So, say your piece and ride back down to your lamps, Emperor. We're busy dying. It's brutal, and it's earned every word of it, and I feel the shame of it land. Lysandra beside me goes very still. She warned me they'd be proud. They'd spit on rescue, and here it is. But I've learned something about proud people who've been abandoned. You don't answer their contempt with wounded pride. You answer it with the truth. And the truth is that she's right. You're right, I say loud enough for the whole yard. About all of it. You've held this line for 5 years alone, and no one came. And I built fountains in safety while your people burned. That's true. I won't insult you by pretending it isn't, or by telling you I came out of the goodness of my heart. I hold her furious gaze. I came because Kronberg turned their full strength on you this month, and I know why, and you deserve to know why, too. They're not burning you because of you. They're burning you because of me. Because I've spent a year becoming something Otto von Kronberg has finally decided is a threat. Walls, a fleet, an economy. And his answer is to bleed my border and burn the clans that shield it, to keep me too busy to finish becoming a power. You're being burned tenfold this month, Brunhilde Eisenwald, because I grew strong enough to frighten the man who did this to you. Your suffering is his message to me. That lands differently. The muttering stops. Brunhilde's eyes narrow. So I did not come to pity you. I go on. And I did not come to buy you, because you're right. You can't be bought. I came because we have the same enemy, and for 5 years you've had to fight him alone with nothing. And I am the first person in those 5 years who can offer you something better than a lonely death on this line. I gesture back down the pass toward the wagons. I didn't ride up here with pity. I rode up with siege engines that can break a raiding column, gold enough to arm every fighter you have, and a plan to stop bleeding on this frontier and start making Kronberg bleed instead. I'm not offering you rescue, Brunhilde. I'm offering you the one thing you've wanted for 5 years and never had the strength to take alone. I let it sit. Kronberg, his head, his reckoning, yours and mine, the same enemy, the same debt. I mean to make him pay for my father and my city. You mean to make him pay for your children? Those are the same war. I hold out no hand. She'd refuse it. I just say, the next raiding column is coming. Your scouts have seen it. I'd wager, or you wouldn't be so grim. Let me stand on this line with you when it comes, and fight, and show you what I brought, and then judge me by what you see, not by the songs. That's all I ask. Not your knee, your judgment honestly earned. Brunhilde Eisenwald studies me for a long, long moment. Around her, the clan is silent, watching their war leader weigh the lowland boy. A raiding column is coming, she says at last, grudging. 2 days out. Bigger than the usual, 200, maybe more. We were going to meet it in the low pass and lose a third of our people stopping it, because that's what we do. That's all we've ever been able to do. She looks at the wagons, at the broken down engines, at the strongbox. You say you brought something better. Her jaw sets. Then show me, Emperor. Stand on the line in 2 days when Kronberg comes, and show me what your fountains and your harbors are worth when there's steel in the air. If you run and lowland boys run, we'll know what you are, and you can keep your gold. But if you stand, she doesn't finish. She doesn't have to. I'll stand, I say. Show me the low pass. Let's plan how you win. For the first time, something flickers in her contempt. Not respect. Not yet, but surprise. How I win, she repeats. Not how you save us. You've been holding this line for 5 years, I say. I'm not fool enough to think I'm here to save you. I'm here to hand you better tools and a sharper plan, and then get out of the way while you do what you've always done. Win. The difference is that this time you won't lose a third of your people doing it. We have 2 days, and Lysandra and I spend every hour of them turning the low pass into a trap. This is where everything I've built comes together, and where the Eisenwald begin grudgingly to understand what the lowland boy actually brought. Brunhilde's people are magnificent fighters, the best I've ever seen, but they've been fighting the only way they've had the means to, meeting the raiders head-on in the pass and winning by sheer ferocity at a terrible cost in blood, brute courage against brute force. It's why they lose a third of their number every time. I brought them the thing they never had, leverage. Lysandra reads the ground the way she reads a ledger, and the low pass is a gift, a narrowing throat of rock, where a column has to bunch together. We sight Aglaya's mountain throwers on the heights above it, hidden, ranged, and sighted on the choke point over the 2 days by careful measurement, exactly the way Aglaya taught the crews. Viveni's gold arms the clan properly for the first time, not just their own worn blades but good steel, and Aglaya's people who came with the engine's rig, obstacles in the pass, felled timber and stone, funneling the raiders into the killing ground without their knowing they're being funneled. And I sit with Brunhilde over Lysandra's map, and I don't tell her how to fight. She knows that better than any living soul. I tell her what the tools can do, and let her build the battle. Your throwers break their column here. At the choke, she says slowly, tracing it, a warrior seeing a whole new grammar of war open up. They bunch, they take stones from above, they can't answer, they panic. And then my people hit them not head-on into a solid column and dying for it, but into a broken, panicked mess that's already half shattered. She looks up and there's a fierce light kindling in her weathered face. We take them with a fraction of the losses, maybe none. We've never had anything that could break their formation before we closed. We just had ourselves, and our dead. Now you have more, I say. Same courage, same fighters. Just with the ground and the engines and the plan on your side instead of against you. The column comes on the 3rd morning, and the Battle of the Low Pass is the first time I stand in real war, and it is nothing like I imagined, and exactly like Lysandra planned. 200 and more Kronberg raiders push into the pass, arrogant, expecting what they always get, a bloody head-on brawl with the mountain clans that they'll win by numbers, and Kronberg steel. They funnel into the choke, bunching, exactly where Aglaya's obstacles guide them, and then the sky falls on them. Aglaya's throwers, hidden on the heights, open up on the choke point, and stones the size of a man's chest come down out of nowhere into the packed column, and the effect is instant and total. Men and horses go down. The formation, packed tight in the narrow throat, has nowhere to go. They can't advance past the obstacles, can't spread out in the narrows, can't reach the engines high above them. A second volley, a third. The arrogant raiding column becomes, in the space of a minute, a screaming, panicked mass of men who came for an easy slaughter and are being crushed from a sky they can't fight back against. And then Brunhilde hits them. I've never seen anything like the Eisenwald in a charge. They come down off the pass walls into the shattered column like an avalanche with blades, Brunhilde at their head, enormous and terrible, her half-healed arm forgotten, roaring, and they hit the broken raiders not as desperate defenders bleeding to hold a line, but as a hammer coming down on men already reeling. It isn't a battle. It's a reckoning. The raiders break completely, those who can run running, and the mountain warriors who have lost a third of their number every time they've done this the old way, take the entire column at a cost of a handful of wounded, and not one dead. I fight too at the edge of it, where the routing raiders try to break out past our flank, and it's ugly and fast and frightening and I don't run, and Brunhilde sees it, sees the lowland emperor standing in the steel and not running, and something changes in her face across the carnage. When it's done, when the pass is held, the column destroyed, the frontier, that would have cost a third of the clan now taken for almost nothing. Brunhilde Eisenwald stands in the aftermath, breathing hard, blood not her own across her, and looks at the hidden engines on the heights, and at Lysandra's trap sprung perfect, and at me standing in the wreckage of my first real battle. 5 years, she says, and her voice isn't contemptuous anymore, it's something rawer. 5 years we've bled for every scrap of this line, buried our children holding it. And you, she gestures at the pass, at the destroyed column, at the handful of wounded, where there should be a field of Eisenwald, dead, you just handed me a victory that cost nothing, that my grandmother would have called a miracle, not by fighting our battle for us, by making our battle winnable. She wipes blood from her face. I called you the boy who digs wells. I meant it as an insult. A long pause. It wasn't one, was it? You dig the thing that was missing, and then people who couldn't win suddenly can. That's what you did here. You dug us a well, and then we build, and this is the last great work of the raising of Ashenfeld. We forge an army. Brunhilde doesn't kneel, not yet. She's too proud and too burned for that, and I don't ask, but she opens her mountain to me, and with her fighters as the core and Viveni's gold as the fuel and Aglaya's engineering as the multiplier, we build the military. Ashenfeld has lacked since the night my father died. The forges first. This is Aglaya's art turned to war, and it's a marvel and a little terrifying, where her mountain order kept the secrets of arch and aqueduct. They also kept the secrets of metallurgy, how to build a forge that runs hotter, how to work steel harder and truer than the lowland smiths ever could. We raise great forges first here on the frontier and then in Ashenfeld itself, water-powered by Aglaya's wheels, turning out steel blades, armor, spearheads, arrowheads at a rate and quality that the old empire never dreamed of. Viveni's trade routes bring the iron and the coal. Aglaya's forges turn them into weapons, and the barge brothers who dug wells and hauled stone and built harbors now learn to run a foundry, because the people of Aschenfeld can build anything now. They proved it to themselves this year. Then the army itself, raised the way Lysandra raises everything, as a system. Not a feudal levy of reluctant peasants, but a paid, trained, professional force, fed from the granaries, armed from the new forges, paid from the overflowing treasury. Brunhilde and her clan warriors become the officers and the trainers, the hard core around which we build. Men from Aschenfeld, the same men who dug the drains and lit the lamps and raised the harbor, healthy now and fed and proud, take the coin and the training and become soldiers, not conscripts dragged from their farms. Citizens of a city they helped raise from the dead who have something worth fighting for and a wage worth taking and the fierce loyalty of people who remember exactly what it was like when they had nothing. Brunhild drills them, and watching her is watching a master as surely as watching Aglaia build or Vivene trade. She takes soft lowland recruits and makes soldiers of them, and she does it with a hard fairness that they come to worship. She'll break a man down and build him back harder, and never once ask him to do anything she won't do herself. First and biggest and loudest. An army isn't weapons, she tells me, echoing without knowing it the things Aglaia said about walls and Vivena said about coin. An army is trust. Every soldier has to know the man beside him won't run, and the officer above him won't spend his life for nothing, and the emperor behind him is worth dying for. You can forge all the steel in the world if they don't trust each other, and trust you, they'll break the first time it's real. So you build the trust first, in the drilling, in the fairness, in the wage that comes on time, and the officer who bleeds first. Then the steel means something, and the frontier which was bleeding we make solid. Aglaia's people fortify the pass's walls, watchtowers, permanent emplacements for the throwers, turning the Eisenwald's lonely blood-soaked line into a defended border that Kronberg's raiders break themselves against. The raids which had risen tenfold start to fail, and then to stop, because a raiding party that crosses now doesn't find desperate clans to burn it, finds a fortified frontier, professional soldiers, and mountain throwers that shatter columns from the heights. Change by that winter is the last piece of the machine clicking into place. Before a city with no army worth the name, a guard for keeping order, a handful of soldiers, and a frontier held by proud dying clans, with nothing but their own blood. Militarily, still a corpse. Otto von Kronberg could have sent a raiding party a year ago and taken the lot. After, an army. Professional, paid, trained, and armed with steel the old empire couldn't have forged, drilled by the fiercest warriors on the continent, backed by siege engines and a fortified frontier and a fleet in the harbor. Great forges running day and night. The Eisenwald passes turned from a bleeding wound into an iron door. A military that didn't exist a year ago, built from citizen soldiers who remember the ashes and mountain warriors who remember the graves. Forged into something Kronberg can no longer bleed and will not find it cheap to face. Lysandra lays the whole thing out for me one winter evening, the complete picture, at last, of what we've built across a year and a half. Look at it, she says quietly. And it's not a ledger this time, it's a map, the whole empire on it. A year and a half ago, 40 days, an iron crown, 11 mourners now. She touches the map, piece by piece, a healthy people, clean water, drains, roads, light, baths, a wall, engines, a fortified frontier, an economy that overflows a mint, trade, a harbor, a fleet, and now an army, professional and armed and trained, with the best general on the continent to lead it. She looks up at me. That's everything, Cassian. That's every single thing a power needs. A body, a heart, and now a sword. We've built the whole machine. 18 months from a corpse. She's quiet a moment. You could stop here, consolidate, rule a strong, rich, defended empire, and live a long life and never risk any of it. That would be the safe arithmetic. You know I'm not going to. I know. The idea of a smile, but grim, because she knows what I've been building toward since the very first night. Everything you've made, you made toward one thing. You told me on the burning street the day you saved my family, some sums aren't in the ledger. Kronberg is the sum that was never in the ledger. Your father on his own steps. 5 years of a corpse. You didn't build all this to be safe, Cassian. You built it to pay a debt. I look at the map, at the city, the frontier, the harbor, the army. The whole impossible machine we raised from ash, and at the east where a man in a warm bright hall once made a corpse of all of it in a single morning and laughed. I built it to pay a debt. I agree quietly, and the debt's nearly due. In the warm hall to the east, Emperor Otto von Kronberg receives news he does not want, and can scarcely believe his tenfold raids have failed. The Eisenwald frontier, which should by now be ash and broken clans, has become a fortified iron border that shatters his raiding columns. The mountain clans, which should be burned out, are armed with fine steel and backed by siege engines and lead, alongside their own war leader, by the Veldmar boy. Otto sets the report down very slowly. He sent raids to bleed the boy, to distract him, to keep him too busy for ambition. Instead, the raids have handed the boy the one thing he still lacked: an army, and a general, and a hardened frontier, and worse, have handed him the loyalty of the fiercest fighters on the continent, who now have every reason to march toward Kronberg rather than merely bleed on their own line. Otto meant to bleed the boy. He has armed him instead. The spider's warning, which Otto half dismissed, now reads like prophecy. The window in which the boy could be cheaply killed is closing. It is, Otto understands with cold clarity, all but closed. A raiding party will no longer serve. Pressure short of war will no longer serve. The boy has assembled a true power on Kronberg's own border city, economy, fleet, and now army in 18 months. while Otto watched and waited and told himself it was patience. I have made an error, Otto says aloud, and it costs him something to say it, for he is not a man accustomed to error. Made a corpse and did not confirm the kill. I watched it stir and called my watching patience, when it was only sloth. And now the corpse has stood up with a sword in its hand. He is silent a long while, and when he speaks again his voice has changed, the contempt, finally, entirely gone, replaced by the cold focus of a man who has ruled through force for decades and recognizes, at last, a true rival. No more raids, no more games. If the Veldmar boy is to be put back in his grave, it will take the full strength of Kronberg, my army, entire, in the field. And if he means to bring his new little army to me first, the cold eyes narrow, then let him come. Let him march his 18-month miracle against the power that made a corpse of his father's empire before he was old enough to shave. Miracles are brittle. We shall see how his holds when it meets a real army, in a real war, at last. And for the first time the Emperor of Kronberg begins in earnest to prepare for war. Not a raid, not a correction, but war entire. The reckoning the boy has been building toward, and the one Otto should have prevented 18 months and one dismissed well ago, is coming for them both. But before the reckoning, on the frontier, there is Brunhilde, and the thing still unsettled between us. She's fought beside me now. She's seen what I brought, and it's changed her contempt into something like respect. But respect isn't the oath. And Brunhilde Eisenwald is not a woman to give her clan's loyalty, or her own for a single clever battle. On the last night before I ride south, she finds me on the fortress wall, looking out at the frontier we made solid, and she says what's been building in her since the low pass. You did what you said, she tells me, blunt as ever. You didn't pity us, you didn't buy us, you handed us better tools and a sharper plan, and then got out of the way and let us win. You stood in the steel and didn't run. My people would follow you now. I see it. Half of them are half in love with the lowland emperor already. God help them. A pause. And I am closer to it than I'd like to admit. But I say because I hear it coming. But she turns to face me, and her weathered face is deadly serious. Clever battle isn't a war, and a well-armed frontier isn't a reckoning. You say you mean to make Kronberg pay for your father, for my children. Big words. Lowland boys are good at big words. Her jaw sets. I've buried too many of my people to bind them to another man's big words. Before I give you my clan, before I give you me, I have to see it, Cassian. Not the well digger, not the lamplighter, the war leader. I have to see you take this army you've built and stand against the thing that burned us both, and mean it all the way, when the steel is real and the cost is blood and not coin. She looks east toward Kronberg, toward the coming reckoning we both feel building. Show me you're not just a builder who got lucky with a battle. Show me you're the one who finishes it. Do that. And here at last, something in her fierce eyes softens. Just slightly, and my clan is yours, and my blade is yours, and so am I. But I have to see it first. I have to see you make him pay. I look at her, this proud, burned, magnificent woman who has held a line alone for 5 years, and will not give her heart for anything less than the truth. And I understand that she's asking for the same thing they all asked for, in the end. Lysandra needed to see I'd throw away the cold sum for the people. Aglaia needed to see I was angry at the right thing. Vivenna needed a game worth her whole mind. And Brunhilde needs to see that the debt I keep speaking of is real, that I'll pay it in blood and not just build toward it forever in safety. Then you'll see it, I tell her, because the reckoning's coming whether I'm ready or not. Otto knows what we've built now, and a man like that doesn't wait to be marched on twice. War's coming, Brunhilde, the real thing. And when it comes, you'll be standing beside me when I make Kronberg pay for your children, and my father both. And then you can judge whether the lowland boy is worth your clan, and your blade, and your heart. I hold out my hand, finally, and this time she doesn't refuse it. She grips it, forearm to forearm, warrior to warrior. Ride south with me. Help me get the army ready, and let's go make him pay. We ride south together to ready the army for the war we both know is coming. And somewhere on that road, Brunhilde Eisenwald stops being a war leader, I've impressed, and starts being something else. It doesn't happen in a moment. It happens in the work, the way it always does with the people who matter. It happens over the weeks of building the army in earnest. She and I side by side, dawn to dark. Her drilling the soldiers while I organize the supply and the coin and the strategy with Lysandra, the two of us arguing tactics over maps late into the night. Disagreeing loudly and well, each of us learning the other's mind. She's blunt to the point of rudeness, impatient with anything that smells of court, incapable of flattery, and after a year of the subtle brilliant women I've bound to me, Brunhilde's plainness is like cold mountain water. She says exactly what she thinks. She does exactly what she says. When she decides something is right, she throws her whole enormous self behind it without reservation. And when she decides you're worth her loyalty, she gives it total and unafraid. And watching her build my army, taking frightened lowland recruits and making soldiers of them, first through the wall and biggest through it, never asking a man to bleed where she wouldn't bleed first. I fall for her the way I fell for the others, not despite what she is, but for it. For the honesty, for the total fearless way she commits, for the fierce fairness that makes hard men worship her. Lysandra is the sharp electric meeting of minds. Aglaia is the quiet warmth of building beautiful things together. Vivienne is the delighted game of two fast players. Brunhilde is something simpler and just as true, the deep trust of standing beside someone in the steel and knowing all the way down that they will never ever run. She feels it too. I know because she tells me bluntly, of course. because she's incapable of anything else. I said I had to see the war leader before I'd give you my clan, she says one night, the two of us on the frontier wall after a long day's drilling. And the war hasn't come yet, so by my own words I shouldn't be saying this. She turns to me, and her weathered face has none of its usual armor. But I've watched you build this army the way I build my warriors, fair and hard, and bleeding first, and I've watched you refuse to spend a single life you didn't have to, and I've decided I was wrong, to make you wait for a battle to prove what I can already see. A pause, and then gruff, I don't need to see you make him pay to know you will. I know it, I've known it since the low pass. She looks out at the frontier they made solid together. My clan is yours, Cassian. My blade is yours, and so am I, if you'll have a loud, blunt mountain woman who'll argue with you every day of your life, and never once lie to you. That's exactly the woman I want, I tell her. And I mean it all the way down, and the system feels that I mean it. A true oath sovereign. Brunhilde Eisenwald stands with you. Truth of bond, forged in steel and honesty, as true and unbreakable as the woman herself. For it true means in the strength of the mountain clans, their steel and their blades, now yours in war. The gold pours in the greatest yet, and with it the last piece. The military strength of the fiercest fighters on the continent, bound to Ashenfeld not by conquest but by a true oath freely given. For the first time since the night my father died, my empire has everything, a healthy people, an economy that overflows, a fleet, a fortified frontier, and now an army and the general to lead it. Everything a power needs to defend itself. And I begin to realize as I look at the whole of it, everything a power needs to find the rot inside itself, because with Brunhilde's oath, the machine is finally complete enough to turn on the shadow that's been hindering us all along. It's Lysandra who finally catches him, and she catches him the way she catches everything, by refusing to believe in luck. She's been troubled for over a year since the soured credit and the vanished stone shipments back in the spring, the pattern of small aimed cuts she couldn't quite trace. She never let it go. Lysandra Morn does not let go of an arithmetic that doesn't reconcile. Now, with the army built and the empire's whole apparatus finally strong enough to look, she brings it all to me at once, spread across the workshop table. A year and a half of small nibbles she's been quietly collecting like a woman assembling a case. It's one hand, she says flatly. I'm certain now. Every soured deal, every vanished shipment, every noble who stirred up trouble at exactly the wrong moment, every piece of information that seemed to reach Kronberg faster than it should have, I've been collecting them for 18 months, and they're not chance. They're aimed, all of them, by one patient hand inside our own house, someone who has been trying to keep this empire weak from the very beginning. Someone highly placed enough to sour a credit line I arranged in private, to know which stone shipment mattered, to stir the exact nobles who'd caused the most trouble. She looks up, and someone who's been feeding Kronberg. The timing of Otto's raids, the tenfold raids that turned exactly when you became a threat. Otto knew precisely when to strike. Someone told him, someone inside. The word lands cold. A traitor, on my own council. Not just any traitor. Lysandra's jaw is tight. Look at the reach of it. 5 years of it. Cassian. Because when I go back far enough, the pattern doesn't start with your coronation. It starts before. The small failures that kept your father's recovery from ever taking hold. The information that helped Kronberg strike so cleanly the night your father died. She says it quietly, because she knows what it means. Whoever this is didn't start hindering you when you took the crown. He's been hindering House Veldmar for years. He may well have been part of how your father fell in the first place. I go very still. 5 years of a slow rot I never saw. A patient hand keeping my house weak from the inside, and possibly the hand that helped open the door for Kronberg on the night I watched my father die. Who, I say. I don't have the name yet. Lysandra admits. He's careful. 5 years careful. Never a direct order. Always 3 cutouts deep. Never his own hand on anything. But I have the shape of him. Highly placed. Old he was at your father's council table, trusted enough that no one ever looked. And now she taps the assembled evidence strong enough in his arrogance that he's grown careless, because for 5 years no one on the Veldmar side could count well enough to catch him. He never planned for a morn at your side, the idea of a smile, cold as winter. That was his mistake. And here's where my 3 wives, 4, now, with Brunhilde, stop being brilliant individuals who argue and become for the first time a single machine, each doing the one thing only she can do, aimed at one target. It's Lysandra's plan, and it's beautiful. We don't hunt him directly, she says. He's too careful, and if he sees us hunting, he'll go quiet and we'll never have him. Instead, we make him reveal himself. We set a trap baited with exactly the thing he's been feeding Kronberg information. We let it be known, through channels he's compromised, that the army is marching by a certain route on a certain day, undermanned. Vulnerable. If he's feeding Otto, he'll pass it on. And when Kronberg's raiders show up at that exact place in time to hit an army that isn't actually undermanned and vulnerable, but is in fact a trap, she spreads her hands. Then we know the information came from inside. We know which channel carried it, and we follow that channel back to the hand. And each of them makes it work. Vivenna finds the money. Because a spider who's run cutouts for 5 years has paid a great many people, and people who are paid can be paid more. She goes into the underside of Solmir and Ashenfeld both, into the world of factors and go-betweens and bought men, with a purse that overflows and the sharpest financial mind on the coast. And she starts buying the trader's own network out from under him. Not the spider himself who stays hidden, but the cutouts, the messengers, the bought minor officials, one by one, quietly, until half the hands that carry the spider's messages are secretly Vivenna's. Everyone has a price. she says with grim satisfaction, and I can always pay more than a traitor skimming an empire. His network was never loyal to him. It was loyal to his coin, and I have more coin. Aglaia builds the trap's teeth. The route Lysandra baits is real ground, and Aglaia turns it into a killing box exactly as she did the low-pass throwers sighted. Obstacles placed, the vulnerable army, in fact, the anvil of an ambush. Brunhilde is the hammer. When Kronberg's raiders take the bait and come for the supposedly weak column, it's Brunhilde and her hardened army waiting, and the raiders who came to slaughter are slaughtered. And crucially, some are taken alive, and a captured Kronberg raider who's told exactly where and when to strike is a thread that leads straight back to the informant. And Lysandra follows the thread. With Viven's bot network feeding her which channel carried the bait, and the captured raiders confirming exactly what information reached Otto and when, she traces it back through the cutouts, 3 deep, 4 deep, careful as the spider was. And at the end of the thread, at the center of 5 years of patient rot, she finds the name, Count Varen. I know him. Of course I know him. He sat at my father's council table when I was a boy. He stood at my father's funeral with a grave face and murmured condolences to the frightened 14-year-old I was. He was one of the loyal nobles who stayed when others fled, and I trusted that, took it as loyalty, when all along staying was simply the most useful position from which to keep the corpse a corpse. For 5 years he has smiled at me across council tables and sold my house to Kronberg, one small betrayal at a time. He may have helped open the door the night my father died. Him, I say, and my voice is very quiet. It was him, all of it. Since before I wore the crown. Him, Lysandra confirms. And Cassian, he doesn't know we know. He still thinks he's invisible. He still thinks you're the mud-digging boy he's been quietly strangling for 5 years, too busy with your fountains and your harbors to ever count closely enough to catch him. The cold idea of a smile. He has no idea the whole machine just turned around and found him. Taking Count Varen is the first time I feel the full weight of the thing we've built, and it is nothing like the desperate scrambles of the early days. It is calm and total, and it is over almost before it begins. I don't storm his estate. I don't need to. Brunhilde's soldiers, my soldiers, professional and disciplined and loyal, simply surround it, quietly, in the night, so there is no fight to be had. Viven's bot network has already peeled away every man Varen might have called on, so when he wakes to find the army at his gates he has no one. The hirelings and cutouts he'd have summoned are all, unknown to him, working for me now. Lysandra's evidence is already assembled, complete, airtight 5 years of it, documented, undeniable, ready to be laid before the assembled nobles so that no one can call this a young emperor's tyranny. And Aglaia. Aglaia has quietly seen to it that the walls Varen might have hidden behind, the escape routes a careful man keeps, are all closed. He is a spider who spent 5 years spinning an invisible web, and he wakes one morning to find that every strand of it has been cut, every fly he'd bought turned against him, every exit sealed, and the boy he thought he was strangling standing in his hall with the whole assembled power of a reborn empire at his back. I want to see his face when he understands, and I do. I face him in his own great hall, before the assembled nobles of Ashenfeld, the same nobles who once clapped their soft, insulting applause at my ruthless coronation, summoned now to witness. Count Varen is brought before me, and he tries, at first the only thing left to a man like him. Denial. Outrage. The wounded dignity of a loyal servant falsely accused. This is monstrous, he says, drawing himself up. I served your father faithfully, boy. I stayed when others fled, and this is my reward, dragged before a mob on the word of a disgraced counting woman and a mountain savage, Count Varen. I don't raise my voice. I've learned that the quiet voice is the one that carries when everyone has gone silent to listen, and the whole hall has gone silent. For 5 years you have believed I was the boy you were strangling. Too busy with mud and lamps to count. Too grieved and too green to ever look up and see the hand around my throat. I let that sit. You were right, for a while. In the beginning I couldn't see you. I was 14 and my father was dead and I didn't know how to count the rot. But then I found someone who could. I glance, once at Lysandra, standing composed at the hall's edge with 1.5 years of evidence in her hands. You never once adjusted for her. You went on strangling the boy, one small betrayal at a time, and you never noticed that the boy had built something that was, quietly, turning around to look at you. I gesture, and Lysandra steps forward and lays the evidence before the assembled nobles. The whole of it, the soured deals traced to his hand, the intercepted channels, the captured raiders. Confirmation, the money trail Vivene unwound, 5 years of patient treason documented beyond any denial. The nobles read it. I watch their faces change. I watch Varen's face change as he understands, at last, that this is not a boy's wild accusation to be brazened out, but a case, complete and airtight, built by minds far sharper than his own. You fed Kronberg the timing of the raids that burned the Eisenwald. I go on, and now Brunhilde is standing beside me, vast and terrible and silent, and Varen cannot meet her eyes. You sold the stone that would have built our walls faster. You soured the credit that would have fed the poor. For 5 years you kept my house weak, and my people suffering, and my father's empire a corpse, because a corpse was more profitable to you and your paymasters in Kronberg than a living empire that might notice what you were taking. I lean forward, And here's the part I want you to understand. Count Varen, before the law has you. Every single thing you did to keep me weak, I built past. You soured our credit. We made our own coin. You stole our stone. We reclaimed more. You fed Kronberg our secrets. And when Kronberg came, we were ready. Because the very army you tried to prevent is the one standing around your house tonight. You spent 5 years trying to stop me from building this. I gesture at Brunhilde, at Lysandra, at the whole machine of the reborn empire filling his hall. And instead, every obstacle you laid only taught me to build it stronger. You didn't weaken me, you forged me. The empire that just crushed you is, in part, your own doing. Count Varen, who spent 5 years as an invisible spider, certain of his own cleverness, who clapped at my coronation and murmured at my father's grave and strangled my house from the shadows, stares at the boy he thought he'd beaten. Now an emperor with an army, and a general and a counter, and a merchant and a builder arrayed against him, holding the airtight proof of everything he did, and the arrogance finally, completely collapses. He has no move, every thread cut, every exit sealed, every fly turned, the whole machine he never saw coming closed around him at once. He is taken by the law, my father's law, restored, laid before the nobles, so that his fall is justice, and not a young tyrant's vengeance. The paymasters in Kronberg lose their eyes and ears inside my house in a single night. The nobles of Aschenfeld, who once applauded a doomed boy in a roofless hall, watch that same boy calmly dismantle a 5-year conspiracy with a machine none of them understood he'd built, and their soft contempt curdles, at last, into something far more useful, fear and respect, and the dawning understanding that the empire has a true emperor again. In the warm hall to the east, Emperor Otto von Kronberg learns in the same week that his war preparations must now proceed blind. His patient asset inside Aschenfeld, the spider who fed him 5 years of intelligence and kept the Veldmar house weak from within, has been taken. Rooted out, the eyes and ears he'd relied on for half a decade, gone in a night. Otto receives this with the cold stillness of a man watching his last advantage evaporate. Varen was his masterpiece of patience, an asset placed at the very heart of the enemy, quietly strangling a corpse so it could never rise. And the boy has found him, and cut him out, cleanly, with a precision that speaks of an apparatus Otto did not know his enemy possessed. He found my spider, Otto says slowly. 5 years my man sat invisible at their council, and the boy unwound him in a night. He is quiet, and the last of his contempt burns away entirely, leaving only the cold clarity of one power recognizing another. I made 3 errors with this boy. I did not confirm the kill. I called my sloth patience while he grew strong, and I believed a grieving child could never counter a spider I'd spent 5 years placing. 3 errors. He rises, and there is something almost like respect in the grim set of his face. The respect one predator gives another, it has fatally underestimated. No more errors. The boy has a city, an economy, a fleet, an army, a general, and now he has cleaned his own house of my influence. He is not a corpse. He is not a twitching ruin. He is a rival, a true one, the first I have faced in 20 years, and he is coming for me, because I burned his father and his people, and he has spent every day since building the answer. Otto von Kronberg walks to the great map on his wall, the one that shows his empire and the small northern realm he once corrected in a morning, and he looks at it for a long time. Then we end the pretense of raids and corrections, he says. He has forced me to fight him as an equal, which no one has made me do in a generation. So be it. Muster the full army of Kronberg. Every legion, every engine, every man. The Veldmar boy wants a reckoning. The cold eyes fix on the map, on Aschenfeld, on the miracle risen from the ash he made. Then he shall have the full weight of the power that made ash of his house the first time. And this time I will confirm the kill. And across the border, 2 powers that were never meant to be equals prepare, at last, to meet as equals in the field, the old empire that rules by force, and the young one raised from its own ashes, by a boy who turned every wound into a wall. The taking of Varen is the turning point of everything, and I feel it the night after, standing in the workshop with the 4 of them, Lysandra, Aglaya, Vivene, Brunhilde, the strange, loud, brilliant government I've assembled from the ashes, who just moved for the first time as a single machine, and crushed a 5-year conspiracy without a wasted motion. We did that together, Aglaya says quietly, a little wonder in her voice. All of us. Each doing our own part. I've never, she pauses, I spent my whole life building alone, in a mountain. I didn't know it could feel like this. 4 hands on one thing, and it worked. It's called a government, Lysandra says dryly, but there's warmth under it. A functional one, which is rarer than you'd think. Most rulers have advisors who agree with them and accomplish nothing. Cassian has 4 women who agree about almost nothing. A pointed glance at Vivene, and who just between us did something none of us could have done alone. I still say the portfolio framing was sound. Vivene murmurs, entirely unrepentant, and Brunhilde snorts, and even Lysandra's mouth twitches, and I stand among them, my counter, my builder, my merchant, my general, arguing and warm and complete, and I feel the full weight of what we've built. Not just a city, not just an army, a government, a team, a strange bound family of brilliant women who fight each other constantly, and would, I have no doubt, die for each other now, and for me, and for the impossible thing we've raised together. Lysandra lays out the whole of it once more, the complete picture. A year and a half ago, she says, you were a boy in a roofless hall, 40 days of grain, 11 mourners, 9 noble houses waiting for you to die so they could pick the bones, a corpse of an empire with a spider at its heart. She touches the map, city, frontier, harbor, army, all of it. Now, a healthy, thriving people who adore you, an economy that overflows, a fleet on the sea, an army led by the finest general on the continent, a frontier of iron, a court cleansed of treason, and 9 noble houses who applauded your funeral, now terrified of the emperor who dismantled a 5-year conspiracy in a single night. She looks up at me. The despised heir is gone, Cassian. In his place is an emperor stronger than any single power on this coast. We've done it. We've truly done it, before and after. A boy the whole world rode off in a roofless hall with an iron crown. And now an emperor with a city, an economy, a fleet, an army, and a cleansed house, feared and loved and strong. The corpse has not just risen, it has become a power. But that night, going over the whole of it, I feel the one thing still missing, and it's Aglaya, of all of them, who names it. We've built everything a state needs to fight, she says, looking at the map of the strong, thriving, war-ready empire, walls, engines, army, fleet, and everything it needs to make money, mint, trade, harbor, and everything it needs to survive water, food, health. She pauses, her builder's eye seeing the gap the way she sees a missing keystone. But Cassian, what holds all of this together when the war is over, when there's no enemy at the gate to unite everyone? A city this size, this rich, this fast-grown, it needs more than walls and coin and soldiers. It needs law that everyone trusts. It needs healers for when the sickness comes back, as it always does. It needs schools, so the next generation can run the mint and the forges and the harbor we built. It needs, she searches for the word, the soft things. Things that don't fight and don't earn, but without which a great city rots from the inside, no matter how strong its walls. We've built the body and the sword, we haven't built the soul. And an empire with no soul doesn't last. However strong, it just becomes another Kronberg, ruling by force until force fails. She's right. And I feel it land the last gap in the machine, the thing that turns a war state into a civilization that endures. Law, learning, healing, order the mortar. Between all the stones we've laid, there's an order. Aglaya goes on. The way there was for engineering, the way there was for coin, not builders or merchants, healers and teachers and keepers of law. The Sisters of the Vigil, they're called, out past the eastern hills. They run the hospitals, the schools, the courts of the old faith. If anyone can give this empire its soul, its law, its learning, its healing, it's them and the woman who leads them, Mother Theodora. But the idea of a smile, gentle, they're not builders you can win with anger or merchants you can win with a deal. They give their trust only to those who truly care for people, not just for power. Which means of all of them, they may see through you fastest, Cassian, or trust you deepest, if what you care about is real. I look at the map at the strong, rich, war-ready empire that has everything except the soul to hold it together past the coming war, and I feel the pull of the next work, and the last piece before the reckoning. Then we find the Sisters of the Vigil, I say, and Mother Theodora. But even as I say it, a rider is coming hard from the frontier. I'll learn it within the hour, because Otto von Kronberg, his spider cut out, his patience spent, has finally made his move, and it is not another raid. The full army of Kronberg is mustering. The reckoning I've built toward for a year and a half is no longer coming someday. It's coming now, and I have a soul still to build, and a war I can no longer postpone, arriving at the same terrible moment. The war is coming, but it is not coming tomorrow. That's the thing I have to make my war council understand. In the days after the rider brings word of Kronberg's muster, Brunhilde wants to march north at once, to meet Otto at the border, and every instinct in her honest fighting heart strains toward it. But Lysandra, cool as ever, lays out the arithmetic of it, and the arithmetic says wait a little. Mustering the full army of an empire is not a thing you do in a week, she says. Otto has to call his legions from across his territory, provision them, move them to the frontier. That's a season's work, at least likely more, with winter closing the roads soon. He'll come in the spring, when the ground is hard enough to move an army and the campaigning season opens. We have the winter. She looks at me, and I'd counsel using it. Marching to meet him now, in winter, half ready on his timetable is how you lose. Let him come to us in spring, across ground we choose, against a frontier we've spent the winter making even stronger. We have one season, Cassian, use it well. One season. And Aglaya's words are still in my ears. The empire has a body and a sword and a heart, but no soul, no law and learning and healing to hold it together past the war. So I make a decision that Brunhilde thinks is madness and Lysandra, after a moment, thinks is wisdom. I spend the winter before the war, not only sharpening the sword, but building the soul. Because an empire that wins a war and then rots from within has won nothing. And because I don't say this part aloud, but I feel it, I want there to be something worth saving when the killing is done. Not just walls. A civilization, which means the Sisters of the Vigil, and Mother Theodora. The Sisters of the Vigil keep a great abbey out past the eastern hills, and it is unlike any place I've been in this whole long endeavor. The mountain of the builder mechanics hummed with machinery. Salmir roared with money. The Eisenwald fortress rang with steel. The Abbey of the Vigil is quiet, but it is not the quiet of emptiness. It is the quiet of a place where a great deal of good work is being done carefully. Hospitals clean and orderly where the sick are tended. Schools where children of no rank, foundlings, and the poor bend over slates and learn their letters. Courts where the sisters have kept alive through 5 years of chaos. Some thread of honest law when the nobles' justice became nothing but the whim of whoever held the most bravos. Mother Theodora receives me herself, and she is the oldest of all the remarkable women I've met on this road. and in some ways the most formidable, though she never raises her voice or makes a single demand. She's perhaps 60, straight-backed, with a lined kind face and eyes that are gentle and completely without illusion, the eyes of a woman who has spent a long life tending the sick and teaching the poor and burying both, and who sees people exactly as they are. She does not flatter me and she does not fear me, and she does not, I realize quickly, want anything from me, which makes her the hardest of all to win, because I have nothing she needs. The emperor who raised Ashenfeld, she says, pouring me a plain cup of tea with her own hands. We've heard even out here, the wells, the drains, the harbor, the army. You've been busy, your majesty. Her gentle eyes rest on me, and now you've come to us, which means you want something from the sisters of the vigil. So tell me plainly, child, and I'll call you child, because I'm old enough to be your grandmother and I've tended emperors and beggars and found them much the same on the inside. What does a young man with a city and a fleet and an army want from a house of healers and teachers? I've learned by now that the way to win each of these women is to understand what they truly value and speak to it honestly. Lysandra valued the problem. Aglaia valued the craft done right. Vivenna valued the game. Brunhilde valued the truth proven in blood. And Mother Theodora, I understand looking at her clear, kind eyes, values one thing above all, whether you actually care about people or only about power dressed up as caring. She'll see through any pitch that's really about power, so I don't make one. I want your help building the part of my empire I don't know how to build. I say simply, I can raise walls and forge steel and strike coin. I've learned all of that this year, from people wiser than me in each. But I've realized something standing on top of everything we've made. I set down the tea. I've built a body that can fight and a heart that makes wealth. But a city isn't walls and coin. It's people, and people need more than to be defended and fed. They need to be healed when they're sick. They need their children taught, so the next generation can run what we've built and build more. They need law they can trust, real law. The same for a beggar and a lord, not the whim of whoever has the most swords. And I don't know how to build those things. Nobody at my court does. We know how to make a city survive and fight and prosper. We don't know how to give it a soul. I meet her eyes. You do. You've kept healing and learning and honest law alive out here through 5 years when the rest of the empire forgot them. I'm not here to ask you to serve my power, Mother. I'm here to ask you to help me build the things that have nothing to do with power, the things that just make life better for ordinary people, because I've built everything else, and I can feel the hole where those things should be, and I think a city without them isn't really worth defending. Mother Theodora is quiet for a long time, studying me over her plain tea. And then she asks the question that is, I understand, the real test, the one everything hinges on. And when the war comes, she says softly, as it's coming because a young emperor who's built an army and speaks of a debt owed to Kronberg is a young emperor riding toward a war, don't think an old woman can't see it. When the war comes and the coin runs short, and you must choose between the schools and the soldiers, between the hospitals and the war engines. Her gentle eyes hold mine, utterly without illusion. Which will you cut, child? Because every ruler I've ever known has said fine words about caring for the people, right up until the moment caring for the people cost him something he wanted more. The schools are always the first thing burned for the war. So tell me honestly, and I'll know if you're lying. Because I've heard every lie a powerful man can tell. When it costs you, what do you protect? It's the sharpest question anyone has asked me on this whole long road, sharper than Vivenna's pricing or Lysandra's arithmetic, because it goes straight to the center of what kind of ruler I actually am. And I answer it with the truth, because she'll know anything else. I don't know for certain, I say. I'd like to tell you I'd never cut the schools, but you'd know that for the easy lie it is, of course a war might force terrible choices, and I won't insult you by pretending I'm certain I'd always choose perfectly. But here's what I can tell you, and it's true. I lean forward. I started this whole thing by digging a well with my own hands, for people who could do nothing for me, because they were thirsty. Not because it was strategic, it wasn't. Because a woman stood in a doorway with a sick child, drinking from a sewer, and I couldn't bear it. Every single thing I've built since started from that, from not being able to bear the suffering of ordinary people. The walls, the harbor, the army, all of it, I built so that the people could live. If I ever start cutting the schools and the hospitals to feed the war, if I ever forget that the war is for the people, and start sacrificing the people for the war, then I've become Otto von Kronberg, who rules by force and burns whatever he must, and the whole thing was pointless. I hold her gaze, so I can't promise you I'll never make a hard choice. But I can promise you this, I'll build the schools and the hospitals first, this winter before the war, when it's hardest to justify, precisely so that they're real and standing and rooted before the pressure comes, so that cutting them would mean tearing down something that already exists, and that the people already love, which is much harder than simply never building them. I'll bind my own hands, Mother. I'll make the soul of this empire real now, so that even I can't easily unmake it later. I sit back. That's the most honest answer I have, not a promise to be perfect. A promise to make it hard for myself to be a coward. Mother Theodora looks at me for a very long moment, and then slowly something in her lined face eases, and she smiles, a warm, tired, real smile. Well, she says, in 60 years I have never once heard a powerful man answer that question, by promising to bind his own hands against his own future weakness. She pours me more tea. Most of them promise me they're already perfect. You're the first to admit you might not be, and to want to build the walls against your own worst self before you're tested. Her gentle eyes are warm now. That child is the only answer I've ever trusted. Anyone can promise virtue when it's cheap. Only an honest man plans for his own future cowardice and builds to prevent it. She sets down the pot. The sisters of the vigil will help you. Not your power, your people. Let us build your empire, its soul. And so, through that last winter before the war, while Brunhilde sharpens the sword and Aglaia strengthens the frontier, Mother Theodora and I build the soul of Ashenfeld, and it is the quietest and in some ways the most moving work of the whole long raising. The school's first because Theodora insists on it, and I agree with my whole heart. A city's future is its children, she says, and a city that doesn't teach its children is a city eating its own future to feed its present. We open schools in every district free, for every child, foundling and craftsman's son and merchant's daughter alike. The sisters teach, and I recruit more teachers, and Vivenne grumbling that it's the first thing I've built that shows no return, until Theodora quietly points out that educated children become the clerks and engineers and traders who'll run her mint and her harbor in 20 years, at which point Vivenne stops grumbling and starts funding it enthusiastically. Vivenne finds the coin. Children who would have grown up illiterate in the ashes, as I nearly did, bend over slates and learn their letters, and I walk into a schoolroom one afternoon and watch a class of ragged district children reading aloud. Haltingly, proudly, and something in my chest aches with it. The hospital's next. Aglaia's aqueducts already made the city clean. Now Theodora's sisters make it healed. Proper hospitals in every district, clean and orderly, where the sick are tended by trained hands instead of dying at home for want of care. The sisters teach their healing arts to new students, multiplying the knowledge the way Aglaia multiplied her engineering. When the sickness comes, as it always does, even to a clean city, there are now places to treat it, and people who know how, and the plagues that once emptied whole tenements become illnesses that are survived. And the law, this is the deepest of all, and the one that changes the empire most. For 5 years, justice in the lands around Ashenfeld had been whatever the nobles said it was. A beggar and a lord did not stand equal before anything, and the lord's bravos were the only law that mattered. Mother Theodora and I build something else. Real courts, with the sisters as honest judges alongside those I appoint. Applying my father's law restored the same law for every soul, high or low. A lord who wrongs a craftsman now answers for it. A beggar wronged by a lord now has a court that will hear him. It's revolutionary and the nobles hate it, and the people can hardly believe it. For the first time in living memory, the ordinary folk of Ashenfeld live under a law that protects them instead of preying on them, and their loyalty to the emperor who gave them that law becomes something deeper than gratitude. It becomes trust. You've done something most emperors never understand, Theodora tells me, watching a court in session, a common woman winning a just claim against a man who would once have had her whipped for daring to bring it. Walls keep enemies out, but law is what makes a people yours from the inside. A man will flee a city he's merely defended in. He'll die for a city that gives him justice. You've just made every ordinary soul in Ashenfeld into someone with a reason to stand and fight for it, not because you command them, but because you've given them something worth protecting. She smiles her tired, warm smile. That's worth more than a legion, child. A defended people is a garrison. A people who trust their emperor's justice is a nation. The change by the end of that winter is the last and subtlest transformation of them all. Before even reborn, even lit and walled and fed and armed, Ashenfeld was still in its heart a city that had merely survived, a place kept alive and defended, but without the deeper things that make survival worth it. A body and a heart and a sword and a hollow where the soul should be. After, a civilization, schools in every district teaching the next generation, hospitals healing the sick, courts giving honest law to high and low alike, a people who are not merely fed and defended but taught, healed, and justly governed, and who because of it love their emperor, not as a protector they depend on, but as the man who gave them a life worth living and a future worth building, the hollow where the soul should be filled. Ashenfeld is no longer a city that survives. It is a city that lives, and teaches, and heals, and judges fairly, and means to go on doing so for generations. Lysandra puts it in her ledger-plain way, but even she is moved. Every other thing we built I could measure, she says. Coin, walls, soldiers, ships. I could put a number on all of it. This she gestures at a schoolroom, a hospital, a court in session I can't measure, and I think it might be the most valuable thing we've made. A people who love their emperor because he gave them justice and taught their children will fight for you in a way no paid army ever could, and stay loyal in a way no wall ever could enforce. You didn't just build a soul, Cassian. You built the thing that will hold everything else together when the war comes and after. A pause. Mother Theodora was right. A defended people is a garrison. What you have now is a nation. And Mother Theodora, the marriage, when it comes, is unlike all the others. Because it is the oath of an old wise woman who has no need of a young emperor, and gives herself not out of the meeting of minds or the joy of building or the truth proven in blood, but out of something quieter and deeper, the recognition that this young man's care for ordinary people is real, and that binding herself and her sisters, work to his will, let that care reach further than the abbey ever could. She marries me the way she does everything, with clear-eyed purpose and warmth to make the good work larger. It's the least romantic of my oaths and one of the truest. The bond of two people who both genuinely want to make ordinary lives better and can do it best together. A true oath, Sovereign Theodora of the Vigil stands with you. Truth of bond, deep and clear, the bond of shared purpose, freely given by one who wants nothing from you but the good you can do together. For it true means, and the soul of your empire, It's law, it's learning, it's healing, and the deep loyalty of a people justly governed. The gold pours in, but as with Theodora herself, the gold is the least of it. What she's brought is the thing that makes all the rest endure, the loyalty of a whole people, bound to me now not by fear or dependence but by justice and gratitude and trust. There's a moment, near the end of that winter, that I keep a breathing space before the storm. I walk down alone, no crown, into the district where I dug the well a lifetime ago, and I go to the new school there, a plain building, warm, full of the sound of children. I stand in the doorway unnoticed, and I watch. A class of district children, the sons and daughters of the dock workers and masons who dug this city out of its own filth, bent over their slates, reading. One little girl, she can't be more than 7, stumbles through a sentence aloud, gets it right, and looks up with a smile of such pure, astonished pride at having read, at having done a thing her illiterate parents never could, that it stops my breath. And I think of the boy I was 14, hidden in a servant's passage, watching his father die, 19, in a roofless hall with an iron crown and 40 days and 11 mourners, digging a well with bleeding hands because a woman in a doorway had a sick child and he couldn't bear it. And I think of everything since the counter and the builder and the merchant and the general and the healer, the walls and the harbor and the army, and now the schools, all of it, every stone, grown from that first refusal to bear the suffering of ordinary people. And here in a warm schoolroom is what it was all for. Not the walls, not the army, not even the reckoning with Kronberg that's coming in the spring. A district child whose parents drank from a sewer 2 years ago, reading a sentence aloud with pride, safe and fed and healed and taught, with a future her parents never dreamed of. This is what a boy digs a well for. This is the whole point of everything. I stand in the doorway with my eyes stinging, unnoticed, tired, and full, and I let myself feel it, just for a moment. We didn't just save these people, we gave them a life worth living. And whatever comes in the spring, whatever the war costs, however the reckoning falls, this exists now. This warm room, and this reading child, and this living city, and it exists because a boy with nothing refused to look away. It's enough. Whatever happens next, this was worth it. Then I wipe my eyes, and I turn back toward the palace, toward the war councils and the coming storm, because the spring is coming, and Otto von Kronberg is coming with it, and the debt I've built toward for 2 years is nearly due. In the warm, bright hall to the east, Emperor Otto von Kronberg finishes mustering his legions for the spring, and receives the final accounting of what his enemy has become. And this time there is no contempt left in him at all. Only the cold respect of one power measuring another, and beneath it, something he has not felt in 20 years. The first faint touch of doubt. The reports are complete now. The boy has not merely a city and an army. He has a nation, a people who adore him, who are healed and taught and justly governed, who will fight for him not as conscripts but as citizens defending a life worth living. He has a fleet, a fortified frontier, an economy that overflows, a general who is the finest on the continent, and a court cleansed of Kronberg's influence. In 2 years from a corpse Otto made in a single morning, the boy has built a power that will not break the way Otto assumed all young things break. I have never in my life so badly misjudged an enemy, Otto says, alone before his great map. I made ash of his house, and I was certain the ash would stay ash. And, instead, he studies the northern realm whole and strong and defiant. Instead, I have spent 2 years watching a boy build the one thing I cannot simply crush. A people who love him. Armies I can defeat, but a nation that will not stop fighting because it is fighting for its own life and its own children. He is silent, a long moment, and the doubt he has not felt in decades sits cold in his chest. But Otto von Kronberg has ruled through force for 20 years, and force has never yet failed him, and he is not a man to be turned aside by doubt. If the boy cannot be crushed cheaply, he will be crushed dearly. The full weight of Kronberg's legions will still, Otto believes, break even a beloved nation, if the blow is hard enough. And yet, being a careful man, and facing for the first time an enemy he respects, Otto does not rely on force alone. He reaches before the spring, for one more move, a subtler one, a probe, a test of the boy's strength and his heart both. Before the legions march, he tells his council, "We will send the boy a gift, a gesture of peace hollow of course, but he cannot easily refuse it without looking like the aggressor to his beloved people, and I am curious what he will do with it." A thin, cold, calculating smile. "We will send him my daughter, the Princess Iris, offered in marriage, as a token of peace between our houses." The council stirs, and Otto's smile does not warm. "It costs me nothing. The girl has always been more useful as a piece than a daughter, and it will tell me a great deal. If he refuses her, he looks like the warmonger, and his people's love may cool. If he accepts her, the cold eyes glint, then I have placed my own blood inside his house, on the eve of war to watch and to learn, and perhaps, when the moment is ripe, to be of use. Either way, I win something. Send her. Let us see what the well-digging emperor does when I place a daughter of Kronberg at his very hearth." And so, as the last winter before the reckoning turns toward spring, a carriage bearing the Princess Iris of Kronberg, daughter of the man who burned Aschenfeld and killed Cassian's father, sets out on the long road toward the reborn city, carrying with her a question that even Otto cannot fully answer. Is she a gift, a spy, a test, a trap? or something none of them yet foresee. The word reaches me in the War Council, and the room goes silent when the messenger reads it out. Otto von Kronberg, on the eve of war, offers peace, and his daughter, the Princess Iris, in marriage, as the token of it. Brunhilde is the first to speak, and she's furious. It's a trap, obviously. He burns your father, musters his army, and now sends you his daughter. It's a spy at your hearth or a knife in your bed, and either way, the answer is no. The answer may not be that simple, Lysandra says slowly, and I can see her already turning it over. All the angles. Refuse her, and Otto tells the world the young emperor spurned a hand of peace, makes you the aggressor, cools your people's love for you just before the war. Accept her, and you take a Kronberg spy into your house on the eve of battle. He's built it so that both answers cost you something. It's clever. It's very clever. She looks at me. And there's the other thing none of us can measure. She's a person, this princess a daughter used as a game piece by the man who burned your city. What she actually is, what she actually wants, whether she's her father's willing spy or his unwilling pawn, we don't know. And that unknown could be the most dangerous thing of all. Or, she trails off because even Lysandra can't finish that sentence. I sit at the head of the council, and I think about the daughter of the man who laughed on my father's steps, riding toward me on the eve of the reckoning I've built, 2 years to deliver, carrying a question no one can answer. Prepare quarters for her, I say quietly. We don't refuse her. Otto's right that refusing plays into his hands, and besides, I think of Mother Theodora, of the man I've decided to be. I won't treat a woman as a weapon before I know whether she is one. She may be her father's spy, she may be his victim, she may be something neither of us expects, but she's a person, and she'll be a guest in my house, and I'll find out which she is, by treating her as one. I look around at my council, my strange-bound family, my counter and builder and merchant and general and healer, everything I've built arrayed around me on the eve of war. Otto sent her to test me, so let's see what the test reveals about her, and about me. I fold the message closed. Let the Princess of Kronberg come. And somewhere on the eastern road, in a carriage rolling toward a city her father burned, the last and most dangerous piece of the whole long story is coming to Aschenfeld. And neither Otto who sent her, nor I who have agreed to receive her, has any idea what she will truly become. 2 women come to Aschenfeld that final spring before the war, and between them they hand me the last 2 things I need to make Kronberg pay. The enemy's secrets, and the proof of what my own heart is worth. The first arrives the way she does everything, uninvited, unannounced, and already 3 steps ahead. I find her sitting in my private study, in my own chair, one boot up on my desk, going through my correspondence, on an evening when the entire palace guard would swear no one had entered. She's perhaps 30, lean and dark and sharp-edged, dressed in nothing that would catch an eye in a crowd, with quick amused eyes and a knife she's using to clean her nails that I have absolutely no doubt she could put through my throat before the guards outside the door finish turning around. Your security is terrible, Roxana says. By way of introduction, not taking her boot off my desk, I've been in your palace for 3 hours. I've read your War Council's minutes, your treasury figures, and 2 rather sweet letters from the builder woman. If I were working for Kronberg, you'd be dead, and so would your pretty little war. She flips the knife closed. Fortunately for you, I'm not working for Kronberg. I'm not working for anyone at the moment, which is why I'm here. I'm told you're going to war with the biggest empire on the continent, and I'm told you don't have anyone who does what I do, which means you're going to war blind, which means you're going to lose. She finally takes her boot down and leans forward. I'm Roxana. I find things out. I have found things out for half the powers on this coast, and I'm the best there is, and I don't come cheap, and you need me more than anyone has ever needed me in my life. So let's talk. There's no long dance of trust with Roxana, and I quickly understand there doesn't need to be one. She's not Lysandra, agonizing over whether to believe in me. She's not Brunhilde, needing to see my worth proven in blood. Roxana is a professional, and she deals in a currency simpler than loyalty, the job. She tells me plainly what she is: a spy, a knife, a woman who has sold her considerable talents to whoever paid, with no particular loyalty to any of them, and she tells me plainly why she's come to me instead of selling me out to Otto, and her reason is refreshingly honest. Because you're the interesting bet, she says, when I ask. Otto's going to win the boring way. Big empire crushes small one. The story writes itself. I've seen it 100 times. There's no craft in it. But you, she looks at me with those quick amused eyes, you're the corpse that stood up. 2 years, from ash to this. If you actually take down Kronberg, it'll be the greatest upset this continent has seen in a generation. And I want to be the one who made it possible, because that's a job worth doing. Also, she adds, with a thin grin, Otto's people tried to have me killed once over a contract, and I hold a grudge, and helping the boy who's going to make him bleed is a very satisfying way to collect on it. Loyalty's a story people tell to feel noble. I'll give you something better than loyalty. I'll give you competence, and a genuine desire to see Otto von Kronberg's face when it all falls apart. Point me at him. I do. And Roxana is exactly as advertised, the best there is. Within weeks, she's built me the thing I've lacked entirely: eyes. She goes into Kronberg herself, and sends her people, and comes back with the map of the enemy that no army can win without. Where Otto's legions are massing, and how many, which of his commanders are competent, and which are fools promoted for loyalty, where his supply lines run, and where they're thin, which of his vassal lords resent him and might waver. The state of his fortresses, the temper of his troops. She finds the weaknesses. Every power has them, she tells me. Even one as strong as Kronberg. You just have to know where to look, and looking is her art. An army is only as strong as the story it tells about itself, she says, laying out Otto's forces on Lysandra's map with a precision that makes even Lysandra impressed. Kronberg's story is that it's invincible, that it crushes and goes home, that no one stands against it. But I've been inside now, and I'll tell you a secret. They believe their own story too much. They're arrogant, top to bottom from Otto down to the newest legionary, because they've never lost. And arrogance is a weakness you can use, if you know how an enemy certain he can't lose doesn't plan for the ways he can. She and I work together the way I've worked with all of them. And with Roxana, it's the shared thrill of the dangerous game. Two people who love the intricate risk of it. Mapping an enemy, planning the diversions and the misdirections that will blind Otto to my real intentions. It's not the meeting of minds I have with Lysandra, or the warmth I have with Aglaya. It's sharper and more dangerous. The bond of two people who find the same joy in the knife's edge, and when the oath comes, it comes from that, a professional respect that becomes something real. The recognition of two people who each finally found someone who plays the dangerous game as well as they do. A true oath sovereign. Roxana stands with you. Truth of bond, real, sharp, and clear-eyed. The trust of two who deal honestly in dangerous things. For it true means, in the eyes of the realm, the secrets of your enemy, the map of his every weakness. Not the deepest of my oaths, but true, and it brings the last military peace. I will not go to war blind. I will go knowing Otto's every strength and every weakness, while he knows almost nothing of mine. And then there's Iris. The carriage from Kronberg arrives, and the Princess Iris steps out of it into the courtyard of the city her father burned, and the whole court watches my wives, my council, everyone, because everyone knows what she is, the daughter of the man who killed my father, sent on the eve of war as a gift that is obviously a trap. She's young, my age, perhaps a little younger, and beautiful in the cold, composed way of someone raised in a court where feelings are weaknesses to be hidden. She holds herself perfectly. She gives away nothing. When she's presented to me, she curtsies with flawless correctness and says the flawless correct words of a peace token. And her eyes, I notice this, because I've learned to notice things, her eyes are carefully, deliberately empty. The eyes of someone who has learned to show absolutely nothing because showing something has always cost her. And here's where I make my mistake, and the system teaches me the deepest lesson it has ever taught me. Because I look at Iris, daughter of Otto von Kronberg, and I feel the old cold thing rise in me. The laughter on my father's steps, 5 years of a corpse, the debt I've built 2 years to pay. And a part of me, the part that has learned to solve everything as a sum, does a cold and ugly calculation. She is a piece. Otto sent her as a piece, so I will use her as a piece. I will marry her, bind Otto's own daughter to me, a hostage, a humiliation, a weapon turned back on the man who sent it. The system pays for marriage. Marry the enemy's daughter, take the capital, and turn Otto's gambit against him. It's clever. It's cold. It's exactly the kind of arithmetic I'd have been proud of, once. And so within days of her arrival, I offer the Princess Iris marriage, framing it to my council as strategy, a way to seize Otto's game piece and turn it, and framing it to myself as the same. Iris accepts, of course. She has no choice. She was sent to be accepted or refused, a piece with no will of her own. She accepts with the same empty correctness she does everything. And we are married in a cold ceremony that is, on both our parts, pure calculation. And the system, which cannot be fooled, tells me exactly what that calculation is worth. A bond is formed. Iris of Kronberg stands with you. Truth of bond, 5%. This is a marriage of ice sovereign. You have taken her as a weapon against her father, and she has given herself as a piece with no choice. And there is no truth in it, only strategy on your side and resignation on hers. Hatred is not a bond. Calculation is not a bond. I do not pay for lies. And this oath, however useful you imagine it, is a lie. For it, almost nothing. The capital that flows in is a trickle, insulting, tiny, less than the smallest of my true oaths brought. And standing there, having just married the enemy's daughter for cold advantage, I feel the system's judgment land like a slap, because it is right, and it has just shown me, publicly, in front of my own court, exactly the thing I'd started to forget. This is what I've built the whole empire on. True bonds, real ones, freely given, truly meant. Lysandra, Aglaya, Vivenne, Brunhilde, Theodora, every stone of this empire was raised on the gold of a genuine connection, freely chosen. And the moment I tried to fake one, the moment I tried to use a person as a piece, the way Otto uses people, the way Kronberg rules, the system gave me nothing, because there was nothing there but cold arithmetic, and a woman with no choice. It's the deepest lesson the system has ever taught me, and it teaches it at the worst and most public moment. You cannot build anything real on a lie. The whole point of everything you've made is that it was true. Become Otto, use people as pieces, and you get 5% and a hollow throne. I look at Iris, my new wife, standing there with her carefully empty eyes, and I understand that I've wronged her. Not because the marriage is strategically foolish, but because I've done to her exactly what her father did. Treated her as a thing to be used, a piece in a game rather than a person. I've become, for one cold calculating moment, the very thing I've spent 2 years building an empire to destroy. And so I do the thing the system is really teaching me to do. I stop treating her as a piece, and I try instead to see the person. It's not a grand romance, and it doesn't happen fast, and I won't pretend it does. But over the last weeks of that spring, in the quiet spaces between war councils, I do something no one has ever done for Iris of Kronberg. I ask her who she actually is, and I listen to the answer. And the answer breaks my heart a little and reframes everything. Because Iris is not her father's willing spy. Iris is her father's victim as much as I ever was in her own way. She grew up in that cold Kronberg court as a game piece from birth, valued only for the marriages and alliances her body could purchase. Never once asked what she wanted. Never once treated as anything but an asset on Otto's ledger. She watched her father rule through fear and cruelty her whole life. She watched him burn cities and call it correction. And she hated it, hated what he was, hated what her family's power was built on, hated being a piece in his games. But she was powerless, a daughter in a court that valued daughters only as coin, with no way to be anything but what he made her. You think I don't know what he did to your city, she says. One evening when the careful emptiness finally cracks, and something real comes through bitterness and shame and a grief that mirrors my own. You think I don't know he killed your father, burned your people and laughed about it? I grew up with that. I grew up watching him do it to others and knowing he'd do it to me too. In his way, sell me to whatever alliance served him, a womb with a crown, and never once ask if I minded. He sent me here as a piece, Cassian. A gift that's really a spy or a hostage or a trap. I know exactly what I am to him. I've always known exactly what I am to him. Her voice is raw now, the court mask gone. So don't imagine you humiliated me by marrying me for cold advantage. You just treated me exactly the way my own father always has. The only difference, and here her eyes find mine, and there's something almost like wonder in them, is that you stopped. You're the first person in my entire life who looked at me being used as a piece and stopped, and asked me who I actually am. Do you have any idea what that's like? To be a game piece your whole life and have someone, the enemy, of all people, be the first to treat you as a person? And I understand, listening to her, that Otto has made the same mistake with his daughter that he made with me. He treated her as a thing, a weapon, a piece with no will, and in doing so he created exactly the person most likely to turn against him. Because a woman who has spent her whole life being used by Kronberg, who hates what Kronberg is, who has just been shown by Kronberg's enemy, the first genuine human decency of her life, that woman is not Otto's spy, she's Otto's undoing. He sent you here to be a weapon against me, I say quietly. And instead you're the first person who ever treated me as more than a weapon. Iris finishes, which means I'm the last person who'll help him use me as one. Her jaw sets, and for the first time the empty court mask is gone completely, replaced by something fierce and alive, and decided. You want to make my father pay for what he did to your city and your father? Cassian, she leans forward. So do I. I have wanted it my whole life and never had the power. I know things. I grew up in that court. I know his commanders, his fortresses, his plans, the way he thinks, the weaknesses he hides even from his own generals. I know the things Roxana's spies can only guess at, because I lived inside them. She holds my gaze. He gave me to you as a weapon. Let me be one his. Turned against him. Let me give you everything I know. Not because you married me for advantage, but because you're the first person who ever saw me, and because I have hated what my father is, since I was old enough to understand it. And because this is the only chance I will ever have to make it mean something. What Iris gives me over those last spring weeks changes the war from a desperate gamble into something I can actually win. Roxana's spies gave me the outside of Kronberg, the numbers, the positions, the visible weaknesses. But Iris gives me the inside, the things only someone raised in that court could know, how Otto actually thinks. The difference between his real plans and the feints he lets his own commanders believe. Which of his vassals secretly despise him and could be turned. The hidden weakness in his fortress capital. The arrogant blind spots of a man who has never lost and cannot imagine losing. She and Roxana, together the professional spy and the insider princess, build me a picture of my enemy so complete that for the first time I look at the war and see not a desperate defense but a winnable campaign. And somewhere in those weeks of working together, of her handing me the keys to her father's destruction and me treating her, every day, as the person no one else ever had, the 5% becomes something else. It's not sudden and it's not a grand passion. It's the slow, real thing of two people who both grew up used by the powerful, who both hate the same cruelty, who both found in each other the first person who truly saw them. It's genuine, and it's chosen, and it's true, and the system feels it. The bond has changed, Sovereign. Iris of Kronberg stands with you truly, now. Truth of bond. I have never measured higher. This is the deepest oath you have sworn. She was given to you as a weapon of ice, and you thawed her. Not with strategy but by seeing her, and she has chosen you, and your cause, with the whole of a heart that no one ever valued until now. This is truth built from a lie transformed, and there is nothing stronger. For it, the greatest means I have ever given. And more, the enemy's own blood turned wholly to your side. The capital that pours in dwarfs everything before it. The emotional and the mechanical peak of the whole long story. The deepest bond producing the greatest flood of means. But it's not the gold that matters. It's the face slap. The perfect turning of Otto's own gambit. He sent his daughter as a weapon against me. Certain that a piece is only ever a piece. And by treating her as a person when her own father never would, I've turned Otto's weapon entirely against him. The daughter he gave me to spy on my war is now the insider handing me the keys to his destruction. Otto reached out to place a knife at my hearth, and I've turned the knife around, and it's pointing at him now, held in the hand of his own child who hates him for exactly the cruelty that made him think he could use her in the first place. It is the cruelest and most fitting reckoning I could have devised. And I didn't devise it. Otto devised it himself, the moment he decided his daughter was a piece and not a person. His own contempt for human beings, the very thing that let him burn my city and laugh, is the thing that just handed his enemy the weapon to destroy him. In the warm, bright hall to the east, Emperor Otto von Kronberg waits for word from the daughter he planted in his enemy's house. The spy, the hostage, the weapon of ice. And the word that finally comes is not the word he expects. His daughter has not sent him the boy's secrets. His daughter has sent him nothing at all. And his agents on the coast bring him a report he refuses, at first, to believe. The Princess Iris has been married to the Veldmar boy, not as a cold hostage but as something the reports call, impossibly, a true wife. And worse, that she has been seen at his war councils. That Kronberg's own plans and weaknesses seem suddenly catastrophically to be known to the enemy in detail no outside spy could have gathered. Otto sets the report down, and for the first time in the whole long story, the cold composure cracks, and something like disbelief shows through. She has turned, he says slowly. My own daughter has turned against me. He cannot at first comprehend it, because in Otto's world people are pieces, and pieces do not have hearts, and a daughter is an asset, and assets do not betray. I gave her everything. Rank, a crown, a place in my house. But even as he says it, some cold, honest part of the old predator's mind supplies the truth, and it is a truth he has no way to face, because facing it would mean unmaking the whole philosophy his power is built on. He gave her rank and a crown and a place, and never once gave her the one thing the boy gave her in a matter of weeks: to be seen as a person. He used her whole life as he uses everyone, as he burned Aschenfeld, and laughed because to Otto von Kronberg, human beings have always been only pieces on a board, and the boy who builds everything on true bonds freely given simply treated Otto's discarded piece as a human being, and in doing so turned her completely. I made her into a weapon, Otto says very quietly to the silent hall, by treating her as one, and he made her his by treating her as a person. The same girl. And for one moment, the Emperor of Kronberg stands at the edge of understanding the thing that has doomed him, that his entire way of ruling, the contempt for human hearts that made him strong, is precisely the weakness the boy has been exploiting from the very first well, that people, treated as people, will move mountains for you, and people treated as pieces will eventually turn the board over. Otto stands at the very edge of seeing it. And then he steps back from the edge because he is who he is, and a man cannot unmake himself at 60. No matter, he says. And the coldness closes over the crack like ice over dark water. Let her betray me. Let the boy have his little army and his stolen secrets and my traitor daughter. Secrets do not stop legions. Love does not stop steel. I have crushed nations that were sure they would win, and I will crush this one. And when I take his city, I will deal with Iris as one deals with a broken piece. But the doubt is there now, under the ice colder than before. Because for the first time, Otto von Kronberg is going to war against an enemy who understands something about human beings that Otto has spent his whole life refusing to learn, and some part of the old predator knows, beneath all his certainty, that this is an enemy unlike any he has faced. The last piece is in place, and I feel it. The moment the whole 2-year climb has been building toward, I gather them all in the great hall, the true throne room now, restored, its roof rebuilt, its scorch marks long gone. My council, my generals, my wives Lysandra, Aglaia, Vivienne, Brunhilde, Theodora, Roxana, and Iris. The strange and brilliant government I've raised from the ashes, each of whom gave me one piece of the impossible thing we've built. The nobles who once applauded my funeral, now standing in respect. Commanders of an army that didn't exist 2 years ago. The whole of the reborn empire, assembled and waiting. Lysandra lays it out one final time, because it needs to be spoken aloud. The completed sum of everything. 2 years ago, she says, her voice carrying through the silent hall, our emperor sat in this room when it had no roof, with an iron crown, 40 days of grain, 11 mourners, and an empire that every power on this continent had written off as a corpse. She looks around the hall at the walls, the wealth, the army, all of it made flesh in the people standing there. Today, a healthy, thriving, educated people who love him, an economy that overflows, a fleet on the sea, an army led by the finest general alive, armed with the best steel ever forged, its enemy's every weakness mapped by the finest spy in the enemy's own blood, a frontier of iron, a court cleansed of treason, a nation, whole and strong and ready. She turns to me. For the first time, Cassian, I've run the sums, every way there is. For the first time, we are not the smaller power praying to survive. Piece for piece, we are stronger than Kronberg. His legions are larger, but our army is better armed, better led, and fighting for something his conscripts don't have. We know his every weakness, he knows almost none of ours. And we have the one thing no empire ruled by fear can ever have, a people and a court who chose this freely and will not break. She sets down the last ledger she will ever need to convince me of anything. Corpse you were handed is gone. In its place is a power that can win. The only question left is the one you've been building toward since the night you dug the well. And I stand in the great hall, before everyone and everything I've built, and I give the answer I've been carrying since a boy watched his father die on a set of stone steps and heard men laugh. For 2 years, I say, and the hall goes utterly silent. Everyone has asked why. Why I dug the well with my own hands. Why I raised this city from its own filth when the sane thing was to walk away. Why I built walls and a harbor and an army and schools out of ash in 40 days. Some of you thought it was to survive. Some thought it was to build something beautiful. And it was those things. I look around at them, all my wives, my people, my whole impossible reborn empire. But underneath all of it, from the very first stone, there was one reason. 5 years ago, Otto von Kronberg crossed our border in a single night, burned this city, sacked its treasury, and killed my father on the steps of this very hall. And then he went home before noon, and he laughed. I heard him laugh. I was 14, hidden in the walls, and I have heard that laughter every night for 7 years. My voice doesn't rise, it doesn't need to, the silence is total. Everything I have built, I built toward this. Not to defend, not to survive, to make him pay. For my father, for this city, for the Eisenwald children who burned, for every soul this empire lost to his cruelty. And for the simple truth that a man who burns a city and laughs cannot be allowed to keep laughing. I look at Brunhilde, who needed to see me mean it. I look at Iris, who gave me her father's undoing. I look at all of them. We are done building the answer, I say. It is time to deliver it. We do not wait for Otto to march on us. We do not fight this war on our own soil, among our own people, in the city we bled to raise. We take it to him. We march on Kronberg. We meet the power that made a corpse of us, on its own ground, with everything we have become, and we make Otto von Kronberg answer, at last, for what he did on those steps. I draw the sword at my side, the first time I've ever done such a thing in this hall, and the steel catches the light. Not defense, not survival, reckoning. We march on Kronberg, and we make him pay. The hall erupts, not the soft insulting applause of my coronation, but a roar, an army and a court and a nation that chose this, thundering their answer back at me, and I stand in the great hall with the sword in my hand, and my strange brilliant family around me, and 2 years of impossible work made flesh, and I feel the debt I've carried since I was 14 finally turning from something I build toward into something I am about to collect. We march on Kronberg. The reckoning has come. We march on Kronberg in the first hard days of spring, and the army that leaves Aschenfeld is nothing like the army that could have left it a year ago, because it is not really an army at all. It is everything we built moving as one thing. I ride at its head, but I am under no illusion that I am winning this war. 7 people are winning this war, each of them the master of one piece of it. And my only real job, the job I've learned across 2 years of standing between brilliant women, is to hold them together and aim them at the same target. The reckoning that rides north with me is not my genius. It is the sum of theirs. Roxana rides ahead of everyone, unseen. Her network has mapped every mile of the road, every Kronberg garrison, every scout screen, and more than mapped them, she's blinded them. Where Otto's eyes should be watching our approach, they see what Roxana wants them to see. False reports of our numbers, phantom columns marching on roads we'll never take. A picture of our army painted entirely by the woman who deals in lies. Otto musters to meet a force half our real size, coming from the wrong direction. An enemy's greatest weakness, Roxana had said, is what he's certain he knows. So I let him stay certain of all the wrong things. And Iris rides beside me, and what she knows turns Roxana's blinding into something lethal. Because Iris grew up inside Otto's mind, and she knows not just where his forces are, but how he'll think, which feint he'll believe because it flatters his contempt for us, which of his commanders he'll trust, and which he keeps on a short leash, the exact shape of the arrogance that has never once let him imagine losing. He'll expect you to come cautiously, she tells me, and Lysandra over the maps each night, because he thinks you're a builder, a defender, a boy who digs wells. He cannot conceive that you'd march boldly at Kronberg itself. So his whole disposition is built to crush a timid enemy creeping toward his border. Come at him boldly, faster and harder than a cautious man ever would. And his own certainty becomes the trap. He's arranged his forces to defeat the enemy he imagines, be the enemy he can't imagine. Campaign that follows is Lysandra's masterpiece, and it is a thing of terrible beauty. She takes what Roxana blinds and what Iris predicts, and what Aglaya and Brunhilde and Viviane can each do, and she builds a war the way she once built a pyramid out of a dead city, in the correct order, each piece making the next possible. She does not try to win by matching Otto's larger legions head-on. That's the brute force battle Otto wants, the one his numbers would win. Instead, she wins the way I've won everything, by refusing to fight the fight the enemy expects and fighting a smarter one instead. Viviane's contribution comes first, and it's one no one but her would have thought to make. She doesn't just supply our army, she starves Otto's. With her coast-wide web of trade and her bottomless purse, she quietly buys up the grain and fodder along Kronberg's supply routes before Otto's quartermasters can, corners the markets his legions depend on, and pays Kronberg's own contractors better than Otto does to simply fail to deliver. An army marches on its stomach, and Viviane, who taught me that money is a weapon, turns Otto's supply lines into a slow strangulation. He has more soldiers, she says, with grim satisfaction, and I have more money, and money feeds soldiers. Let's see how invincible his legions feel when the bread stops coming and the fodder's all been bought out from under them by a merchant they've never heard of. Then the sea. Viviane's fleet, the warships Aglaya insisted we build, that I once watched grow on the slipways, sails up Kronberg's coast and does to Otto's flank what Otto once did to my city, strikes where he thought he was safe, not to burn and terrorize. On my order, never that. I will not become him, but to seize his ports, cut his coastal supply, and land Brunhilde's fastest troops far behind his frontier, where his whole ponderous defense faces the wrong way. Otto arranged his legions to meet an army crawling at his border. He wakes to find warships at his coast and soldiers in his rear, and the great disposition he built to crush a timid enemy is suddenly facing the wrong direction entirely. And then Brunhilde and the steel. When the armies finally meet, and they must meet in the end, steel against steel, it is on ground, Lysandra chose and Iris predicted, and Aglaia has already turned into a killing field. Brunhilde's army is smaller than Otto's, but every soldier in it carries the best steel ever forged, drilled by the fiercest warriors on the continent, fighting for a nation they chose. And Aglaia's engines, the mountain throwers, ranged and sighted over days on the ground where Iris swore Otto would commit his main force, break the Kronberg legions before they ever close, exactly as they broke the raiding column in the low pass, but on the scale of a war. I watched the great battle from the height where Lysandra placed our command, and I watched 2 years of work become a single machine. Roxana's blinding, so Otto committed his main strength to the wrong ground. Iris's prediction, so we knew he would. Vivenna's strangulation, so his legions came to the field already hungry and half-supplied. Aglaia's engines breaking their arrogant advance from a sky they couldn't answer. Brunhilde's hardened army, hitting the broken formations like the hammer she is. And behind all of it, Theodora's nation, because our soldiers fight and do not break, hold when frightened men would run, because they are not conscripts dying for a tyrant, but citizens fighting for the city that gave them justice and their children's schools. And that difference on a battlefield is worth more than a legion. It is not a fair fight in the end, and it isn't meant to be. Otto has more men. I have 7 geniuses and a nation, and Otto has only his legions and his certainty, and Lysandra has arranged it so that every advantage Otto holds is turned useless, and every strength we have is brought to bear at once. The larger army, outthought at every turn, blinded, starved, struck from behind and shattered by engines it can't reach, breaks. Not through my brilliance in the moment, I am no great warrior, and I know it, but because 2 years ago I began binding to myself the people who together could build exactly this. In the field headquarters of Kronberg, Emperor Otto von Kronberg watches the impossible happen, and cannot at first make his mind accept it. His legions, his invincible legions that have crushed every enemy for 20 years are breaking, not to a larger force. He still has the numbers. They are breaking because everything he planned is wrong. The enemy he arranged to crush is not the enemy on the field. His supply has failed for reasons his quartermasters cannot explain. His coast is under attack. His main strength committed to ground that has become a slaughter pen of falling stone. And his own daughter, he now understands with sick certainty, told the boy exactly how he would think. How Otto says to no one watching 2 decades of invincibility come apart. How does a boy with half my army? But the honest, cold part of his mind, the part that made him a great conqueror before it made him a monster, supplies the answer he has spent the whole war refusing. The boy does not have half his army. The boy has 7 minds and a nation, each piece doing what Otto could never do. Because Otto has spent 20 years ensuring no one around him was ever more than a tool. Otto's commanders are men promoted for loyalty and fear, who cannot think for themselves because Otto never let them. Otto's soldiers are conscripts who fight because they must. Otto's own daughter was a piece on his board, and the boy took people, real people, and gave them reasons to give him the whole of their genius freely, and bound them into something Otto, ruling through fear, could never assemble. A thing greater than any one mind, greater than any legion. He built what I could not, Otto says, and there is, at the very end, something almost like understanding in the cold voice. I ruled through fear, and fear gives you tools. He ruled through he cannot quite say the word through something else, and it gave him this. 7 masters, and a people who will not break, because they chose him. The old predator looks out at his shattering legions, at the reckoning 2 years in the building, and understands far too late the shape of his own doom, that the very thing that made him strong, the contempt for human hearts, the reduction of every person to a piece, is precisely the poverty that the boy exploited from the first well to the last battle. Otto made himself an empire of tools, and tools cannot love you. And an empire that cannot love you breaks the moment it's truly tested. The boy made himself an empire of the willing, and the willing move mountains. It is the lesson Otto might have learned at any point in 20 years and never did, because learning it would have meant becoming someone other than the man who burned Aschenfeld and laughed. And now the lesson has come for him with steel and stone and his own daughter's knowledge, and it is far too late to learn it. The Kronberg legions break, and their commanders surrender or flee, and by the campaign's end I stand before the fortress capital of Kronberg itself, the seat of the power that made a corpse of my city in a single morning 7 years ago and sent my father to his death on his own steps. Otto does not surrender. Iris told me he wouldn't. He'd rather burn than bend. It's the only thing I ever respected in him, and the thing that will kill him. His army is shattered, his supply gone, his capital surrounded by my forces and cut off by Vivenna's fleet, and still he holds his fortress and refuses to yield, because Otto von Kronberg has never in his life been made to answer to anyone, and he cannot conceive of beginning now. So I take the fortress, and here at the very end is the moment that matters most, not the taking but the choice, because I could do to Kronberg exactly what Kronberg did to me. I have the power now. I could burn this city as Otto burned mine, sack it, put its people to the sword, leave it a corpse and go home before noon and laugh. And there would be a terrible symmetry in it. Ash for ash, the perfect mirror of that night 7 years ago. Part of me, the 14-year-old in the servant's passage, who has heard that laughter every night for 7 years, wants it badly, and I do not do it. I do not do it because of a well I dug with my own hands for people who could do nothing for me, because of a woman in a doorway with a sick child, because of a district girl reading a sentence aloud with pride, because everything I built on being unable to bear the suffering of ordinary people, and the ordinary people of Kronberg, the craftsmen and mothers and children behind these walls, did not burn my city. Otto did. And if I burn them to punish him, then Otto has won the only victory that would matter, he'd have made me into himself. We do not burn it, I tell my commanders, and I tell it loud, so the whole army hears, so it becomes law. We are not Kronberg. We came for the man who burned our city, not for the mothers and children of this one. Any soldier who loots, who burns, who harms a civilian of Kronberg, answers to me by the same law that protects our own people. We came to end a tyrant. We do not become one. And Theodora's law, the justice I built into the soul of my empire, holds even here, even now, even with the enemy's capital at my mercy, because that law was never only for Aschenfeld. It was for the kind of ruler I decided to be. Digging a well 2 years ago, the kind who does not burn cities and laugh. We take the fortress with discipline, not fire. And I go to find Otto von Kronberg, to collect at last the debt of 7 years. I find him in his great hall, a hall with all its roof, all its gold, everything my roofless hall lacked the night they crowned me on a corpse. He is not cowering. Whatever else he is, Otto von Kronberg is not a coward. He stands before his throne, an old man now that I see him close. The conqueror who once seemed all-powerful to a boy in a wall, and he watches me come with the cold composure he's worn his whole life, cracked at last but not broken. So, he says, the well-digger, come to burn my city as I burned yours. His cold eyes measure me. Do it then. Ash for ash. It's what I would do. It's the only language power respects. No, I say, it isn't. And that's the difference between us. And it's why you lost. I stop before him, the man who killed my father, who laughed on the steps, whose laughter I have carried for 7 years. I'm not going to burn your city, Otto. Your people didn't kill my father. You did. Your craftsmen and your mothers and your children are no more guilty of what you did than my people were guilty of anything. The night you burned them for the crime of bordering you. I will not punish them for your sins. I am not you. I hold his gaze. That's the thing you never understood, the thing that beat you. You thought power was only fear, only ash, only the strong doing what they will to the weak. And so you built an empire of tools and conscripts and pieces, and the moment it was truly tested, it broke, because nothing in it loved you. I built something else. I built an empire of people who chose it, and it did not break. You didn't lose to a bigger army, Otto. You lost to a better idea of what an empire is. You lost because I refused, from the very first stone, to be the kind of man you are. Otto von Kronberg looks at me for a long moment, and something moves in the cold old face. Not quite repentance, he is too much himself for that, but understanding. The understanding of a man who sees at the very end the exact shape of the thing that undid him and knows it is too late to have ever been otherwise. Perhaps, he says quietly, perhaps you're right, boy. Perhaps I built an empire that could not love me. A thin, cold, tired smile. But I built it high, and I ruled it long, and I regret nothing, not your father, not your city, not one stone of it. I am what I am. I will not repent to a boy who digs wells. He draws himself up, the old conqueror, unbroken even now. So if you will not burn my city and you will not have my repentance, then finish it. Emperor, I will not kneel, and I will not beg, and I will not become small at the end to please you. Do what you came to do. And here is the reckoning, 7 years in the coming. I do not cut him down where he stands. That would be Otto's justice, the strong killing as they please. I give him instead the thing he never gave my father, the thing he never gave anyone. I give him the law. Otto von Kronberg is taken, not murdered in his hall, but taken alive to answer before his own people and mine, before the assembled powers of the coast for what he did, for the burning of Aschenfeld, for the murder of my father, for a reign of conquest and cruelty that turned cities to ash and called it correction. He, who ruled his whole life by fear and force with no law above him, is made at last to stand beneath the one thing he never acknowledged, justice, the same for a tyrant as for any man. His empire is broken and its conquered lands freed. His power is ended utterly, and the man himself faces the reckoning of law, which is a colder and more complete defeat for a man like Otto than any sword, because a sword would make him a martyr, and the law makes him merely a criminal. Answerable like anyone, his lifelong pretense of being above all men ended in the most ordinary way there is. The tyrant is fallen. The power that burned my city and killed my father is broken forever. The debt of 7 years is at last collected, not in ash, not in a mirror of his cruelty, but in the total ending of everything he was, delivered by the better thing I built to answer him. Iris of Kronberg stands in her father's broken hall and watches the man who made her a game piece fall, and what she feels is not what the songs would say she should feel. It is not triumph. He is a monster, and he burned Cassian's city, and he used her whole life as a thing to be spent. And still, he is her father, the only one she had, and watching him fall is not simple, because nothing about a father ever is. She feels grief, though he never earned it. She feels a terrible relief, and shame at the relief. She feels the strange hollowness of watching the towering figure of her whole childhood revealed at last as a small, cold, unrepentant old man, brought down not by a greater monster, but by something he could never understand. But under all of it, she feels something clean, and it is this. He made her a weapon, and she chose what to destroy with the life he gave her, and she chose to destroy the cruelty he stood for. Her whole life she was a piece on his board, and in the end, she was the piece that took the king. Not because she was used, but because for the first time she chose. She is not at the last her father's victim. She is the one who ended what her father was. And that, she thinks, watching the cold old man taken away to face a law he never bowed to, is the only inheritance of his she will ever be glad to have claimed. She finds Cassian's eyes across the hall, and neither of them says anything, because there is nothing that needs saying. He treated her as a person when her own father never would, and she turned her father's weapon into her own choice. And between them they ended a monster without either of them becoming one. It is enough. It is in fact everything. The tyrant is fallen, and the war is won, and I should feel nothing but triumph. I don't. I stand in Otto's broken hall, the debt of 7 years finally collected, and what I feel under the grim satisfaction is the cost. Because a war is not the clean thing the songs make it. We won, and won as cheaply as Lysandra's genius and Roxana's blinding and Iris's knowledge could make it, but cheaply is a word that only means something next to the alternative. Men died. My men. The citizen soldiers who dug the drains and lit the lamps and chose to follow me north. Some of them are not going home to the city they helped raise. Brunhilde's mountain warriors who held a lonely line for 5 years and then followed me to end the enemy that burned their children. Some of them fell in the ending. The nation I built, that fought and did not break in part because good people stood their ground and paid for it with their lives. I walked the field after, as I made myself walk the ruined streets of my city 2 years ago. Because a ruler who will not look at the cost of his choices has no business making them. I look at the dead. Ours and theirs both, because the Kronberg conscripts were people too. Men who fought because a tyrant made them, and their mothers will grieve them no less than ours will grieve our own. Otto is fallen, and it was necessary, and I would do it again. But I make myself feel the weight of what necessary cost, so that I never spend it lightly, so that I never become a man who can order a war and not feel the graves. Brunhilde finds me on the field, blood not her own, across her face grim. She has won the war she wanted, made Kronberg pay for her children, and she is not celebrating either. We won, she says quietly. You did what you swore. He's fallen, and my clan's children are avenged, and your father, and your city. A long pause as she looks out over the field, over the cost of it. But I've buried enough of my people to know that winning and grief aren't opposites. They come together. They always come together. She puts a hand on my shoulder. Warrior to warrior, feel it. You should feel it. The ones who'll dance in your streets when we come home, they can dance without counting the cost. And that's good. That's what we want it for. But you're the emperor. You have to carry the count. That's the price of the crown. Someone has to remember what it cost, so it's never spent for nothing. I carry the count. I stand on the field where the reckoning was won, tired all the way to my bones, the debt of 7 years collected, and the tyrant fallen and my city avenged, and I feel the terrible weight of the price, the graves on both sides, the cost of even a just and necessary war. Victory and grief come together, as Brunhilde said they always do. We won. Otto is fallen. Everything I built toward for 2 years is done, and it cost what such things always cost, and I make myself feel every ounce of it, standing on the field in the fading light, before I turn at last toward home, toward the living city we raised from ash, and the strange, brilliant family who raised it with me, and the long work now of building a peace worth all the blood it took to win. We come home in the full green of summer, and the city that meets us is not the city I left. I mean that in every way there is. The army that marches back through the gates of Aschenfeld is smaller than the one that left. We carry our dead with us, and we will bury them with honor, and the count of them is the weight I chose to carry as emperor, and will carry the rest of my life. But the city we march into is a thing so far beyond the ruin I inherited, that I have to stop my horse at the gate, just for a moment, and look, because the boy I was would not have believed it. 2 years ago I rode out of a roofless hall to survey a corpse. Today I ride into a living city, and I let myself see all of it, every stone we laid, because this is what it was all for, and a man should look at what his life built. The gate itself, part of Aglaya's full circuit of walls, low and thick and strong, the walls that held our people safe while we made them a nation, that no raider troubles anymore, because the frontier of iron turns them back long before they reach here. Through the gate, the streets paved, crowned, shedding the summer rain into the drains that run clean and unseen beneath, the drains we dug through a freezing winter with our own hands, so that the sickness that once emptied whole tenements is simply a thing of the past. The fountains, running bright in every square, fed by Aglaya's aqueduct marching down from the hills, clean water leaping into the summer light, in the same square where I once dug a single well with bleeding hands, and 50 starving witnesses watched a dead boy prove that stones could be moved. I ride on, and the city unfolds like an answer to every despair of that first day. The market district roaring 3 stalls deep, the new coin ringing on 100 counters, traders from the coast and the northern interior haggling in a dozen tongues, where 2 years ago there was silence and dark and people barred behind their doors. The mint striking sound silver that the whole coast trusts. The forges, glowing, turning out the steel that armed us and now turns to plowshares and tools for a city at peace. Down toward the water, the harbor deep water docks where the world's ships come alongside, warehouses full, the shipyards launching hulls, our fleet riding at anchor in the calm water. Aglaya's breakwaters made, where 2 years ago 40 fishermen mourned their drowned sons on an empty shore. And woven through all of it, the things that came last and matter most, the schools, full of children bent over slates, the children of dockworkers and masons learning letters their parents never knew. Hospitals, clean and orderly, where the sick are healed instead of left to die. The courts, where a common woman can win a just claim against a lord, where the law is the same for beggar and noble alike. The soul of the city, the thing that makes all the rest worth defending. The people line the streets as we ride through, and they are not the worn-down ghosts of that first day. The woman in the doorway with the sick gray child, drinking from a sewer, looking at me with eyes worn past hope. They are fed and clean and healthy and safe, and theirs is the loudest welcome a returning army ever heard, because they are not cheering a conqueror. They are cheering the emperor who dug a well for them when he had nothing and never stopped, and went and ended the tyrant who had burned them, and came home without becoming a tyrant himself. Somewhere in that crowd is a woman with a child who is not gray anymore. Somewhere is a mason with a bad leg who once spat on his hands and said, "I've done stupider things for men who did less," and dug the first well beside me. Somewhere is a boy, a young man now, who once dragged timber from a well shaft without being asked, and became the keeper of a builder's tools and grew up in a city that gave him a future. I don't see them all in the crowd, but I know they're there, and I know what we gave them. And it is enough. It is everything. There's a great deal to do in the days that follow. An empire does not settle itself, and a peace is as much work to build as a war was to win. The conquered lands Otto held are freed, set loose to govern themselves, or to join us freely, because I will not build my peace on the conquest I destroyed a tyrant for committing. Otto faces the law, and answers for his crimes before his own people and mine, and the seat of the power that burned my city is broken forever. Its cruelty ended, its people free of the fear he ruled them by. The debt of 7 years is fully paid, and paid in the coin I chose, not ash but justice, and the total ending of everything Otto was. And I watch, in those settling days, the strange brilliant government I raised from the ashes take its final shape, each of them in the place she made for herself, the whole of it working as one thing. The thing Aglaya once marveled we had become. Not a ruler and his tools, but a true government, a family, a machine of the willing. Lysandra stands at the head of it all with me, my chief counsel, the sharp mind that turns everything I want into everything we can actually do, still believing first in the problem and now entirely in the man beside her. The empire runs in the correct order because she orders it, the way she once turned a dead city into a pyramid of water, food, wall, production on a fresh sheet of paper in a cold shop. She still argues with me every day. I would not have it any other way. Aglaya builds on the war is over, and her genius turns from walls and engines back to the things she loves best, the fountains and the schools and the roads, and the beautiful useful bones of a city at peace. Her mountain order, which once hid its knowledge and fear of the world, has followed her example and opened its doors, and now its ancient engineering serves the living instead of hiding from them. She is, at last, exactly what she was meant to be. Not a keeper of secrets in the dark, but a builder in the light. Evine runs the wealth of an empire and grumbles happily that half of it goes to schools and hospitals that show no return, while quietly knowing, because Theodora made her see it, that the educated children she funds today are the clerks and engineers and traders who will run her harbor in 20 years. She has the game worth her whole mind at last, and partners worth building with, and she has stopped, somewhere along the way, merely pricing everyone, and started to her own ongoing surprise, to love them. Brunhilde commands an army that keeps a peace instead of bleeding on a lonely line. The frontier of iron she and I built turns back trouble before it starts, and her mountain clans, who held that line alone and unthanked for 5 years, are honored now as the heart of an empire's strength. She still says exactly what she thinks, still argues with me loudly and without a shred of court softness, and I still trust her all the way down, the way you trust someone who stood beside you in the steel and would never, ever run. Theodora tends the soul of it, the schools multiplying, the hospitals healing, the law holding firm and fair, a whole generation growing up taught and healthy and justly governed, who will never know the ashes their parents crawled out of. She is old, and she will not always be with us, but the thing she built into the empire, its conscience, its care for ordinary people, the law that binds even the emperor, that will outlast us all. She gave the empire the thing that lets it endure. Roxana keeps the eyes of the realm, and keeps us from ever again being caught blind, though in peacetime her sharp talents turn more to catching the ordinary corruptions that creep into any government than to blinding enemy armies. She deals honestly in dangerous things, and she found in this strange family the one thing she'd claimed not to believe in, people worth being loyal to, freely, not for pay. And Iris, who came as a weapon of ice and became the truest oath I swore, takes the place that perhaps matters most for the peace. She is the bridge between what Kronberg was and what its freed people might become. The daughter who turned against her father's cruelty and now helps heal the lands he ruled by fear. She was a game piece her whole life, valued by no one, and she is valued now, seen at last for the whole of who she is, and using the freedom she was never given to make certain no other child grows up a piece on a cruel man's board. Of all the befores and afters in this story, hers is the one that moves me most. From a woman with carefully empty eyes, showing nothing because showing something always cost her, to a woman fully herself, fully seen, fully free. They argue still, all of them, over everything, constantly, the way they have since the first time Lysandra and Aglaia clashed over a wall. Vivienne still occasionally refers to the whole arrangement as a portfolio, purely to watch the others react. But the friction that once looked like division long ago revealed itself as the engine's 7 brilliant minds who see the world 7 different ways, grinding against each other until the right answer appears. An answer none of them would have reached alone. It is not a court of yes, it never was. It is a government and a family, and it is the thing I am proudest of building more than the walls, more than the harbor, more than the fallen tyrant. I built a thing greater than myself, out of people who chose it, and it will run long after I am gone, because it was never only mine. On a quiet evening near the end of that first summer of peace, I go up onto the wall. Not just any part of it. I go to the northeast wall, the breach we closed first of all 2 years ago, with reclaimed stone from the mansions of the fled nobles. In those early desperate days, when the whole future hung on 40 days of grain and a boy's refusal to walk away. It's whole now, part of the full strong circuit. But this is the stretch where it began, and there's one particular place on it I've come to find. Lysandra is already there. Of course she is. She always seems to know where I'll be. I climb up beside her, and we stand together on the wall in the last of the summer light. And below us and around us is the city, our city, the living answer to every despair of that first day. The lamps are coming on in the streets as the lamplighters make their evening rounds, post by post, the city glowing into the dusk. The fountains catch the last of the sun. Down at the harbor, the ship's lanterns are doubling in the calm water. Somewhere a market is still roaring, and somewhere children released from a schoolroom are running home through the lamplight, unafraid of a dark that no longer holds anything to fear. The forges glow. The whole city breathes, fed, healed, taught, safe, free, alive. Do you remember? Lysandra says quietly, the last time we stood on this wall together, when it was half built, when there was almost nothing here. I remember, I say. You told me you'd run the sums 100 times, and every one of them said it was impossible, dead and hadn't finished falling. I was certain, she says. I have never in my life been so certain of an arithmetic, or so glad to be wrong about one. She's quiet a moment, looking out over the glowing city. We stood right here, and you said we could really do it, and I didn't quite believe you. I believed in the problem, not the man, remember? I told you to write it in the ledger, a small sound, almost a laugh. I believe in the man now. I have for a long time. Look what he built. Look what we built, I say, and I mean it, because I have never for one moment forgotten that I only ever dug the first well. Everything else, every stone of it was them, and the 10,000 ordinary people who chose to raise their city from the dead because a boy gave them a reason to believe it could be raised. I look out over the city in the gathering dusk, and I let myself do the thing I've earned the right to do. The full accounting, the whole before and after, from the very first day to this one. Before a boy of 14 hidden in a servant's passage, watching his father die on stone steps, hearing men laugh. A boy of 19 in a roofless hall, an iron crown too worthless to sell and too heavy to wear. 40 days of grain, 11 mourners, 9 noble houses waiting for him to fall so they could pick the bones. A city drinking from its own sewers, dark from dusk to dawn, dying by degrees. An empire that every power on the continent had written off as a corpse that simply hadn't finished falling. Nothing. Ashes and 40 days after. This. A living city glowing into the dusk. Clean water and paved streets and lamplit squares. A harbor and a fleet and an economy that overflows. Walls that keep the people safe in a frontier of iron. Schools and hospitals and honest law. A healthy, thriving, educated people who chose this and would not break. A tyrant fallen and a father avenged and a debt of 7 years fully paid, not in ash, but in justice, by a man who refused to become the thing he destroyed. And a strange, brilliant, bickering family of the finest minds on the continent, bound to him not by fear or conquest, but by true oaths freely given, who took a dead boy's refusal to walk away, and built it into an empire, from ashes in 40 days to this. I built the answer to the laughter on those steps, and the answer was not more ash. The answer was a living city, and a just peace, and a people with a future, and the simple proof that you can lose everything and be handed a corpse and a crown too worthless to sell, and still, if you refuse to walk away, if you dig the first well with your own hands, and give people a reason to believe, you can raise something from the ruin that is worth more than everything that was lost. The debt is paid. The city lives. The work is done. It's enough, I say quietly, to Lysandra, to the glowing city, to the boy I was in the roofless hall, all of it. It was worth it. It's enough. And beside my eyes one last time, quiet in the summer dusk, the pane of pale gold unfolds. Sovereign, you awoke me in a roofless hall, on the night you swore your first true oath in the ruin of everything your house had lost. I told you then the whole of my purpose. Raise your empire on true oaths, freely given, truly meant. Look now at what those oaths have raised. A city from ashes, a people from despair, a nation from a corpse. And you built every stone of it the only way it can truly be built, not by force, not by fear, not by using people as pieces, but by binding to yourself, in truth, the hearts that chose to stand with you. 7 true oaths and 10,000 willing hands, and an empire raised from the ash by the simple, unbreakable strength of bonds freely given. The task I woke for is complete, Cassian Veldmar. The ruin is a realm. The debt is paid. The empire your father lost. You have not merely restored, you have made it something greater and truer than it ever was, and you have made it to last because you built it on the one foundation that does not crumble, the willing loyalty of hearts that chose you. There is nothing more for me to do. What you build now, you will build with your own hands and theirs, in the light as free people always have. You do not need me anymore. You never truly did. I only ever showed you the worth of the thing you were already doing, from the very first well. Rule well, sovereign. You have already proven you know how. The letters hold for one long moment in the summer dusk, and then gently, without fading into darkness, but simply into completion, into a thing finished and whole, the pane of pale gold folds itself away one final time, and is gone, and does not return. I stand on the wall in the last of the light, Lysandra beside me, the city glowing below, and I feel the quiet of it settle. Not an ending that leaves a wound, but an ending that closes a circle. The system woke to raise an empire from ash, and the empire is raised, and so it sleeps, its work complete. What comes next is ours to build freely in the light the way it always should have been. Below us, the lamplighters finish their rounds, and the last lamp catches, and the whole city of Ashenfeld glows into the summer night, clean, safe, healed, taut, free, and alive, where 2 years ago there was only a corpse and a boy who refused to walk away. Lysandra's hand finds mine on the wall. Neither of us says anything more. There's nothing that needs saying. We stand together and watch the city we built from ash breathe in the dark, and it is whole, and it is ours, and it is enough.